Chapter 1 Divorce, I'm tired of it. In the room late at night, the light and shadow are meliant. Ruan Tang raised her slender neck and offered her red and swollen lips, and asked for a kiss to the man who had just indulged in wantonly. But there was no emotion on the man's face. He turned over and got out of bed to get a bathrobe wrapped around him and walked to the bathroom. From beginning to end, he didn't even bother to give her arms. Ruan Tang looked at his tall and indifferent back, and his heart hurt like blood. After 2 years of marriage, he has never had a good face for her. Occasionally, he came to the lakeside villa to see her just for the sake of bed. She knew that he had never recognized the existence of her wife in his heart. But she is sure that the relationship, like a bed partner, will end soon. Ruan Tang walked to the cloakroom, took out the backpack he used during the day, and took out a document from it. Maybe seeing this, Fu Yuchuan will give her a good face. If it were better, maybe he would move here to live together. It's better. Ruan Tang didn't dare to think about it anymore. She was afraid that her idea was too extravagant. Suddenly, the sound of water in the bathroom stopped. Ruan Tang subconsciously turned around and looked at the door of the bathroom. Fu Yuchuan came out with only a bath towel wrapped in a bath towel. His well-marked abdominal muscles were indeed eye-catching, but what made people unable to take their eyes off it was his face. His facial lines are clean and neat, and his facial features are as if they were exquisitely carved. Dunfang's eyes are affectionate and deep, the bridge of his nose is high and straight, his upper lip is thin and his lower lip is thick, and the taste is soft and glutinous when kissing. At the beginning, it was this face that made 18-year-old Ruan Tang fall in love with him at first sight, and from then on, he regarded him as a treasure. Although he has been like a stone that can't be covered for the past 4 years, Ruan Tang always feels that people's hearts are fleshy. One day, he will be moved by himself, maybe today. Ruan Tang looked at him and was distracted. He didn't notice that the man's gaze was cold and heavy, with a trace of determination. Ruan Tang, let's get a divorce. Ruan Tang's reason suddenly came back to his senses, and his heart seemed to fall into an endless abyss. She clenched the document in her hand and heard the sound of tearing. She couldn't tell whether the document was torn or her heart was torn apart. Why? Why do you have to talk about divorce at this time? Obviously, she still has a good news that she hasn't told him yet. The light cast a shadow on his face, and he looked cold-blooded and ruthless. Why else? I'm tired of it. Looking at her affectionate eyes, he felt panicked. Her love is a burden and a shackle in his eyes. In 2 years, it was used as to repay her world-known secret love. Now he withdraws dashingly, which is also his revenge for her at all costs to marry him. After saying that, Fu Yuchuan did not stay any longer. When he passed by Ruan Tang, he brought a small flow of air. Ruan Tang's hair was blown, and the document in her hand fell to the ground. The 4 big words of the pregnancy test report on it had a sense of powerlessness, like a black and white toneem in the cold light. Don't go. I still have something I haven't told you. Ruan Tang's hand unconsciously reached out to his arm. She wanted to catch him, but she couldn't give up on him. But her fingertips only touched Fu Yuchuan's clothes, and it fell in a flash. Fu Yuchuan's long legs stepped away, and his steps left generously and calmly. He put a pause on the marriage on his own, regardless of the people behind him who were full of tears. When Ruan Tang chased him out, there was also an endless sound at the door of the villa. Brother Li Chuan. Chapter 2. She is back at the age of 18. Suddenly, there was a sharp pain in the abdomen, and Ruan Tang looked down. A stream of the warm liquid flowed down her thighs. Even if the light at the door was dim, she could still recognize the shocking redness. She didn't even have time to wipe her tears. She looked up and saw that it was pitch black. Fu Yuchuan had already left without a shadow. Anyway, she can't lose this child anymore. She turned around and went back to the room, put on her coat and took the key to get on the car. When she got on the car, her legs trembled unconsciously, and she kept praying in her heart. God, please don't take away this child, please leave me this thought. At 10 o'clock in the middle of the night, Ruan Tang endured the pain in his abdomen and drove a car to the hospital. The highway was empty. She stepped on the accelerator to the end and sweated profusely in pain. She didn't notice the red car that suddenly rushed out in the back left. With a loud bang, the world fell into darkness. Ruan Tang seemed to be walking in an endless tunnel. Just when she was almost desperate, a white light flashed through her eyes. She opened her eyes. A doctor in a white coat came into view. The white light just now was his flashlight. Are you awake? Is there anything wrong? The doctor smiled gently. Ruan Tang nodded and felt a tingling on his forehead. She reached out and touched the gauze. Excuse me, what's wrong with me? Ruan Tang looked at the doctor with some doubt, not knowing why he was lying in the hospital. The doctor's eyes were also a little doubtful. Don't you remember? You had a car accident while driving last night and were sent in. Ruan Tang was stunned for a moment. When did I learn to drive? I don't have a driver's license, and my father didn't buy me a car. Her words made the doctor's expression become serious in an instant. A moment later, the doctor asked tentatively, Miss, what's your name and how old are you this year? Ruan Tang looked at the doctor and answered with determination, "My name is Ruan Tang, and I am 18 years old." The doctor looked aside. On the bedside table was the pregnancy test report and ID card she had brought last night, which clearly recorded her information. Ruan Tang, female, 22 years old, 8 weeks pregnant. The moment he got the pregnancy test report, Ruan Tang's pupils widened. She is obviously an 18-year-old young and invincible beautiful girl. Why did she suddenly become a 22-year-old married pregnant young woman? Isn't it fierce? Ruan Tang wants to lie back and sleep again. Then the doctor asked her a few more questions. After several doctors looked at her, it was confirmed that she had simple amnesia. That's the thing, but amnesia is not a big deal. It's just a self-protection mechanism triggered by your brain after an impact. Maybe when you go back to rest for a few days and see someone you are familiar with, you will remember everything. Ruan Tang touched the big bag on her head, and the real tingling made her have to accept the fact that she had lost her memory. You had a little fetal gas last night, but now you're fine. Have a good rest after you go back. Now call your husband to pick you up. The doctor took the mobile phone on the bedside table and put it in Ruan Tang's hand. Ruan Tang looked at the large screen mobile phone in her hand, which had obviously undergone several generations, and thought of her husband she had never met before. What if he is a bald and greasy uncle? Ruan Tang wanted to cry. I looked through the address book, but there was no name husband. But she accidentally found a phone number with only a red heart note. There is no name, only a red heart. It's enough to see that she loves it so much. Ruan Tang endured goosebumps and dialed this love phone. The phone was connected, but no one was talking on the other end. Ruan Tang picked up his mobile phone doubtfully and glanced at it, and shouted tentatively, "Excuse me, are you my husband?" Chapter 3. Such a handsome man is her husband. Not only did he not admit it, but also hung up the phone directly. Ruan Tang was stunned for a second and immediately dialed the phone back. This time, she spoke first. "Just do me a favor, okay? I had a car accident and I'm in the hospital now. Please pick me up. By the way, I have something to talk to you." After a few seconds of silence, a male voice as clear as the impact of an ice spring came. "If you can still move, take a taxi home by yourself? What's the use of a good voice? The speech is really bad. I have a very important thing to tell you. If you don't come, you will definitely regret it." After saying that, Ruan Tang hung up the phone with lightning speed. Fu's group office. Fu Yuchuan sat at his desk and looked at his mobile phone with a solemn expression. "I have to go and see what kind of demon Ruan Tang is doing." In the hospital, Ruan Tang was lying on the hospital bed in a hospital uniform, leisurely eating a banana given by the nurse. Suddenly, the door of the ward was pushed open and a man came in. Long legs, thin waist and broad shoulders. Ruan Tang's eyes went all the way up from the pair of obviously valuable leather shoes, and finally fell on the handsome face that amazed her whole family. Shocked. What kind of wealth is this? Such a handsome man is her husband. Ruan Tang's pupils unconsciously widened, and his mouth opened into an O shape. When Fu Yuchuan saw her expression, he had a strange feeling in his heart. It's like she saw him for the first time. "Tell me, what are you going to tell me?" Fu Yuchuan ignored the strangeness in his heart and didn't even move forward. Instead, he stood at the door, looking like he was about to go out at any time. This man is really stunning and affectionate. She's a pregnant woman who had a car accident. Her husband came so calmly and leisurely. He didn't even bother to care about the condition of the fetus. "What I want to tell you is that I lost my memory, and now my memory is still at the age of 18. I don't remember anything about the years of marriage with you." Ruan Tang's words fell, and the ward was dead silent. Fu Yuchua's handsome face, which has never been expressionless, showed a trace of cracks. He sneered, "Ruan Tang, I really didn't expect that you could make up such nonsense in order not to divorce. I ignored you." He should have thought that she would not give up so easily. 2 years ago, in order to marry him, she risked ruining her reputation and sneaked into his room and climbed into his bed when he was drunk. 2 years ago, Ruan Tang's scheming was so deep, let alone 2 years later. He turned around and was about to leave, but he heard Ruan Tang ask behind him, "Why do you want a divorce? Did you cheat?" Fu Yuchua's figure was slightly stiff, and his eyes were cold when he looked back. "You can declare it to the outside world." Looking at his cold eyes, without a trace of care and love for his wife, Ruan Tang raised an unknown fire in his heart and looked at Fu Yuchuan with more indifferent eyes. "Divorce? Well, anyway, I don't remember you. It's better to live by myself than to live with a stranger all my life." At the thought that she still had a big belly and her husband actually cheated on her and wanted a divorce, she was so angry that she just left. Hearing her straightforward answer, Fu Yuchuan was stunned. How could she agree so bluntly? "Are you sure?" he asked back harshly. "Be sure and be sure." Ruan Tang blurted out, was silent for a moment, but suddenly added, "But I have a question for you before the divorce." "Say. Who do we prefer in this marriage?" Chapter 4. If you beat it down, you can always leave. Ruan Tang blinked his eyes, very innocent. A mocking smile overflowed from the corners of Fu Yuchua's mouth. What do you think? I have never liked you, let alone loved you. After a long time, I'm a dog licker. No wonder he completely forgot about him. It's obviously a terrible injury. Ruan Tang's heart was half cold, and he just wanted to draw a line with him quickly. Don't mention the past, and we will go our separate ways in the future. Well, have you brought the divorce agreement? Fu Yuchuan listened to her address to him, and the displeasure between his eyebrows was obvious. Fu Yuchuan. 3 words popped out of the teeth. Ruan Tang looked at him, and his eyes did not dodge at all. Okay, Fu Yuchuan, do you have a divorce agreement with you? Fu Yuchuan gritted his back teeth and took out his mobile phone. Soon, an electronic version of the divorce agreement was sent to Ruan Tang's mobile phone. Ruan Tang picked it up and looked through it quickly, and suddenly stopped at the end of the property division. 100 million. Isn't it faster than dreaming to get divorced and achieve wealth freedom at a young age? She looked up at Fu Yuchuan and snapped her mobile phone on the bed with a snap. Have you brought your ID card? I'm leaving today. An hour later, Ruan Tang and Fu Yuchuan, wearing gauze on their heads, walked into the Civil Affairs Bureau together, and the two sat together in front of the divorce window. The staff looked at Ruan Tang several times with a sympathetic look. Have you thought about it? Ruan Tang smiled like he came to get married. Don't worry, it's very good. Fu Yuchuan glanced at Ruan Tang with the afterglow. If it's not the best pretending, if it's pretending, it has nothing to do with him after divorce. The staff checked the divorce agreement between the two. When they saw the division of property, they seemed to understand why Ruan Tang was so happy. Then sign on it. Ruan Tang didn't even look at Fu Yuchuan beside him, but quickly picked up the pen on the table. At the moment when she was about to write, a sense of nausea surged up, and she covered her mouth with her hand. Vomit. For a moment, the staff looked over doubtfully. Are you all right? It's all right. Ruan Tang was afraid of delaying the divorce. When he wanted to write again, his stomach acid gushed out of his throat. She couldn't help it anymore, covering her mouth and pulling her legs and rushing into the bathroom. She vomited for a while in the bathroom. When she came out, her little face was pale, and only her rubbed lips were bright red. Ruan Tang. A voice suddenly fell, and Ruan Tang was shocked. She looked up. Fu Yuchuan didn't know when he stood in front of her, nearly 1.9 meters tall, like a wall. He looked down at Ruan Tang, giving people a chilling sense of oppression. Are you pregnant? Ruan Tang's expression remained unchanged, but his heart began to contract involuntarily when he looked over. He felt nervous under his gaze, which seemed to be an instinct. Yes. Fu Yuchuan's face visibly sank, and his dark pupils were dark, and he took a big step forward. No wonder you agreed so cheerfully. It turned out that you knew that you couldn't divorce during pregnancy and deliberately disgusted me. Ruan Tang was stunned for a moment before he realized. Her husband didn't know that she was pregnant. I don't know that you can't get a divorce during pregnancy. On the contrary, you don't have to say these words to disgust me. Her back lip sneer made him speechless for a moment. He didn't say anything more. He turned around and left. As soon as he left, the sense of oppression suddenly dissipated. Before Ruan Tang could breathe a sigh of relief, he saw that Fu Yuchuan was about to leave the Civil Affairs Bureau and hurried to catch up. She raised her hand to grab his arm unconsciously. But Fu Yuchuan, who was suddenly caught by her, raised his hand habitually and shook her away. Ruan Tang almost fell down. After standing firmly, his eyes were stained with a layer of anger, and he looked a little angry. You can't leave when you are pregnant. You can always leave after abortion, right? Chapter 5. Are you pregnant? Come on, it's not appropriate not to leave. Anyway, she has lost her memory, and this man doesn't love her, so why does she let the child suffer when she is born? After saying that, she strode out of the door, leaving Fu Yuchuan standing there in a daze. As soon as the two got on the bus, Ruan Tang said coldly, please take me to the nearest hospital. 10 minutes later, Black Maibok stopped at the door of the hospital. Ruan Tang got out of the car and strode towards the steps. Before he took 2 steps, Fu Yuchuan grabbed his arm. Ruan Tang, have you thought about it? Don't you regret it? Ruan Tang's eyes were very determined and he shook him off again. No regret, whoever regrets is a dog. Fu Yuchuan narrowed his eyes and walked into the hospital. When Ruan Tang entered the operating room, he looked back at Fu Yuchuan. It's agreed that if you have a child, you will get a divorce, and you can't regret it. Under Ruan Tang's gaze, Fu Yuchuan's face became more and more ugly, and he turned around and left without any response. His back was decisive, but Ruan Tang began to take it for granted. She strode into the operating room and lay on the operating table. The anesthetic needle in the doctor's hand shone with a cold light. Ruan Tang took a look and was so scared that her whole body trembled. As soon as I woke up, I came to have an abortion. After the abortion, I have to divorce. What a hell. Just as the tip of the needle touched Ruan Tang's skin, the door of the operating room was suddenly smashed. The movement was so big that the doctor couldn't help putting down the injection and strode towards the door. As soon as the door opened, a white-haired old lady in luxurious clothes rushed into the doctor's arms. Doctor, where is my granddaughter-in-law? At this time, Ruan Tang also sat up from the operating table and looked at the old lady in surprise. She forgot Fu Yuquan and everyone related to Fu Yuquan. Well, Ruan Tang just wanted to ask the old lady to go somewhere else to find her granddaughter-in-law. The old lady's eyes suddenly fell on her, turning her sorrow into joy. Tang Tang. The old lady rushed to the operating table and hugged Ruan Tang. Tang Tang, you stupid child. Why did you really come to have an abortion? Have you forgotten how much you want to get pregnant with his child? Let's go home with Grandma. In the future, Grandma will raise you, and we won't eat his Fu Yuquan's food. When Ruan Tang heard this, he understood that the person in front of him was Fu Yuquan's grandmother. However, Ruan Tang agreed with Fu Yuquan that the 100 billion was about to get it. Naturally, he didn't want to change his mind because of the old lady's words. She said, Grandma, we have all discussed it. The old lady looked up at her with a loving face. What did you discuss? Ruan Tang said, after negotiation, we will divorce the child. He will give me a sum of money, and we will not see each other in the future. The old lady rolled her eyes and fainted on the spot. After the doctor's operation, the old lady woke up from the bed leisurely. When he opened his eyes, he cried like a bully. Why did you save me? Let me die with my great-grandson. I look forward to the stars and the moon to have a great-grandson. You can beat me if you say you want to fight. You just beat me with me. The old lady's cry echoed in the ward. Ruan Tang stood aside at a loss. Grandma. Don't worry. Fu Yuquan is fertile and good-looking. Even if I divorce him, he can find a new wife to give birth to a child for him. The Fu family will not end up. Chapter 6 Divorce. The doctor beside him had an impulse to faint when he heard this. Sure enough, the old lady began to roll her eyes again. At this time, a tall figure just appeared at the door of the ward, listening to all Ruan Tang's words. Grandma, are you all right? Fu Yuquan walked in with his long legs open, and he didn't even bother to look at Ruan Tang. He reasonably suspected that Ruan Tang wanted to anger the old lady to death. When the old lady saw Fu Yuquan, she didn't pretend to cry and began to pretend to be dead. The old lady, who was still full of energy just now, suddenly became very angry. Li Chuan, come here, Grandma has a few words to explain to you. Fu Yuquan only felt that his temples were jumping. He had seen this trick in those years. If it hadn't been for the old lady's play, he wouldn't have married Ruan Tang. The old lady cried and said, forget it, you young people want to have an abortion and divorce. It's all your own business. I'm old and useless, and you can't listen to what I say. After you get divorced, you can find me a better nursing home, and don't take time to see me. I'm not upset. When Ruan Tang was in a daze, Fu Yuquan looked up at her with cold eyes. Ruan Tang, come out for a moment. In the long corridor of the hospital, Fu Yuquan stood tall. It's agreed, who regrets who is a puppy. Ruan Tang took the lead and interrupted Fu Yuquan's words. The man's eyebrows sank down. Tell me, what are the conditions for you to give birth to this child? He has endured it for 2 years, and he doesn't mind endure for another year. This time it was Ruan Tang's turn to be surprised. I didn't see that he was so filial and willing to be a puppy for the old lady. Maybe your family is very powerful, but our family lacks nothing. This child can't be born. Don't think about it. Fu Yuquan was speechless for a moment. He is not used to this kind of Ruan Tang. In the past, he always had the upper hand in front of Ruan Tang, saying what she did. Only now did he realize that when she didn't love him, he had nothing to do with her. Just as Ruan Tang was about to turn around, a chaotic sound of footsteps came from not far away. Ruan Tang looked up and found that it was his family. Mom and Dad, big brother, you. One of them suddenly raised his fist and strode over. Fu Yuquan, you bastard. My sister is pregnant and you asked her to drive to the hospital by herself. Are you still a person? The person who rushed over was Ruan Chen, Ruan Tang's own brother, who was also a famous sister control. Seeing that his fist was about to fall, Fu Yuquan grabbed his wrist and shook it away fiercely. Ruan Tang was afraid that his brother would suffer a loss, so he hurried forward to stop between the two. Brother. Ruan Chen breathed and looked at the poor girl with gauze wrapped around his head in pain. At this time, you are still protecting him. Do you think he has you in his eyes? Tang Tang, just beg you, there are many handsome men, don't be obsessed with it anymore. In his eyes, Ruan Tang is still the humble girl who only cares about Fu Yuquan. Ruan Tang looked up at his parents and saw that their faces were also full of heartache. She coughed softly and announced her memory loss on the spot. The Ruan family was shocked and speechless, but Ruan Chen's cheers were deafening. This is a great thing. Ruan's father also said, I have wronged you over the years. If you really think about it, we will definitely support you. Looking at the concerned look of the family of 3, Ruan Tang felt warm in his heart. She felt that she must have been blinded by lard in the past few years. She actually gave up such a good family and willingly guarded a man who did not love her. Chapter 7 Have a Child. At this time, the nurse came out of the ward and let Ruan's family in, saying that the old lady had something to say to her. A family of 3 had to leave Ruan Tang behind and walk into the ward. Only Ruan Tang and Fu Yuchuan are left in the corridor. Ruan Tang has nothing to say to him now. He sits on the bench and pretends to bow his head to study his mobile phone. As soon as I clicked on the screen, a piece of news popped up on the screen. Yixing Technology Company failed to raise funds again, and the enterprise may face asset liquidation to repay debts. Yixing Technology is Ruan Jiakai's company. Ruan Tang was stunned. Fu Yuchuan, who was beside him, looked down and scanned the screen of her mobile phone and said coldly, "Your father's company is not in a good business condition this year." Ruan Tang suddenly raised his eyes to look at him. "Did you do it?" Fu Yuchuan's face sank. "Of course not. No matter how much he doesn't like Ruan Tang, he won't deal with her family. Yixing Technology Company has not developed any new products in the past 2 years. It is normal for it to be squeezed by emerging enterprises and cannot continue to operate." Ruan Tang was speechless for a moment. Not long ago, she said harsh words to Fu Yuchuan that her family lacked nothing, but the reality slapped her so quickly. When her parents and elder brother saw her, they didn't mention anything about it, and did not force her not to divorce because Fu Yuchuan had money, and even encouraged her to divorce. Their love for her has never been reserved. And she married Fu Yuchuan from her ex-boyfriend, and now, she has to leave Fu Yuchuan capriciously. Is she really not responsible for this family? There was a noise in the ward, and I could vaguely hear the old lady saying sorry. Ruan Tang's eyes were slightly red, and he looked up at the tall Fu Yuchuan beside him. "You asked me what conditions I could give birth to a child." Fu Yuchuan seemed to have some expectations, and his face was still cold. "I can help your family get through this difficult time as long as you give birth to a child." Ruan Tang stood up and held back his tears. The gauze wrapped around his forehead was a little miserable, and his whole body looked pitiful. "I promise you that the child will be born for you, and then we will divorce." Fu Yuchuan is very indifferent. "Don't talk later. I'll talk to my family." Ruan Tang said a word. When Rua's family came out of the ward, Ruan Tang told them his decision to give birth to a child. Rua's family looked surprised, and Ruan Chen pulled Ruan Tang aside. "Did he threaten you?" "Brother, I know about the company. He said that giving birth to this child can help our family get through the difficulties." Ruan Tang smiled at him with bright eyes. Ruan Chen was speechless for a moment. "We can deal with the affairs at home, and you don't have to wrong yourself for us. Anyway, I've been married to him for 2 years, and it's not less than this year. In the past, I wronged myself when I was with him. Now, I'm just a simple transaction relationship, each taking what we need. You can rest assured that I don't love him anymore, let alone wrong myself." Ruan Tang's voice was not loud, but Fu Yuchuan, who was not far away, heard it clearly. Ruan Tang persuaded Ruan Chen a few more words. After clarifying the powerful relationship, Ruan Chen no longer objected. Before leaving, he glared at Fu Yuchuan viciously. Fu Yuchuan was used to his hostility, but his eyes changed a little when he looked at Ruan Tang. "Don't love if you don't love. Does she really think that feelings are child's play?" After Rua's family left, Fu Yuchuan also personally sent the old lady to the car. Ruan Tang looked around. "Excuse me, where is the car sent to me?" Chapter 8. She lost her memory. Hearing the words, Fu Yuchuan stretched out his hand to help her open the door and stopped in midair. He opened the door angrily and sat on it himself. "No." Ruan Tang raised his eyebrows. "Don't you want to leave by yourself? I'm pregnant now. Do you still want to have a child?" Fu Yuchuan. Although this guy has lost his memory, his brain is still as good as before. He knows how to blackmail him with the child's affairs. To get in the car. He closed the door directly. Ruan Tang took a look at the car and slowly walked to the other side to open the door. As soon as the buttocks were stable, the low-pressure man beside him said a word. "Do you know that you are pregnant and still drive by yourself? I think you don't want to keep this child at all." Ruan Tang was speechless. Although she doesn't remember what happened last night, she is at least sick now. The man doesn't care about her and accuses her. "I also want to ask you something. Why didn't you take me to the hospital last night? Let a pregnant woman drive by herself." Fu Yuchuan was choked. "I decided to leave last night and didn't look back to pay attention to her situation at all. In the end, take care of the loss by yourself." He turned his head out of the window. Ruan Tang took a look at him and felt like he had won a big victory. "Fu Yuchuan, I'm no longer the old Ruan Tang, and you don't want to PUA me like before, okay?" Fu Yuchuan grinded his back teeth. The car quickly drove to the lakeside villa where Ruan Tang lived alone. Ruan Tang got out of the car, but Fu Yuchuan was as steady as Mount Tai in the car. Ruan Tang took a few steps forward before turning around. "Won't you go home with me?" Fu Yuchuan's face is in the half-open window, like a precious oil painting with rich ink and color. "I don't live here." Ruan Tang looked up at the huge villa in front of him. The dark window gave people a very infiltration feeling. "Then you have to go. I won't see you off." Ruan Tang's back was dashing when he left. When he entered the door, he slammed the door and locked it. Fu Yuchuan was originally ready to be retained by her, and his slender fingers were put on the car door, but after hearing this, he couldn't help being stunned. Her dashing back was reflected in his dark pupils, and she felt strange in her heart. In the past, he left dashingly to give her a back shadow. Now, why did the character suddenly turn around? A sudden ringing interrupted his thoughts. Hello? Li Chuan, would you like to have a drink? At the other end of the phone is Fu Yuchuan's good friend, Lu Ting. Fu Yuchuan looked up at the closed door of the villa and whispered, okay. After hanging up the phone, he stopped lingering and asked the driver to drive to the pilot club. Li Chuan, here. In the private room, the light was dim, and the table was full of wine bottles. Only Lu Ting sat on the sofa and waved to him. Fu Yuchuan walked to his side, took off his coat and put it aside. And pulled his tie tiredly. Lu Ting saw that he was not in good condition and asked, what's the matter? Tired like this? Fu Yuchuan remembered a series of events that happened today and said, Ruan Tang lost his memory in a car accident. As soon as these words came out, there was no doubt that the nuclear bomb was shocking, and Lu Ting's eyes widened. Amnesia? I didn't forget you by chance, did I? This plot is a little familiar, and it is often played in TV series. Fu Yuchuan looked back at him with cold eyes. Lu Ting's eyes widened and drank a glass of wine to suppress his shock. Seeing Fu Yuchuan sitting still, he personally poured him another glass. After a while, Lu Ting smiled and said, isn't that good? You just didn't like her, so you just divorced her while she forgot. Chapter 9 Collect materials for divorce. After listening to him, Fu Yuchuan raised his head and poured another glass of wine. Can't leave, she is pregnant. Fu Yuchuan continued by taking care of himself. You know the recent situation of the Ruan family. I have negotiated with her. I gave her family financial support. She gave birth to the child to me, and then the two did not owe each other. Lord Tintin paused and suddenly said, by the way, have you found the person you have been looking for before? Fu Yuchuan looked stunned and said lightly, not yet. Lord Ting sighed, it depends on fate. After all, he didn't leave anything at the beginning. It's tantamount to looking for a needle in the sea. Fu Yuchuan didn't answer the phone and seemed to fall into some kind of memory. In the second half of the drink, the rich second generation in several circles took people into the private room. One of the women pointed directly at Fu Yuchuan. When everyone lowered their heads to find a seat, she strode to Fu Yuchuan and sat next to Fu Yuchuan. Before Fu Yuchuan spoke, the woman's soft chest was already attached to her arm. Mr. Fu, I have admired your name for a long time. The man sitting in the dark smiled and quietly raised his mobile phone to take a picture of the scene. In the villa, Ruan Tang had just finished taking a shower when his mobile phone rang. Clicking on the mobile phone, Ruan Tang saw a photo sent by a stranger. Her eyes first moved away from Fu Yuchuan's unforgettable face, and finally stopped on the woman's surging eyes. Damn it. It's so big. Ruan Tang carefully recalled the only 85 years of memory, and it seemed that he couldn't find a bigger comparison. Myself Ruan Tang looked down, just enough. It's not a cow competition. Then the mobile phone vibrated for a moment. Mrs. Fu, buy this photo for 200,000 yuan, otherwise this photo will appear in major news headlines tomorrow. Ruan Tang just realized that it turned out to be an extortion text message. Wait, is it so easy for rich people to earn? Since it is so easy to earn, it can't be let outsiders earn it. After all, after the Ruan family's incident, Ruan Tang has realized the importance of having savings. If I could take some more powerful photos and videos on the spot, wouldn't I have the evidence that Fu Yuchuan was messing around outside? When you get divorced, you can get more money to lay a solid economic foundation for your 30-year-old retirement. Ruan Tang replied in seconds. Address, interview. The other side thought that she didn't believe it, so she directly sent the address of the pilot meeting, accompanied by a mockery. Hasn't Mrs. Fu been used to it for so many years? Why do you want to witness it with your own eyes and hurt yourself again? Ruan Tang replied, it's none of your business. After saying that, the mobile phone number was blocked. In the private room, the man whose mobile phone number was blocked looked up at Fu Yuchuan, showing an optimistic look. But the next second, Fu Yuchuan looked back at the woman posted next to him, and his eyes were dark with anger. Get out of here. The sound is not loud, but no one is singing at this time. These three words hit everyone's eardrums with a sound. The scene suddenly fell into embarrassment. On the other hand, Ruan Tang changed his clothes, changed his meilashan during the day, and put on a hat to cover the gauze on his head. The villa is less than 10 minutes away from the pilot clubhouse. Along the way, Ruan Tang was fantasizing about what the scene would be like in the private room at this moment. If she rushes to Fu Yuchuan after taking photos, I guess he will be scared on the spot. It's exciting to think about it. Ruan Tang fell into his own fantasy and couldn't help giggling in the back seat. The driver was so creepy that he was laughed at. As soon as he got to the place to collect the money, he ran away quickly. Chapter 10 Who hasn't loved a scumbag? Ruan Tang walked into the pilot clubhouse. As soon as she entered the door, she was fascinated by the scenery in front of her. The hall is an open bar. Under the ambiguous warm light, countless handsome faces of male models keep flashing in front of them. It's not her fault. She is now an 18-year-old soul. At the age of 18, she is a good-looking dog, and she loves thin-mussed, cold, and white-skinned handsome men the most. It just so happens that the hall is full of her favorite types. While she was in a daze, a man on the buzzard not far away suddenly stood up and waved at her. Ruantang. Ruantang fixed his eyes. Isn't that his high school classmate, Xiao Lili? And at this time, there are at least 10 handsome men sitting next to Xiao Lili. Ruantang couldn't control his feet at all and walked quickly towards Xiao Lili. When she walked in, the eyes of the handsome men also stopped on her face. There is no doubt that she is very beautiful. Ruantang, why are you here? Xiao Lili's eyes swept across Ruantang's white-red face, and a trace of sarcasm flashed in her eyes. The next second, she said, sit down and play together. More than a dozen pairs of eyes stared, and Ruantang nodded in adamity. All right. I completely forgot the purpose of coming here. When the handsome men gave way to an empty seat, she sat down in the middle of the crowd. Ruantang, I really didn't expect to meet you here. Xiao Lili sat beside Ruantang and looked at her playfully. The two are not only high school classmates, but also college classmates. In the past, Ruantang was also very popular in the circle. The Ruang family had a great career. As the pearl in the palm of the Ruang family, Ruantang was beautiful and had a good personality. Naturally, she was sought after by countless people. Zhou Lili is so jealous. But everything changed after Ruantang married Fu Yuchuan. She not only abandoned her studies, but also stayed away from her former friends. Don't talk about it, even at school, it's rare to see her. That's why Zhou Lili thinks it's amazing that she will appear in such a place. As soon as she turned her eyes, Xiao Lili thought of a possibility. She approached Ruantang and whispered, are you here to find Fu Yuchua? This is the most high-end entertainment club in Langcheng, and many of Fu Yuchua's lace news is spread from here. Ruantang recovered from the beauty of many handsome men before he remembered his purpose. She smiled shyly, you cannot look for it. Xiao Lili was stunned. What does this mean? It's not to find Fu Yuchuan, but to find a male model. It is possible to put this on others, but it is absolutely impossible for Ruantang. Xiao Lili said, don't be kidding. For so many years, who doesn't know that there is only Fu Yuchuan in your heart? Speaking of which, I also admire you very much. In order to marry him, you actually thought of climbing into his bed in the middle of the night to force you to marry. This method is really clever. If I like a man in the future, I will definitely ask for advice. You.it. Seems to be a compliment, but it is actually a mockery. Ruantang heard something wrong and blurted out, I climbed into his bed in order to marry him. She didn't expect that she would do such a thing, but if you think about it carefully, it's not that you can't do it. Xiao Lili sneered, don't tell me that you forgot. She felt that something seemed to be wrong with Ruantang, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. Ruantang laughed awkwardly and didn't want to make his memory loss known to everyone. He said, why do you have to mention the past again? Who hasn't fallen in love with scum when they are young? Chapter 11, Play Separately. Zhou Lili? Fu Yuchuan, who just came behind him. Ruantang was completely unaware of the reaction of others. He looked at a handsome man pouring wine for himself in front of him and said with a smile, thank you, little brother, but I can't drink alcohol. I just need to drink milk. The handsome man immediately got up and asked for service. The staff brought a box of milk, and the handsome little face was full of smiles. Of course, people with milk should drink milk. The greasy remarks made Ruantang down in an instant. She doesn't want to pick up the box of milk. But suddenly a hand was stretched out behind him, with distinct joints and slightly convex blue veins, accompanied by a familiar high-end male fragrance. With a snap, the milk was pinched and burst in the air, flowing all over the table. Ruantang immediately avoided the scene for fear of staining his trousers. Before I could look back, a low voice had fallen into my ears. Scum. Such a deep and beautiful voice, except for Fu Yuchuan, can't find a second one. Ruantang's whole body stiffened. It's a famous saying that disaster comes from the mouth. Mr. Fu, wipe your hands. Zhou Lili returned to her senses in a panic and handed over a tissue. At the same time, she had a sarcastic smile on the corner of her mouth. Originally, she just wanted to call Ruantang over to be sarcastic, but she didn't expect that Ruantang herself dared to arrange Fu Yuchuan like this. Let's wait and watch the drama. Fu Yuchuan's eyes were hooked on Ruantang's well-behaved little face. Instead of responding to Xiao Lili beside him, he withdrew his hand and looked down at Ruantang. Are you dumb? He was originally upset by the woman in the private room and wanted to go home directly. As a result, when he walked into the hall, he accidentally saw Ruantang sitting in the male model pile. That shy look was once only shown in front of him. Fu Yuchuan suddenly came up with anger, and then he wanted to have a look. As a result, as soon as I got closer, I heard her famous sayings. It turned out that in her eyes, falling in love with him was a scumbag. Ruantang took the tissue from Xiao Lili's frozen hand in the air and handed it to Fu Yuchuan. Can you wipe your hands first? She has to think about how to fool around. To everyone's surprise, Fu Yuchuan actually took the tissue from her hand. He doesn't wiped his hands carefully, but his eyes stared straight at Ruan Tang, as if he were an exer who was about to take out a butcher knife. Ruan Tang thought for a long time and couldn't think of a word, and the scene fell into embarrassment. Fu Yuchuan finished wiping his hands and suddenly turned around and left. Before Ruan Tang could breathe a sigh of relief, the tall figure in front of him paused again and said coldly, "Don't you want to follow?" Ruan Tang, who was at a loss, did not dare to refute. He turned around and showed a look of regret to the handsome men and waved his hand to say goodbye. Fu Yuchuan took a deep breath when he heard the word goodbye. He walked in front, and Ruan Tang followed him cautiously. The two walked out of the clubhouse and finally got into Fu Yuchuan's car. Fu Yuchuan opened his mouth first to break the silence. "What are you doing here?" He didn't want to continue to pester the scum. After all, Ruan Tang and Ruan Tang in his impression are too different. He is almost sure that she will say more words that will make him speechless in the future. Ruan Tang blinked and "I'll play." She certainly can't say that she is here to take his gossip photos. Play. The faces of the 10 male models just now flashed through my mind, and a few words popped out between Fu Yuchuan's teeth. "I didn't expect you to play quite well." Ruan Tang subconsciously refuted him. "You play with women and I play with men. Let's play separately." Chapter 12 Personal Space. Fu Yuchuan's temple jumped straight. "When did I play with women? She is a pregnant woman." She ran to such a place to play with male models and splashed a basin of dirty water on his head. Ruan Tang didn't want to continue to hold back his anger. He simply took out his mobile phone and showed him the photo he had received before. "Well, someone else sent it to me." The woman's proud bust in the photo is simply exaggerated. Fu Yuchuan's temples jumped even more violently. He carefully recalled the situation in the private room and said directly, "You can't see it. Is this someone else who deliberately took a picture and sent it to you?" Ruan Tang took back his mobile phone and said twice, "I didn't say you can't play, but you can't do double standards. Forget it, I'm tired. Send me back." Ruan Tang leaned on the back of the chair. Whether Fu Yuchuan plays with women or not, it's none of her business. She just regrets the failure of the adultery operation tonight, which is far from the goal of Sasoming pension. She was really tired and felt a little sleepy after leaning on the back of the chair for a while. "Drive back to the lakeside villa." Fu Yuchuan gave instructions to the driver. The car was speeding on the highway, and Ruan Tang leaned on the back of the chair defenselessly and fell asleep. When the car stopped, Fu Yuchuan woke up Ruan Tang. Arrived. Ruan Tang opened his sleepy eyes and looked out of the window in a daze. When he opened his mouth, there was a nasal sound, as if he was being spoiled. "Thank you for sending me back." As soon as she got out of the car, Fu Yuchuan also got out of the car and followed her. She turned around immediately. "Don't you live here?" Fu Yuchuan went straight past her, walked to the gate and held down the fingerprint lock. Then he turned around, and his cold and fierce face became more and more breathtaking under the light of the porch. "I'm staying here tonight." Ruan Tang's mind buzzed. Just about to drive Fu Yuchuan away, Fu Yuchuan had already pushed the door open and strode in. When Ruan Tang quickly followed, Fu Yuchuan had begun to unbutton his shirt. Seeing that his abdominal muscles were about to be exposed, Ruan Tang hurriedly shouted to stop. "Why are you staying here tonight?" Fu Yuchuan's hand stopped, "Because I was afraid that you would go out to play again." The word play is a stress, which is meaningful. Not to mention that she is a pregnant woman, the fact that she is sitting among 10 male models alone will make him and the whole family become a laughingstock. Ruan Tang had the feeling of picking up a stone and hitting his foot. "I won't go out today. I think it's better for us to give each other some personal space." As soon as the words fell, Fu Yuchuan suddenly strode towards her. A sense of oppression enveloped him, and his eyes were deep. "Personal space? You didn't say that when you were in bed before. If you can't hear this mockery, Ruan Tang's past life will also be in vain." She came up with anger. "I don't know how humble I used to be in front of this man, so that he could take out such a thing to satirize her at will. It used to be the past, and now it's now. Fu Yuchuan, do you really think I liked you so much before? All I like is your face. I don't like the connotation of you at all." After saying that, Ruan Tang turned around angrily and walked into the master bedroom, and slammed the door with a bang. Only Fu Yuchuan in the living room stood in place with a pale face. The only person who had insomnia this night was Fu Yuchuan. Ruan Tang slept soundly and was woken up by the alarm clock in the morning. Chapter 13 Do? She looked at the note on the alarm clock, which showed that she had to go to school today. Ruan Tang didn't even get up to see Fu Yuchuan. He took a taxi to school alone. As soon as I arrived at the school gate, the voice of Zhou Lili came from behind me. "Ruan Tang." Ruan Tang turned around and smiled, "Good morning." Seeing that she was still smiling at her, her expression stiffened. Soon, she pretended to go up and took her arm intimately. "I'm really sorry yesterday. I didn't notice that Fu Yuchuan also came over. By the way, he didn't trouble you after he went back, did he?" Ruan Tang sensed Xiao Lili's excessive concern for him, quietly distanced himself from her, and pulled his arm out of her hand. "No, why did he trouble me?" Xiao Lili was stunned. You ran to the clubhouse alone and with so many men. Isn't he angry? She thought it was too high and low to have a divorce. Noticing the regret on her face, Ruan Tang turned his eyes and pretended to be distressed and said, "Don't say anything, he really bothered me." Xiao Lili's eyes lit up, and she couldn't be too happy. She also said with concern, then why did he trouble you? Ruan Tang blinked his eyes. He went back and made trouble with me, saying that I would rather play with a male model than play with him. He was so angry that he slept with me in a room at night. Let me tell you, you can't find a man like Fu Yuchuan. It's too clingy. There is no private space at all. Xiao Lili was a little suspicious. The person in front of her was not Ruan Tang, and the Fu Yuchuan she said was not Fu Yuchuan either. Just as the class bell rang, Xiao Lili had to walk quickly into the classroom, and Ruan Tang also followed her into the classroom. After a few classes, Ruan Tang became familiar with the students around him, and he also understood what he had lost for Fu Yuchuan in the past 4 years. After school in the afternoon, Ruan Tang specially went to the library to borrow a pile of books. He planned to take advantage of the 3 months before graduation to supplement his knowledge and strive for a smooth graduation. As soon as she arrived at the school gate, Xiao Lili chased after her again. This time, she was followed by a group of classmates. Ruan Tang, you won't go home alone again, will you? How lonely is it? My family came to pick me up. How about I take you home first? She had a smile on her face, but there was a sense of unkind sarcasm. Ruan Tang turned her head and immediately understood what she meant. This is to embarrass yourself in front of everyone. Because I told her before that Fu Yuchuan liked what he liked. As a result, Fu Yuchuan didn't come to pick him up after school, and he had to take a taxi home by himself. Ruan Tang smiled slightly. Her voice was suddenly interrupted by the sound of a car horn. The crowd at the gate of the school looked up. A black Maybach parked on the side of the road, the door was pushed open, and a pair of long legs stepped out. Fu Yuchuan's unforgettable handsome face appeared in front of everyone. Ruan Tang was stunned. He really didn't expect that he would come. Originally, she wanted to stay away from this man, but now that Xiao Lili and others are watching, she can't hit herself in the face. Brother Li Chuan. Ruan Tang turned around and showed an exaggerated smile. She trotted all the way towards Fu Yuchuan with the book in her arms. Fu Yuchuan's heart was raised. Does she remember that she was a pregnant woman? There was no other way. Fu Yuchuan could only stride towards her. Running for what? Ruan Tang braked urgently in front of him and shook his body. Fu Yuchuan subconsciously raised his hand to hold her waist and took her in his arms. If you don't want to give birth to this child, just say it as soon as possible, so that everyone will be worried. Chapter 14 Can't Give Up on Me. Originally, he was upset when he was close to Ruan Tang, and he was accused like this. He was even more angry and lowered his voice to fight back. Isn't it your Fu family who pulled me off the operating table? If it hadn't been for Mrs. Fu's medical trouble, she would have given birth to the child, divorced him innocently, and be a stranger. Fu Yuchuan was stunned for a moment. The smile that Ruan Tang just ran to him unexpectedly made him forget that she was no longer the Ruan Tang she used to be. She doesn't remember everything, nor does she remember loving him. Not only does she not love him, but she is also clever and likes to play with male models. The two people were fighting with each other, but they fell into the eyes of the group of Xiao Lili. The two of them were close and whispered to each other. The relationship was very good. Xiao Lili, who was waiting to see Ruan Tang's joke, was dumbfounded. It was not until she was pushed by the classmates next to her that she got on the car and left with a lot of trouble. As soon as Xiao Lili's car left, Ruan Tang pushed Fu Yuchuan away from her arms. What are you doing in school? Did you quarrel with me? Fu Yuchuan suppressed the fire in his heart and took a deep breath before saying, Today, you go back to my old house for dinner with me. My parents want to see you. It feels like a home banquet when I hear it. Ruan Tang no longer remembers them, and he doesn't really want to go. Our original agreement didn't have dinner with your parents. Tell me, what conditions do you need to go? He wants to see what other unreasonable requests she can make. Ruan Tang said coldly, From now on, you are not allowed to touch me, and I will not fulfill any marital obligations with you. Fu Yuchuan was dumbfounded. Do you agree or not? Ruan Tang asked. Fu Yuchuan gritted his teeth and said yes. He doesn't have to sleep with her. After getting on the bus, Ruan Tang played with his mobile phone by himself. Fu Yuchuan glanced at her inadvertently and saw that she was changing the notes to the mobile phone number. A red heart was deleted, and the word Fu Yuchuan was typed neatly. For a moment, Fu Yuchuan felt a little uncomfortable. Although he wanted to draw a clear line with Ruan Tang than anyone else, when he saw that she really started to do so, he felt empty again. Ruan Tang doesn't know anything about the entangled psychology of the people around her. She now regards Fu Yuchuan as a partner. If possible, she will try not to be entangled, and wait for the child to be separated in a lifetime. While the car was driving, Ruan Tang received a call from Rue's father. Tang Tang, the financial crisis of the company has been resolved. It's just that this is in exchange for your compromise. As a father, Hearing that my father was sad, Ruantang suddenly felt bad. Dad, don't think so much. Didn't Fu Yuchuan and I have been like this in the past few years? I have to endure it for another year at most. It's not a big deal. Fu Yuchuan beside him. Is it something that needs to be patient with him now? Ruantang felt the oppressive gaze cast from her, and suddenly remembered that Fu Yuchuan herself was still by her side, but she was telling the truth and did not feel guilty. She turned her head out of the window and said a few words to Rue's father before hanging up the phone. As soon as the phone hung up, Ruantang was about to close his eyes and rest for a while. Fu Yuchuan next to him said something. It's hard for you, and you have to endure it for another year. Ruantang wanted to laugh and said, what are you angry about? Isn't it painful for you to be with me? In fact, you should be happy that I lost my memory, otherwise, according to how much I liked you before, I wouldn't want to divorce you. She paused and suddenly leaned towards Fu Yuchuan. Or do you want to divorce me now? Can't give up on me. Chapter 15. Water was splashed on the face. The mouth is faster than the brain. Fu Yuchuan lowered his eyebrows and blurted out. You dream. There was no disappointment on Ruantang's face, only the calmness he had expected long ago. She retreated and shrugged her shoulders. That's enough. You are enduring this marriage, and I am also enduring, so let's spend this year in peace, and then get together and break up. As soon as she finished her words, the car stopped at the door of the old house. There are several people standing at the door, looking this way. Ruantang quickly packed up his good mood, put on a good smile, and pushed the door to get out of the car. Tang Tang. Mrs. Fu was the first to greet her and held Ruantang's hands passionately. Ruantang looked at the people behind her. A middle-aged couple who looked reserved should be Fu Yuchuan's parents. And who is the young woman beside him who is cold to me? Just when Ruantang was puzzled, Mrs. Fu had kindly taken her home. A group of people followed them. Ruantang temporarily suppressed her doubts. Mrs. Fu believes in Buddhism and is a vegetarian. She doesn't eat dinner with her family. She pulled Ruantang and talked for a while, asked her to come to her after dinner and left. As soon as Ruantang's buttocks touched the sofa, the middle-aged man with similar eyebrows to Fu Yuchuan looked at Fu Yuchuan and said, Li Chuan, come with me to the study. I have something to ask you. Only Fu Yuchuan's mother and the young girl who has been staring at her are left in the hall. Fu's mother smiled and said, Tang Tang, I heard that you had a car accident 2 days ago, and we didn't have time to visit you in the hospital. Are you okay now? As the saying goes, don't reach out and hit the smiling person. Ruantang didn't want to be crazy about Fu Yuchuan's family. She replied obediently, it's just a small car accident, and now it's okay. Fu's mother said, that's good. Ruantang nodded and wanted to ignore the gaze of the girl from the opposite side, but she had been staring at her, which was really difficult to ignore. Ruantang couldn't help asking, is there anything on my face? The girl on the opposite side snorted coldly and blurted out, yes, dirty things, it's annoying to see. Ruantang was stunned. I don't know who she is. She hates her appearance very much. Girlfriend? White moonlight? Child daughter-in-law? While she was thinking nonsense, Fu's mother said gently, Xiao Xiao, how can you talk to your sister-in-law like this? It turns out that this is Fu Yuchuan's sister. Seeing that Fu Xiaoxiao was very hostile to him, Ruantang didn't want to provoke her, and bowed his head and drank saliva. But she doesn't want to provoke others, but others want to provoke her. Fu Xiaoxiao has been looking forward to the divorce of the two, but now that the news of Ruantang's pregnancy has come out, the marriage will definitely be inseparable. She felt angry in her heart and stood up. Am I wrong? She is so dirty. If she hadn't pretended to be drunk and climbed into her brother's bed, her brother would not have been forced to marry her by grandma and father at all. After she finished speaking, she picked up the glass of water beside her and splashed it over. Ruantang didn't expect this at all, and his face was splashed with water. She was no longer the 22-year-old Ruantang, who was holding back her anger. She was also angry. She was about to look up and speak, but was robbed by Fu's mother, who had a Bodhisattva's face beside her. Mother Zhang, hurry up and get a clean towel to wipe the young grandmother's face. When Zhang's mother brought the towel and handed it to Ruantang, she held down the angry Fu Xiaoxiao and pretended to scold, Xiao Xiao, what are you doing? No matter how bad she is still your sister-in-law. How can you splash water on her? Sit down quickly and don't make your father angry again. After pressing Fu Xiaoxiao, she turned her head to look at Ruantang. Chapter 16. Counterattack. Tang Tang, you know that Xiao Xiao is young and ignorant. You are a sister-in-law and should learn to be tolerant. Don't take it to heart, okay? Listen tunely. Then did Ruantang understand that Fu's mother was on the side of her daughter. Fu Xiaoxiao was so fearless that she dared to splash water on herself, which must be without Fu's mother's support. How many times have these two people bullied themselves before? Ruantang doesn't remember, but he also knows the context. Mother Zhang, go and see if the master is well. Hurry up and have a meal. Everyone should be hungry. Fu's mother thought that the matter was over, and Zhang Luo's dinner had begun as if nothing had happened. But the next second, Ruantang threw the dry towel to the ground and stood up. Mrs. Fu, you are right. Your daughter is young and ignorant, but you, as a parent, don't seem to be very sensible. Since you are all ignorant, I will teach you how to behave today. After saying that, she suddenly picked up the kettle on the table. In Fu's mother's shocked eyes, Ruantang threw the kettle forward. With a loud bang, the huge water column slapped Fu Xiaoxiao's face fiercely like a slap. Fu Xiaoxiao was stunned for a moment and looked at Ruantang blankly. Is this Ruantang? Fu's mother was also stunned on the spot. Looking at the stunned look of the two, Ruantang was in a good mood. She smiled and wiped off the water drops on her eyelashes. This is my first lesson for my daughter. You're welcome. I won't eat this meal. I can't eat it. You family can eat slowly. In the shocked eyes of a gun, she raised her feet and walked towards the gate, walked a few steps and looked back at Fu's mother. By the way, Mrs. Fu, if there is a next time, I won't throw her alone. After saying that, he turned around, and Fu Xiaoxiao's scream behind him was deafening. Ruantang laughed to death. Do you really want her to be the soft steamed bun she used to be? Pinch hard. Now Ruantang only adheres to one principle: instead of consuming herself internally, it is better to go crazy and consume others internally. Fu Xiaoxiao looked at the gate and roared, Ruantang, you madman, get out of here. These words happened to be heard by Fu Yuchuan and Fu Hong, who had just got downstairs. Fu Hong frowned and said, Fu Xiaoxiao, who are you cursing with your mouth? Where are Tung people? Fu Xiaoxiao turned around and saw her father and cried, Dad. Ruantang splashed me with a kettle and ran away. She is just a madman. Fu Hong froze in place. Fu Yuchuan glanced at the wet Fu Xiaoxiao, but understood something. He didn't tell Fu's family about Ruantang's amnesia. It is estimated that Fu Xiaoxiao scolded Ruantang again. In the past, Ruantang could only hold back his anger. But now Ruantang can't do it. He sank his eyebrows, raised his feet and walked towards the gate. He walked a few steps and looked back at Fu Xiaoxiao. Don't mess with her in the future. Fu Xiaoxiao was stunned, brother. At the gate, Ruantang wrung the water on his clothes with his hands and looked around from time to time to see if there were any cars passing by. But after waiting for a while I didn't see a car. It was only March. She was wearing wet clothes and shivering with cold when the wind blew. She could only hug herself to warm herself up. Suddenly, Fu Yuchua's voice came from behind him. He threw people and ran away. Ruantang didn't turn around, and his tone was cold. Don't teach your father. If you have time to go back and teach your sister how to respect people. If there is another time, I can't guarantee whether it will be sulfuric acid on her face. As soon as she ran out of her words, Fu Yuchuan came to her. Chapter 17 The heroine of the bitter drama. He looked at her condescendingly, only then did he notice that her hair was wet and her clothes were on her body. The thin body trembled in the cold wind, which was a little pitiful. Fu Yuchuan raised his hand and reached out to her. Ruantang's whole body stiffened and looked up at him, but his wet eyes reflected a light under the street lamp. Want to take out your anger for your sister? Do you dare to touch me? Fu Yuchuan's hand paused in the air, and then he realized that he actually wanted to help her lift her hair. His face was cold and he withdrew his hand. Since you are so capable, you must be able to find a way to go home by yourself, right? Before Ruantang understood what he was going to do, he turned around and called, asked the driver to drive over, and then got into the car in front of her. The car was gone, leaving only a touch of red tail light reflected in Ruantang's sight. Ruantang gritted his teeth angrily and raised his middle finger at the car. Scumbag. Mr. Fu, there is no taxi near this villa, so let your wife wait alone. She had just been discharged from the hospital. I'm afraid. The driver drove the car, looked at the thin figure in the reflector, and couldn't help saying something for Ruantang. Fu Yuchua's cold eyes were refracted to the driver's face in the rearview mirror, like a sharp blade cut. Lao Chen, why didn't I notice that you took care of her so much before? If you think she is cold, you can go down and take off her clothes and walk down the mountain with her. The driver stiffened and closed his mouth firmly. Fu Yuchuan looked out of the window again. Even the street lights on the dark mountain road looked sinister. Ruantang won't be hard for long. Her personality is still the same even if she loses her memory, and she will definitely call herself to show weakness. He took his mobile phone out of his pocket and put it on the seat beside him. At the entrance of the villa, Ruantang directly took out his mobile phone and called his brother Ruanchen. Does this family really think of her as the heroine of a bitter drama? Can you only walk down the mountain in wet clothes by yourself? Mobile phones as decorations? Half an hour later, Ruanchen's car appeared at the door of the villa. As soon as he saw Ruantang's embarrassed appearance, he was speechlessly distressed and rushed out of the car and put his clothes on her. Fu Yuchua's family is all bastards. Forget it, don't forget that the Fu family is the investor of the Ruan family now. Ruanchen froze and looked back at his sister's smiling face that pretended to be strong, and his eyes turned red. It's all my brother who doesn't fight. Stop, don't give me this. I'm going to die of cold. Send me back quickly. Ruanchen helped her get into the car and turned the heating to the highest. Along the way, Ruan Chen did not stop complaining about Fu Yuchuan's evil deeds over the years. Ruan Tang listened to it like a book, and fell asleep after listening to it. When the car stopped, Ruan Tang also opened his eyes. Arrived? She pushed the door open and got out of the car. Ruan Chen couldn't help saying, "You and he are just in an agreement now, or you can move home directly." I don't think he dares to say anything. Ruan Tang, why did I move back? I just want to be angry with Fu Yuchuan under his eyes. Don't worry, Fu Xiao didn't get a favor. She splashed a glass of water on me, and I threw a pot on her, mainly to repay the kindness of a drop of water as a spring. That's what I said. In fact, she knew in her heart that the circle was so big that if you suddenly move back to your mother's house, you will definitely make a fuss. A family like the Fu family values reputation and makes an ugly fuss. Maybe the child will not want it directly, and the money invested in the Ruan family will have to be taken back. Ruan Chen saw that she didn't want to go back and didn't force her. When he was about to get on the car, he turned around and said something. By the way, Song Sili will return to China tomorrow. He said he hasn't seen you for a long time and wants to have a meal with you. Will you come? Song Sili. Chapter 18 Dating Other Men. Ruan Tang remembered that he was Ruan Chen's good friend for many years and his brother who watched him grow up since he was a child. Later, he went abroad when he was in college. All right. She agreed with a smile. In the villa, Fu Yuchuan's face turned pale. He waited until he got home and didn't wait for Ruan Tang's call. When he was about to call the old house to ask about the situation, the sound of unlocking came from the gate of the villa. Ruan Tang came in wearing a men's coat. Seeing Fu Yuchuan, she skimmed with an expressionless face and strode towards the bedroom. Stop. Fu Yuchuan's eyes fell on the expensive men's coat, got up calmly and walked towards her. Ruan Tang looked at the tall man who was walking with some fatigue. What's the matter again? Unexpectedly, as soon as she finished speaking, Fu Yuchuan suddenly stretched out his hand to pull her coat and pulled it hard. Fu Yuchuan's movements were very fast. Ruan Tang did not react and was held hostage by his huge force. At the moment when her coat was pulled to Fu Yuchuan, her whole body also rushed to him. With a thud, the bridge of Ruan Tang's nose hit Fu Yuchuan's chest muscles, and his eyes turned black in pain. Fu Yuchuan probably didn't expect that she would suddenly bump into it, and her whole body froze. The living room was strangely silent. Until Fu Yuchuan jumped out a few words between his teeth. How long will you stay in my arms? He just didn't like the coat and wanted to tear it off. Ruan Tang stretched out his hand and rubbed the bridge of his nose, and quickly retreated from his arms, with a burning voice. Are you sick? Fu Yuchuan looked down at her and blurted out, whose coat is this? Ruan Tang made his coat, rolled his eyes, and said, can't you see it? Men's. Fu Yuchuan's temple jumped straight. See, come out, come. That's what I can see, so I have to ask. He waited for so long. When she called and gave in, he went back to pick her up. Unexpectedly, she moved so fast that she had found a man to send her back. I saw it and asked. It's an Evers. After saying that, Ruan Tang wanted to bypass him, and was grabbed by him again. He pulled back, and Ruan Tang was dragged back. Don't let me ask for the third time, which man's coat is this? Looking at his angry look, Ruan Tang recalled the past that his brother said in the car. This man was very casual to her. After marriage, he separated and treated her as a hotel. Thinking about it, he left if he wanted to leave, but he didn't care whether she was angry or not. She smiled slightly. You should know Song Sili, right? My brother's friend, who has been watching me grow up since he was a child, has just returned to China, and he sent me back. He not only sent me back, but also made an appointment to have lunch with me tomorrow. Fu Yuchuan stared at Ruan Tang and saw the playfulness in her eyes. She did it on purpose. I deliberately wore this coat into the door to make myself angry. If you are really angry, doesn't it show that you care about her? Do you care about this marriage? Fu Yuchuan's hand slowly loosened. Ruan Tang didn't stay when he saw him let go. He withdrew his hand and strode into the bedroom. When the bedroom door slammed shut, Fu Yuchuan's face was as black as the bottom of the pot. He shouldn't be angry. Why should he be angry? She just needs to give birth to the child. He also strode into the second bedroom, but he didn't sleep well that night. The next day, Ruan Tang slept until 11 o'clock before being woken up by Mrs. Fu's phone call. Mrs. Fu knew what happened yesterday and didn't call her for fear of disturbing her rest at night. At this time, she thought she was awake and came to comfort her. Ruan Tang didn't take what happened yesterday to heart. After all, she also retaliated. As soon as the phone was hung up, she received another call and pressed the answer button without looking at it. Hello? Tang Tang, are you up? That male voice is gentle and deep, and the beautiful ears are pregnant. Chapter 19, I also fantasized. Ruan Tang sat up from the bed and picked up his mobile phone and took a look. Brother Sili. Song Sili, as his name. He is handsome and elegant, humble and polite. He and Ruan Chen grew up in an open crotch pants since childhood. One is active and the other is quiet, and their personalities are extremely complementary. Once upon a time, at the age when his sinuses were just beginning, Ruan Tang also had a fantasy about this gentle and considerate big brother. Later, when he grew up, he found that this dish was not his own. She still likes to have a wild personality. Thank you, brother Silly. At the dinner table, Ruan Tang thanked Song Silly, who poured water for herself. In front of her two brothers, she changed her lively personality, well-behaved and polite. Song Silly sat opposite her in a white shirt, lowered her eyes and smiled lightly. A pair of phoenix eyes gave people the illusion of deep affection. We haven't seen each other for several years, and Tang Tao looks the same as before. Ruan Chen answered, what's the same? Song Silly looked at Ruan Tang, just as young and lovely. Brother Silly is kidding me. I'm 22 years old and I'm already an adult. It's so close that I almost blurted out 85. I guess I'll be treated as a crazy woman. The waiter served the food, and the table was full of Ruan Tang's favorite food. Ruan Chen picked up the dishes for her from time to time, and the love was overflowing. While eating, Ruan Tang listened to Ruan Chen ask about Song Silly's experience over the years, and then knew that he planned to inherit the Song family when he returned to China this time and stay in China in the future. It's good in China. I'm used to eating and drinking. Ruan Tang answered casually. Song Silly looked over again and said with a smile, yes, people are used to it. The three of them only cared about eating and joking, and no one noticed that at the dining table next door, two pairs of eyes were observing their every move through the transparent glass door. When he saw the indescribable smile on Ruan Tang's face, Luo Ting opened his mouth. Unexpectedly, Ruan Tang's market is quite good. She is surrounded by first-class handsome men. Look at how happy she smiles. The person sitting opposite him is Fu Yuchuan. Hearing this, Fu Yuchuan's eyebrows sank, and he stared at him unhappily. Are you here for dinner or to see her? Luo Ting has for some unknown reasons. He looked around and said, I want to ask you, what do you want to do when you suddenly call me to such a place for dinner at noon? This is a restaurant in the mall, and the environment is also ordinary. In the past, Fu Yuchuan would not have come to such a place even if he was beaten to death. It seems strange to suddenly ask him to come over for dinner today. Fu Yuchuan paused to drink water and looked away unnaturally. I'll treat you to dinner. Are you still not happy? A trace of unnaturalness in his expression was captured by Luo Ting. Luo Ting looked back at Ruan Tang and suddenly understood something. He raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, damn, don't you know that Ruan Tang came here for dinner and wanted to spy on her? It was too embarrassing to come alone, so you called me with you, right? Fu Yuchuan almost spit out a mouthful of water and swallowed it with difficulty. He looked at Luo Ting with a trace of anger in his eyebrows. Nonsense. Seeing him like this, he almost solidified his guess. Luo Ting said, did I talk nonsense? Someone knows it himself. Fu Yuchuan was speechless. He just wanted to see how far Ruan Tang and Song Silly had progressed, and he didn't have any other ideas. Just as there was silence at the dinner table, the scene on Ruan Tang's side suddenly attracted Fu Yuchuan's eyes, making his fists clenched. Ruan Tang accidentally splashed water on her body, but she was still wearing a white top. After the fabric was wet, it immediately pressed against her chest. Chapter 20 Fu Yuchuan insults. But what made Fu Yuchuan clench his fist was not only that, but also Song Silly. He took the tissue and stretched it out to Ruan Tang's chest without saying a word. Although he reacted in time and stopped the action the second before he touched it, it was enough for Fu Yuchuan to feel offended. After all, Ruan Tang is still his wife. It's not very uncomfortable to have a wife co-vested. Luo Ting frowned and said, how about we go and have a look? He was also worried that Ruan Tang was inconscut, so he really cheated on Fu Yuchuan before the divorce. However, after listening to his words, Fu Yuchuan did not act immediately, but still sat on the seat, despite an angry expression that was about to pass away, and his mouth was harder than a duck. You don't even look at Song Silly's background. The Ruan family is not bad, but she is a married woman and pregnant with children. Will Song Silly really like her? The next second, Song Silly at the other end seemed to be confirming Fu Yuchuan's words. When Ruan Tang waved his hand and walked to the bathroom, Song Silly also raised her feet and left the restaurant in a hurry. This scene fell in the eyes of Fu Yuchuan and Luo Ting, which was to escape impatiently. Fu Yuchuan snorted coldly. What a good market does Ruan Tang really think he has? Ridiculous. Just as Ruan Chen also followed the direction of Song Silly's departure, Fu Yuchuan drooped his eyebrows slightly, picked up the suit jacket on the back of the chair and put it on his forearm. Go over. Luo Ting didn't dare to ask more questions and followed him to the restaurant next door. When the two came to the dining table, Ruan Tang had just sorted out his wet clothes and came out of the bathroom. Her eyes swept across the table without seeing the familiar face, and then she was shocked by the sudden appearance of Fu Yuchuan. Fu Yuchuan, how could you? Fu Yuchuan's eyes were fixed on her chest. Although it has been wiped hard by the paper towel, it still looks wet, and it should not be comfortable to stick to the body. Since she is now a pregnant woman, Fu Yuchuan doesn't want to argue with her too much. Are you full? Come back with me when you are full. Ha! Ruan Tang still didn't recover. Where did the eldest brother and Song Sili go? How can she leave with Fu Yuchuan like this? I have to call the eldest brother to ask about the situation. Ruan Tang lowered his head to touch his pocket, only to find that the mobile phone was placed on the dining table behind Fu Yuchuan. She raised her feet and walked towards Fu Yuchuan. Fu Yuchuan stared at her. Under the offensive of her bright eyes, he didn't know how to react for a moment. Until she came to herself, she leaned against herself. When Fu Yuchuan's breathing almost stopped, he heard Ruan Tang say, "I'm sorry, I'll take a mobile phone. By the way, you and your friend go first. I came with my eldest brother. He will send me back safely after we finish eating." She bypassed Fu Yuchuan and got the mobile phone on the table. When she was about to turn around and leave to make a phone call, her arm was held by a force. She turned around and met Fu Yuchuan's sudden gloomy eyebrows. "What else?" Fu Yuchuan clenched her hand and said in a cold tone. "Do you really think I will be jealous of you and Song Sili?" Ruan Tang felt that he was very inexplicable. "I don't know what you are talking about. Ruan Tang, whether in the past or now, your positioning of yourself is not clear and accurate enough." Fu Yuchuan's thin lips closed one by one, and his voice was beautiful, but his words were sharp. "Whether you have amnesia or not, you don't have the capital to please men, let alone the ability to retain men. It is not inappropriate for you to try to use Song Sili to anger me. You overestimate your position in my heart and your charm in front of Song Sili. I used to think you were ridiculous, but today I think you are pitiful." Chapter 21 Grievances. His voice fell like a heavy punch on Ruan Tang's face. She couldn't recall any memories, but her heart instinctively began to contract, sore and swollen, and fine beads of sweat oozed from her forehead. Fu Yuchuan took 2 steps forward, picked up the coat on his arm and handed it to her. "Put on your clothes and go back with me." He looked at Ruan Tang intently and didn't feel that there was anything wrong with his behavior. Until Ruan Tang knocked off the clothes he handed over with a snap. While saying that he looked down on me, he tied me up by his side. "Is the poor one you or me?" Fu Yuchuan gritted his teeth. "I'll tie you up? Didn't the Ruan family need help? Did you ask me for help?" "On the surface, it's true," Ruan Tang admitted generously. The next second, he turned around, "But you readily agreed. Obviously, you can refuse me. Obviously, you can randomly find 10 or 8 women to give birth to children for you. Obviously, if you wave your hand, our Ruan family will be doomed, but you didn't." The corners of Ruan Tang's mouth rose, revealing 2 shallow pear swirls. "Fu Yuchuan, your mouth, you don't like me, but whether you promised me not to divorce me, or you followed me here today to see me having dinner with other men, it's enough to prove that you are deceiving yourself. Not only do you not hate me, but you also like me. You like me so much?" Ruan Tang. Fu Yuchuan scolded angrily, which shocked the whole restaurant. Fu Yuchuan knew that what Ruan Tang said was false, just to anger him, but he seemed to be pinched by someone, and the silent anger spread all over his body. At the moment when his hand reached out to Ruan Tang's shoulder, a hand stretched out from the side, separated his hand, and blocked Ruan Tang. Ruan Tang said aggrievedly, "Brother Sili, where did you just go? When you came out of the bathroom last time, you couldn't see Song Sili and your brother, and you would be humiliated by Fu Yuchuan." "I'm sorry, Tang Tang." Song Sili, ignoring the low pressure from Fu Yuchuan in front of him, he turned to look at Ruan Tang and handed over the bag in his hand. "I just saw that your clothes were dirty. I went to buy clothes for you, but I didn't have time to tell you." When Ruan Tang stretched out his hand to pick it up, Fu Yuchuan's angry voice suddenly came from the front. "Ruan Tang, come here." Fu Yuchuan was so angry that he went crazy. Doesn't Song Sili dislike Ruan Tang and run away? Why did you come back at the critical moment? And now he is still blocking Ruan Tang with the appearance of an eagle protecting the chick. What does this mean? Fu Yuchuan's anger overflowed with words. "I'm going to change my clothes first." Ruan Tang took the bag in Song Sili's hand, ignored Fu Yuchuan's face, and turned to the bathroom. "Ruan Tang." Fu Yuchuan raised his foot to chase, but Song Sili stretched out his hand to block it. Mr. Fu. Song Sili raised her head, and a cold smile appeared on the face of the prince. In front of Ruan Tang, the humble temperament has no longer, leaving only the same coldness and arrogance as Fu Yuchuan. "Even if Tang Tang is your wife, she also has the right to have dinner with her brother and friends. After dinner, we will naturally send Tang Tang home safely. Mr. Fu, please go back first." Just then, Ruan Chin also rushed in. "Silly, it was really annoying to receive a call from the company just now." The moment you saw Fu Yuchuan, Ruan Chen's words stopped abruptly. Chapter 22. Fu Yuchuan was beaten. When Ruan Tang came out of the bathroom to change his clothes, Fu Yuchuan and his wife had already left, and even Ruan Chen had already left, leaving Song Sili alone at the scene. "Brother Sili, my brother left alone and didn't even say hello to me." Ruan Tang was a little puzzled and muttered in surprise. Song Sili hid the back of her bloody hand under the table, answered her with a smile, and picked up a wet wipe to wipe her hand. "Your brother received a call from the company. If there is an emergency, he will go back to deal with it first. I will send you back later." Well, Ruan Tang didn't think much about it. Fu Yuchuan's words just now had a great impact on her, and now her brain buzzed. She has a feeling that she doesn't want to go home to see Fu Yuchuan, but she has to rely on Fu Yuchuan's support in this relationship and can't be so capricious. That's troublesome, brother Silly. Ruan Tang got up and thanked him. Song Silly settled the account and went downstairs to the garage with her. On the way, Song Silly asked, Tang Tang, why do I think you seem to be different from before? What? He has lost his way and has returned. Don't he like Fu Yuchuan anymore? Song Silly didn't know about her amnesia, so it was forgeable to ask like this. Ruan Tang smiled slightly and didn't explain too much, but nodded and said, I'm not made of steel, happy I have been with him for so many years, and I will definitely feel sad. Now that I am tired, I don't want to like him anymore. When the child is born, I will divorce him. After she finished speaking, she took a few steps forward and suddenly found that Song Silly was not following behind her. She turned around and saw Song Silly in a white shirt standing in the lobby. The light tilted down from the top of his head. His clean and gentle temperament made people feel relaxed and happy. He asked with a smile, who are you going to leave for the vacant seat in your heart? Ruan Tang gave a meal. Song Silly strode towards this side and said with a smile, I'm kidding. You can raise the baby with peace of mind now. What do you like or not? Let's talk about it when the baby is born. Ruan Tang nodded, it makes sense. On the way, an orange rainstorm warning popped up on the mobile phone. Along with the warning, there were also rumbling thunder and crackling raindrops falling on the car window. Song Silly carefully sent Ruan Tang to the door of the lakeside villa all the way. When he got out of the car, he held an umbrella to send Ruan Tang into the door, but Ruan Tang refused. Brother Silly, go back quickly. When the rain is too heavy and it's easy to have an accident, I'll go in first. Ruan Tang raised his hand and held his head, and his slender figure rushed into the door of the villa. Song Silly stood in place for a few seconds with an umbrella, then turned around and left. Ruan Tang entered the door of the villa, changed his slippers and walked into the house. Only then did he find that the living room was brightly lit, and a figure was sitting on the sofa, as if he was in a daze. You don't need to look at it. You can tell that it is Fu Yuchuan just from a silhouette. Ruan Tang was not angry with him and was about to enter the door with great strides. But suddenly, there was a loud bang from Fu Yuchuan's side, which was the sound of the cup breaking on the ground. Ruan Tang couldn't help but stop and look back. Fu Yuchuan, who was in a daze, was also alarmed by the sound and subconsciously lowered his head to pick up the glass fragments. At the moment when he lowered his head, Ruan Tang saw clearly that there were very obvious red and swollen marks on his face, and the corners of his mouth were even broken. It seems to have been severely beaten. Ruan Tang was stunned. Only then did Fu Yuchuan realize that there was someone beside him. He looked back and collided with Ruan Tang's gaze. Ruan Tang didn't want to get close to him, and didn't want to meddle, but he was worried that the wound on his face had something to do with his eldest brother, so he took the lead in breaking the silence. What's wrong with your face? Fu Yuchuan didn't respond. He stared straight at the new clothes on Ruan Tang. It is very suitable for her temperament, soft and delicious. But at the thought that this was bought for her by another man, Fu Yuchuan held his breath. He said, I thought you wouldn't come back tonight. Does Song Silly not want to keep you, or can't he keep you? Chapter 23 Warmth. You guess? Ruan Tang tilted his head and replied playfully. Fu Yuchuan. He just has this extra mouth. The place on the cheek that has been punched has not only not improved at all, but it is getting hotter and hotter, and it is estimated that it will be more swollen tomorrow. He raised his hand to touch the wound and frowned fiercely. Ruan Chen, the bastard, poured all his resentment for many years into this punch. If he hadn't dodged slightly, it would have been as simple as a broken skin and swelling. However, he punched back, and Ruan Chen didn't get anything good. Thinking of this, Fu Yuchuan was in a much better mood. He looked up and looked forward. Ruan Tang was still standing still, looking at his face curiously, looking like he wanted to say anything but stopped. Fu Yuchuan said, What are you doing there? He felt unhappy. If it had been before, there was no need for him to open his mouth at all. Ruan Tang would have gone to buy him a medicine box. My brother hit it, right? No matter how careless Ruan Tang is, she can still guess one or two. After she finished speaking, Fu Yuchuan did not deny it, but snorted coldly from her nose. Damn arrogant, you deserve it. Ruan Tang said something in his heart, wishing he couldn't clap his hands for his brother immediately. After a few seconds of silence, Ruan Tang turned around and left. Fu Yuchuan was still waiting for her to continue to be sarcastic to him or say something else to stimulate him, but he never expected that Ruan Tang would leave like this. The swollen gas in his chest could not find any catharsis for a while, and it was all blocked in his heart. Just as he was about to get up with a calm face, the sound of footsteps came from behind him again. Ruan Tang folded back. She also held something in her hand and smashed it directly at Fu Yuchuan. Well, apply it yourself. It's an ice pack. Ruan Tang didn't want to take care of it, and he didn't bother to take care of it, but after all, it was his brother who beat Fu Yuchua like this, so he still had to coax Fu Yuchua a little, lest he be held accountable afterwards. When the ice pack smashed over, Fu Yuchuan raised his hand to catch it, and the cold temperature stung his palm. He looked up at Ruan Tang, and a trace of loss flashed between his expression. Do I apply it myself? Ruan Tang raised his eyebrows, otherwise. What is this stinky man thinking? He was sneering at himself in the restaurant just now, and now he looks pitiful again. Even if the beauty is present, Ruan Tang will stick to his position. Just as she was about to leave, there was a loud bang by the floor-to-ceiling window. It was the curtain that scraped off an ornament. Seeing that the curtains had begun to fly in the air, Ruan Tang strode towards the floor-to-ceiling window without thinking. But she underestimated the weather tonight. A flash of lightning in the sky almost illuminated the whole hall brightly, accompanied by a thunderbolt in Ruan Tang's ear with a loud bang. She stopped when she was going to pull the curtains. The soles of her feet stepped on the water stains on the wooden floor and slipped, and her whole body fell straight back. Ah, she screamed and pulled the curtain. The next second, a tall figure rushed over, and her whole body fell into a warm embrace. The cold fragrance was still the same, but the mood was different. Ruan Tang raised his eyes and met Fu Yuchuan's eyes. Fu Yuchuan frowned and did not blame her at the first time, but asked, "How is it? Are you all right?" He is worried about the baby in her belly. Ruan Tang seemed to wake up from a beautiful dream. He immediately stood up straight and distanced up from Fu Yuchuan. It's all right. She pushed him away very quickly. Fu Yuchuan's strong arm slid over her thin back, but there was no way to score another point. Suddenly, Fu Yuchuan stretched out his hand. Chapter 24 Apply ice by yourself. Under Ruan Tang's surprised eyes, Fu Yuchuan grabbed the floor-to-ceiling window with an open slit behind her and gently pulled it. The sound of wind and rain outside the window was all isolated outside the door. The room suddenly became quiet and terrible. Ruan Tang stood against the floor-to-ceiling window, and Fu Yuchuan's tall figure blocked her only way. The familiar sense of oppression on his body is shocking, but a little ambiguous. Ruan Tang looked a little unnatural and didn't dare to look up at him. Please let me do it. I'm going to take a shower and go to bed. Fu Yuchuan's eyes were like attention, and the unnatural look on the little girl's face did not escape his eyes. His eyes were very focused on Ruan Tang, from her thick eyelashes, to the small bridge of her nose, to her red lips. He didn't say anything, but Ruan Tang felt that the silence was deafening. Fu Yuchuan. Ruan Tang is about to suffocate. She noticed the change in the man's nasal breath, and the breath of male hormones began to burst around her. Danger is approaching. Just as she stretched out her hand to push Fu Yuchuan away from her, Fu Yuchuan grabbed her wrist and pressed it on the floor-to-ceiling window. Her hands were clasped, which was a posture to be slaughtered. Fu Yuchuan looked down condescendingly and asked, Ruan Tang, do you really lose your memory? Mew, dung. Ruan Tang's lips squirmed. Fu Yuchuan then asked, is it true or fake? He never believed it. A person can say that he can forget it, and he has forgotten it so completely. Not only did she forget, she was like a changed person. Is it that she pretends to be too similar, or does he know too much about her in the past? Fu Yuchuan suddenly became a little uncertain. He observed Ruan Tang's expression and tried to draw the former conclusion from her face. Unfortunately, Ruan Tang told him with a screenshot. If I had fake amnesia, I would be struck by lightning when I went out. It's not good well. Ruan Tang's eyes widened. Her words were blocked into her mouth by Fu Yuchuan. Fu Yuchuan's lips look very thin, and it is quite soft to kiss. Ruan Tang's brain crackled, and he forgot to react. Fortunately, Fu Yuchuan didn't kiss her for a long time. It seemed that he kissed her just to stop her poisonous oath. He quickly retreated, and his face was still cold. Don't forget that you are not just alive now. Don't swear casually with my child's life. Ruan Tang recovered from the shock and only felt absurd and ridiculous. At that moment, I actually thought he was worried about himself. This love brain is really hard to cure. I lost my memory, or I haven't been cured. Bah. Ruan Tang sled, raised his sleeve and wiped his mouth, and was furious. If you dare to kiss me casually, I will swear with your life. She is delicate, and the appearance of her cheeks bulging when she is angry is not obnoxious, but a little cute. When Fu Yuchuan realized this, his eyes sank fiercely again. It's useless to be cute, so angry. He snorted coldly. Really? His eyes stayed on Ruan Tang's lips again, and his eyes were dark. Ruan Tang sensed that greater danger was approaching and couldn't help threatening, I'm serious. You are not allowed to mess around again. She stepped back while talking, but Fu Yuchuan approached her step by step. I want to see what you can do to me. As soon as the words fell, he bent down again and blocked Ruan Tang's stubborn mouth with his lips. Touching warm lips and teeth, Ruan Tang's brain was blank. Chapter 25 Kiss Her. For Ruan Tang, who has no amnesia, Fu Yuchuan's kiss is what she has longed for most. Fu Yuchuan still remembers the night she had an accident. She looked so humble and fragile when she raised her head and asked him for a kiss. But he ignored that Ruan Tang in front of him was no longer the humble girl who asked for a kiss. His kiss is the most terrible thing in the world for her. Fu Yuchuan. Ruan Tang roared from his throat, and then slapped Fu Yuchuan's chin fiercely, pushing his whole body away from himself. Looking at this scene, Ruan Tang felt that it was not enough. Because just now, Fu Yuchuan kissed her once while she was not paying attention. If she didn't react again this time, I'm afraid Fu Yuchuan would still think that she likes to be kissed. Bastard. Ruan Tang squeezed his lips and cursed. Without Fu Yuchuan reacting at all, he kicked his lower body. Fu Yuchuan instinctively sensed danger. When Ruan Tang's legs were about to approach Xiao Fu, he reached out and grabbed her ankle. Ruan Tang was stunned. This scene is a little weird. And Fu Yuchuan also realized what she wanted to do. The low pressure, like the descent of death, swept over in an instant, wrapping Ruan Tang's whole body. He didn't say anything, but his eyes were sharper than a knife. Ruan Tang realized that he was a little overdoing it. He hurriedly retracted his legs and explained, I don't mean to let you die. I just want you to be sober. Fu Yuchuan stared at her with an expressionless face. Having said that, I blamed you wrongly. That's not what I mean. Ruan Tang avoided his eyes with some guilty feelings. Fu Yuchuan took a step back and distanced away. This time, he looked at Ruan Tang's eyes with no more scrutiny, because after this experience, he was completely convinced that Ruan Tang in front of him was really amnesia. Not only did he no longer love him, but also resisted him. This is obviously a happy thing. Fu Yuchuan turned around and walked to the guest bed, and the wound on his cheek was still faintly painful. It seems that he should feel relieved. After all, he finally got rid of her suffocating love. But why? His heart is not relaxed at all, but heavier and heavier. As the guest door slammed shut, Ruan Tang breathed a sigh of relief. She was a little afraid that if she hadn't resisted desperately just now, maybe Fu Yuchuan would have done something worse tonight. For safety's sake, after returning to the room, Ruan Tang found a chair against the door to prevent Fu Yuchuan from breaking in the middle of the night. The heavy rain with thunder and lightning lasted for most of the night. Fu Yuchuan lay on the bed and tossed and turned, making it difficult to fall asleep. He looked at the corner of the wall not far away, where there was a picture frame-like thing covered with a huge white cloth. Curiosity drove Fu Yuchuan to get up from the bed and walked to the corner of the wall. When he stretched out his long hand and lifted the white cloth, he took a breath of cold air. It's his portrait. The manuscript is more than 1 meter high above. The oil pen outlined his facial features. Obviously, the color was very beautiful, with the cold eyes, but for no reason, it gave people a chilling sense of déjà vu. Fu Yuchuan squatted down in the first half of the picture frame and looked at an R-shaped signature in the corner of the canvas. He remembered that this was a birthday present given to him by Ruan Tang on his birthday a year ago. The banquet was very grand that night, and he was too busy. Ruan Tang held the huge oil painting and walked to him with a shy face. Chapter 26. Fu Yuchuan was beaten again. She said that she had been drawing against the photos for several days, and the drawing was not very good. She hoped that he would like it when she received it. How did he answer? He said, "Thank you, just leave it." After the banquet, he threw Ruan Tang on the bed and forgot to take the painting away when he left in the middle of the night. Or rather, he didn't want to take it at all. He didn't expect to see this painting again in this situation. I'm in a complicated mood. Early the next morning, Fu Yuchuan called the workers over. The jingle sound woke up Ruan Tang. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and walked to the living room. As if she had seen a ghost, she almost fell and squatted down. I'm a bean. Who the fuck hangs his 1 meter high portrait on the wall of the living room? What kind of peerless narcissist is this? Looking at it, it was Fu Yuchuan. Well, it's reasonable. Ruan Tang stroked his chest with his hand and turned to the kitchen to pour water to drink. A loving elder sister warmly greeted you. Are you the wife of this family? Hello. Just call me Sister Zhang in the future. The eldest sister enthusiastically pushed Ruan Tang, who was unknown, to the dining room and pressed her on the chair. Looking at the breakfast that appeared out of thin air on the table, Ruan Tang didn't know why. Hello, Sister Zhang. Who are you? Sister Zhang looked at Fu Yuchuan, who was standing in the living room, and smiled. It's the nanny invited by Mr. Fu. In the future, I will take care of your diet and living. Leave this family to me, so you can rest assured. Ruan Tang looked up at Fu Yuchuan with a blank face. Why does a person who never care about her suddenly worry about her diet and living? At this time, Fu Yuchuan also looked back. When Ruan Tang walked out of the bedroom, he noticed her. He was waiting for her to take the initiative to say hello, but he waited for a while. Taking advantage of the eye-catching, Fu Yuchuan raised his foot and walked towards the dining table. After sitting down by himself, he said, "You are pregnant now, so you should pay attention to nutrition. In the future, Sister Zhang will be responsible for taking care of you." Ruan Tang understood in a second that it was for the sake of the child. She nodded and stuffed the egg into her mouth. "Don't worry, I will definitely eat white and fat and give birth to a white and fat child." Fu Yuchuan's face stiffened for a moment and did not reply. Ruan Tang didn't hold back and looked behind him. Well, I didn't expect that you still have research on oil painting. Did you draw it yourself? You draw so well. It really looks like you. She smiled as she said, which didn't look like a sincere praise. Fu Yuchuan was not annoyed, but stared straight at her. I didn't draw it. Which master's handwriting is that? This painting is so bad. How much did you buy? You won't be cheated, will you? Hearing that it was not painted by himself, Ruan Tang lost the psychological burden. He ate bread and ate a meal until the corners of Fu Yuchuan's mouth rose slightly. You drew it. What? Ruan Tang suspected that he had hallucinations early in the morning. Fu Yuchuan restrained his smile and leaned back slightly, but the joke in his eyes overflowed. This is the birthday present you gave me on my birthday last year. You said you had been drawing for several days, and you said that you would be happy to receive it. His last two words suddenly slowed down, and his eyes kept falling on Ruan Tang's face, observing every inch of her expression. In fact, he didn't know why he was so nervous to hang this painting. After he finished speaking, Ruan Tang almost screamed. Her face is like a blank sheet of paper, ha ha. After doing it for a long time, Fu Yuchuan wanted to humiliate her. Isn't this painting just to remind her that she used to be his ultimate, extreme, enemy, big-licking dog? Chapter 27 Sour, he sour. If it hadn't been for yesterday's fist marks on his face that hadn't disappeared, Ruan Tang would really want to give him that on his face again. She lowered her head, stuffed her mouth with eggs, and stopped looking up at Fu Yuchuan. Fu Yuchuan didn't understand her sudden mood. After thinking about it, he thought it was just that her hormones were unstable during pregnancy, resulting in emotional instability. He paused and said, "Are you going to the hospital for an obstetric examination in the afternoon?" Ruan Tang didn't raise his head and didn't make a sound. Fu Yuchuan said, "You and I also want to go to the hospital to get some medicine. You go with me." After saying that, he didn't wait for Ruan Tang to respond. He got up and strode away. After he left, Ruan Tang raised his blushing face. Damn, I almost choked to death by an egg. Sister Zhang on the side delivered a water cup with her eyes and hands. Madam, eat slowly. Ruan Tang swallowed the egg with a big mouthful of water, looked back at Sister Zhang and said, "Have you made breakfast for him?" Sister Zhang said, "Let's do it first." "What do you want, sir?" "Don't do it. He just doesn't like breakfast. It's useless to persuade him. If you do it, you will probably be scolded by him." Ruan Tang wiped his mouth while talking and looked at Sister Zhang worriedly. After hearing this, Sister Zhang didn't dare to cook breakfast for Fu Yuchuan and hurriedly cleaned up the table. "Thank you for reminding me, madam. Please teach me more about this kind of thing in the future." "Thank you very much." "No problem." Ruan Tang made an okay gesture. After watching Sister Zhang enter the kitchen, she walked leisurely to the bedroom. Ruan Tang shuddered fiercely when he passed by the huge portrait in the living room. Bathed in the holy light of this love every day, she will leave a psychological shadow sooner or later. Find a reason to take out the painting and burn it another night. Half an hour later, Ruan Tang sat in the back seat of Fu Yuchuan's car. Fu Yuchuan didn't have breakfast, but just drank a glass of milk in a hurry. He was still so cold and expressionless, but until he got on the bus, his stomach screamed. "Li Young, drive to the coffee shop." The cold man was unable to give up, and he ordered the assistant with an expressionless face. Ruan Tang held back his laughter so hard that his bite muscles were sore. He looked back at Fu Yuchuan and said, "It's not good to drink coffee on an empty stomach. At least you should eat an egg to cushion your stomach." It's hard to describe Fu Yuchuan's mood. He knew that it was Ruan Tang who deliberately said something to Sister Zhang, which made Sister Zhang mistakenly think that he didn't like breakfast. He was more lost than angry. Once upon a time, Ruan Tang was most worried about his health. Occasionally, he stayed overnight. She got up at 5 a.m. early in the morning to make breakfast for him, for fear that he would go to work hungry. Now, Ruan Tang not only doesn't care whether he is hungry or not, but also afraid that he will have enough to eat. Along the way, Fu Yuchuan didn't say a word. When he arrived at the coffee shop, he got out of the car to buy coffee. When he came back, he also carried a small bag with 2 small pastries in it. Perhaps because of pregnancy, Ruan Tang's nose is very sensitive now. She can smell the sweet smell of the bread in the bag without turning her head. She shrugged the tip of her nose like a puppy. But she didn't mean to ask Fu Yuchuan for it. She also has backbone. "Do you want it?" Fu Yuchuan handed over the small bag. He didn't even look at Ruan Tang, but lowered his head and took a sip of the iced Americano in his hand. Ruan Tang was shocked. Looking back, there was still an obvious bruise on the face of the handsome man. What's more valuable is that he was willing to share the food when he was hungry. Chapter 28 Set up a good man. This kind of peerless good man's character setting definitely does not belong to Fu Yuchuan. He is slying. Ruan Tang withdrew his gaze and thanked politely. "Thank you. I'm not hungry." Fu Yuchuan didn't mean to be polite. He took back the bag and took out the croissant to eat. He was tall and dressed in a reserved temperament, but he sat next to her and ate croissant to satisfy his hunger. While Ruantang was greedy, he kept glancing at Fu Yuchuan with the afterglow. She felt that Fu Yuchuan was actually a good person except for his poisonous tongue. Stop, stop. Ruantang was shocked by his own idea and covered his head. It seems that the love brain is going to grow again. It must be stopped. The car happened to be parked at the gate of the hospital. Before Fu Yuchuan got out of the car, Ruantang pushed the door and squished out by himself. She moved quickly, and Fu Yuchuan's angry scolding came from behind her. What are you running for? Slow down. This guy really doesn't treat himself as a pregnant woman. When Ruantang heard the voice, he turned around and waved his hand with a smile. I'm going to the obstetrics and gynecology department first. You go get your own medicine. Don't worry about me. I'll take a taxi back by myself later. Without waiting for Fu Yuchuan to answer, she turned around and went upstairs quickly. This man is very good at deceiving others with his beauty. I'm afraid that he was deceived like this before. Now he must not be fooled again and stay away from him. Ruantang registered for himself while thinking about it. Just as she was standing in line outside the obstetrics and gynecology department, she accidentally met a very familiar person, her classmate Zhou Lili. Qiao Lili came out of the operating room with her stomach covered. Her face was pale, and her feet were dark and her feet were shallow. She looked a little pitiful. Ruantang walked over and blocked her way. Qiao Lili, what a coincidence. You also come to have an abortion. Her voice was not loud, and she happened to be heard by several pregnant women waiting beside her. Several people couldn't help raising their heads and looking at Qiao Lili with strange eyes. Qiao Lili's face, which was not blood-colored, was more pale. She bit her lower lip with her teeth, which made her lower lip a little bloody. She looked up and down at Ruantang and saw the sarcasm in the other party's eyes, and she didn't bother to pretend to be a friend's hypocritical face. Qiao Lili opened her mouth and said sarcastically, it's a coincidence. Are you coming for an obstetric examination alone? Let me guess, isn't it easy for you to get pregnant with this child? Did he climb into Fu Yuchuan's bed in the middle of the night when he was drunk, and the overlord forced his bow? Her voice was so loud that not only several pregnant women around her, but also several men not far away could hear it clearly. Suddenly, everyone's eyes were focused on Ruantang's face. Ruantang's expression remained unchanged. When two people confront each other, whoever shows his timidity first will lose. She smiled slightly. Don't talk nonsense. I've been married for 2 years. Pregnancy is the most natural thing. It's you. A college student got pregnant before marriage, and no one will accompany you when you come to have an abortion. You should really reflect on your interpersonal relationships. It's normal for men to be unreliable, but why don't you even have a reliable friend around you? Ruantang was sarcastic and directly stunned Qiao Lili. In her impression, Ruantang, the love brain who was silent and only Fu Yuchuan, suddenly became clear-headed and smart. At the moment when Qiao Lili was stunned, Ruantang didn't bother to continue talking to her. When she shook her head and was about to leave, she pulled the corner of her clothes. She turned around and heard Zhou Lili's weak voice. Ruantang, no matter how you think of me, I still regard you as a friend. I have a very important thing and have never found a chance to tell you. Since it has come to this point today, I will just tell you the truth. Ruantang looked at the back of her hand that grabbed his clothes, which was as white as a dead man. Ruantang said with a smile, okay, where do you want to tell me? Stairwell. Chapter 29. Such a coincidence, you also came to have an abortion. There are not many people on the floor of the obstetrics and gynecology department, and there are few people in the dim stairwell. Only the safety exit in the corner is glowing green. Ruantang walked in front, and Qiao Lili followed her. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the quiet stairwell. At the moment when the footsteps behind her suddenly stopped, a white hand like a dead man also suddenly stretched out from Ruantang's back and pushed her behind her. In front of you is the stairs. If you fall down from here, Ruantang will have a minor fracture and miscarriage, and if it is serious, it will be fatal. Zhou Lili pushed a lot of force because she calculated everything well. It's just that she calculated everything, but she didn't know that Ruantang would grab the handrail beside her and avoid her sneak attack sideways. A short note burst out of Zhou Lili's throat, and her whole body rushed forward uncontrollably. There are stairs ahead, and she is the protagonist. Zhou Lili subconsciously closed her eyes, but suddenly noticed that someone had strangled her neck and let her stop in place. She reached out and touched her neck, only to find that it was Ruantang who grabbed her back collar from behind. Before she turned around, she heard Ruantang's soft voice. Zhou Lili, I don't care what your previous impression of me is, but I'm not a troublemaker, and I certainly don't I have provoked you. Don't provoke me again in the future, because I am no longer the bullied Ruantang. If I dare to do it again, I will go to your grave to say this. Qiao Lili, I really think Ruantang is a fool. Suddenly, she said that she had something important to tell her, and it was clear that she wanted to mess with her, so she simply came up to the stairwell to see what tricks she wanted to play. Fortunately, she had prepared for it, so Zhou Lili's treacherous plan did not succeed. Thinking of what had just happened, Ruantang's hand loosened slightly, and Qiao Lili leaned forward again. Ah, Ruantang, don't let go. Zhou Lili screamed in fright. She can't digest what Ruan Tang just said now, but she knows that what must have happened to Ruan Tang that made her change so much. Ruan Tang, I was wrong, sorry. If you forgive me once, I won't bother you again. Just for the sake of my pregnancy, just go around me once. In order to survive, Zhou Lili no longer cares about face. Anyway, there are no outsiders here. Ruan Tang behind her smiled and listened to her words before answering, do you really know it's wrong? Xiao Lili nodded repeatedly. I know, please let me go. Ruan Tang pulled her back. After she stood firmly, Ruan Tang let go of her hand. Remember what you said today. If you dare to provoke me in the future, you will bear the consequences. After saying that, Ruan Tang raised his feet and walked to the gate of the stairway. Zhou Lili, who was pale behind her, stood in place like a ghost, and her eyes were full of unwillingness and anger. Ruan Tang, let's see. She had begun to fantasize in her heart. When the school was going to give Ruan Tang a shit basin and make her lose her reputation, Ruan Tang, who was about to walk out of the stairwell in front of her, suddenly stopped and looked back at this side. Xiao Lili was stunned for a moment and quickly said, I remember what you said. Don't worry. Really? Ruan Tang took out his mobile phone. Do you think I will leave stupidly with a few harsh words? Then when I go to school 2 days later, I find that you have deducted countless shit basins and made countless rumors for me, but I have no choice but to hide in the corner and cry secretly. Chapter 30. The person you are looking for will return to China soon. Zhou Lili's face was full of confusion. Isn't this the standard plot of the idol drama heroine being bullied? Is there any problem? Ruan Tang wanted to laugh at her expression. Why on earth is this kind of simple girl who can't hide her mind being a vicious supporting actress? From the moment I met you, I have been recording, whether it was you admitting that you had an abortion before marriage, or that you were caught by me and cried and begged for mercy. Ruan Tang shook his mobile phone. It's all recorded. If I go to school later and hear a little rumor about me, these recordings will be sent to all your classmates in junior high and high schools, as well as your relatives. I'm afraid you will have to live on another planet at that time. In the quiet stairwell, there was obviously no wind, but Xiao Lili felt a gust of wind running through her chest. She looked up at the familiar and strange Ruan Tang in front of her. Her lips twitched twice and couldn't say a word. Ruan Tang smiled when he saw that her face was dead. Then I'll go first. See you at school. She waved her hand and didn't take a cloud away. When she returned to the door of the obstetrics and gynecology department, it happened to be her turn. What a pleasant day. When Ruan Tang was about to raise her hand to push the door, a strange feeling swept over her whole body, and then her eyes suddenly went black, and her whole body fell back uncontrollably. If you fall down, at least you can get a big bag on the back of your head. Several people behind him exclaimed in unison. Ruan Tang could hear the voice, but she was weak all over. I hope the child is fine. This is Ruan Tang's only idea. At the moment when she fell down safely, the expected pain did not come, and she fell into a wide embrace. The blue and cold fragrance on the man's body penetrated into Ruan Tang's nasal cavity, which made her much more energetic. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at the face she didn't want to see the most. Fu Yuchuan. At this moment, Fu Yuchuan hugged her, and her dark eyes fell on her slightly pale little face. What's wrong? He said in a low voice. Ruan Tang wanted to push him away, but he really had no strength, so he could only look at the doctor's office. Please help me in for a checkup first. I'm a little dizzy. She took a step forward, but Fu Yuchuan beside her did not move. She turned her head and looked at him with doubtful eyes. The next second, Fu Yuchuan bent down and picked up her leg to pick her up. Don't move if you don't want to be thrown down by me. Fu Yuchuan even issued a warning in advance. In the envious look of the onlookers, Ruan Tang glanced to the side with some embarrassment. The doctor examined Ruan Tang and looked at Fu Yuchuan several times with blame. How does your husband take care of his wife? She is now a pregnant person. She must ensure a good mood and sufficient rest time. She must not overwork, otherwise she may hurt the child next time. On the hospital bed, Ruan Tang, who was overworked, had fallen asleep. She fell into a deep sleep, her cheeks were rosy, and her chest was very even. Fu Yuchuan didn't dare to refute the doctor, let alone ask Ruan Tang what she was tired of. He could only take the examination report and leave the hospital with Ruan Tang in his arms. Ruan Tang didn't wake up all the way. Maybe he felt uncomfortable sleeping and rubbed his face in Fu Yuchuan's arms. Fu Yuchuan was stiffened by this intimate posture, and it was not until he put her in the car that he was slightly relieved. Just as he was about to get into the car, the mobile phone in his pocket vibrated. What's the matter? Mr. Fu, the person you asked me to find before has a clue. Now she is in the beautiful country, but don't rush here, because she is about to return to China. Chapter 31. The former brother and the second brother, now he is scared by his portrait. In the car, Ruan Tang was awakened by the sound of a car horn outside the car window. She opened her eyes and found herself lying in the back seat of the car, covered with a suit jacket that was obviously not hers. After smelling it, it smelled like a scumbag. She grabbed her clothes and was about to look up to see where Fu Yuchuan was, but a few words flew in with the crack of the lowered car window. A little far away, Ruantang can only hear some sporadic words clearly. Where is the toque? Sure. Cufflinks. Looking at the tall back, even if she can't see his face, she seems to feel that he is very nervous and serious. The soul of gossip was burning. Ruantang couldn't help holding it up quietly and put his ear close to the car window. He wanted to hear it more clearly. He knew each other well, and he was invincible in 100 battles. With a click, the car door was suddenly pulled open from the outside. Ruantang, who was stuck outside the car window, was defenseless and fell out with his whole head. Alas! Ruantang's forehead hit Fu Yuchuan's thigh. She rubbed her head and raised her head, and met Fu Yuchuan's gloomy eyes. It is like a cloud over the head, with a strong sense of oppression. When did you wake up? He asked. Ruantang swallowed his saliva and just woke up. He was about to return the clothes to you. She quickly sat down and handed over the clothes. The moment Fu Yuchuan took the clothes, he also bent down and sat in the car. When the car started, Fu Yuchuan said, "What are you busy with all day?" Huh. Ruantang didn't understand what he meant. Fu Yuchuan said coldly, "The doctor said that you fainted because you were overworked. I want to ask, what are you tired all day long?" He asked someone to take care of her and solve the problem of Roa's company for her. He was afraid of affecting her mood and even agreed to sleep in separate rooms. What else does she have to work for? Fu Yuchuan really couldn't understand. Hearing the words, Ruantang was a little embarrassed. She probably had just had a fight with Xiao Lili. She was so excited that she would cause fainting, but she didn't plan to tell Fu Yuchuan about these things. After all, the two of them were not an ordinary husband and wife. Maybe he was scared by your oil painting in the morning. Ruantang gave a reason. Fu Yuchuan was stunned. What do you mean? In the past, my brother was scared by his portrait. Along the way, Fu Yuchuan never said a word again. Naturally, Ruantang would not take the initiative to speak. He leaned in the back seat and slept beautifully again. When the car stopped at the door of the lakeside villa, Fu Yuchuan did not get out of the car. Ruantang strode towards the villa and didn't mean to look back and ask him. Fu Yuchuan couldn't help shouting at her. Ruantang. Ruantang paused for a moment before turning around. What's the matter? This kind of impatient look of wanting to draw a clear line made Fu Yuchuan's heart panic. He originally wanted to say that the company was busy and didn't have to wait for him for dinner, but now it seems that Ruantang can't wait for him not to come back to finish dinner. It's nothing. Fu Yuchuan raised the window and asked the driver to drive to the company. Looking at the car leaving, Ruantang slowly exhaled a breath of turbid air. Why does Fu Yuchuan always like to do this kind of drama that wants to talk but stop? People can't help guessing what he wants to say. It's very annoying. Just as she kicked out the stones on the ground like Fu Yuchuan, the mobile phone rang. Hello, brother. Tantang, let me tell you a piece of news. Ruantang was a little serious at that end. Ruantang said, I already know about your fight with Fu Yuchuan. Don't tell me that you are more injured than him. Ruantang touched the bridge of his nose, which was still faintly painful, and Fu Yuchuan's dog was also merciless. I don't care about his identity as an uncle at all. But that's not the point. What I want to tell you is not about Fu Yuchuan, but about Qiao Shiqing. Qiao Shiqing, a cousin who grew up with Ruantang since childhood. Since Ruantang's memory, Qiao Shiqing's family of 3 has lived in the Ruan family. Whether it is work or life, they all rely on the Ruan family. When she was a first year, Qiao Shiqing went abroad to study gold, and Ruantang had nothing to do with her. What's wrong with Qiao Shiqing? She said that she got the degree certificate in advance and graduated, and she would return to China tomorrow. Dad asked me to call you and bring Fu Yuchuan over for a SME meal tomorrow. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Ruantang doesn't really want to go. Although she grew up with Qiao Shiqing has 800 hearts and eyes. Since she was a child, she has learned to follow people's dishes. She is the kind of person she doesn't like the most. Well, I'll contact you tomorrow. Ruantang knew that she didn't like Qiao Shiqing and didn't force it. After the phone was hung up, Ruantang left the matter behind. Fu Yuchuan didn't come back at night. After dinner, Ruantang read a book in her room for a long time. It was not until more than 10 o'clock that she heard the sound of brakes in the yard, so she immediately turned off the light and went to bed. Fu Yuchuan got out of the car from the gate. 1 second, he saw the light in Ruantang's room on, and the next second, the light went out. He is neither blind nor stupid. Ruantang is deliberately alienating him. He didn't want to get close to Ruantang much, but he looked down at the insulation bag in his hand and several bags of maternity supplements. These are all specially sent to the company by the old lady today, and told him that she must bring them to Ruantang in person and watch her eat them. At the thought of the old lady's flattering tone on the phone, Fu Yuchuan felt bad. After locking the car, he entered the house with several bags of things. The whole house was quiet and there was no sound. Fu Yuchuan first put the things in the kitchen, and then looked up at the portrait he had specially hung on the wall of the living room. Ruan Tang said that the portrait was scary. His eyes darkened, and finally, he went to the utility room and found a piece of white cloth on the portrait. The next day, Ruan Tang slept until nearly noon before getting up. As soon as she walked into the living room, she smelled a strong fragrance of chicken soup. "Madam, are you awake?" Sister Zhang came out of the kitchen with a kind face. She ate an egg and drank some honey water first. "I immediately made lunch for you." Ruan Tang obediently sat on the table. When the chicken soup was served, she praised, "Sister Zhang, you are really good at making this chicken soup with my mother's flavor." Sister Zhang suddenly blinked her eyes and said with a smile, "I didn't make this chicken soup. It was brought back by Mr. 4 in the middle of the night yesterday. When he went out in the morning, he specially told me to make it hot for you to drink. Let's see if you drink it all." Ruan Tang's hand holding the spoon was heavy and trembled a little. "Fu Yuchuan, what are you doing? In order for me to give birth to a child smoothly, you don't hesitate to play the role of an affectionate male actor, right? Drink quickly, it's about your little mouth. It's not easy for me to participate, but after I contacted Mr. 4, I felt that although he looked cold, he had a good heart and eyes, but he was not very good at expressing himself." Sister Zhang also spoke for Fu Yuchuan. Ruan Tang was speechless. When she was about to complain about Fu Yuchuan's evil deeds, a doorbell interrupted her conversation with Sister Zhang. Chapter 32 Bloodsucker Cousin is online. Sister Zhang went out and opened the door, and soon brought in a little beauty with long legs and slender waist. The little beauty followed Sister Zhang into the hall. When she saw Ruan Tang, she immediately smiled happily and strode towards Ruan Tang. "Sister Tang Tang." When the beauty came to her, Ruan Tang finally remembered why this face was so familiar. Isn't this Qiao Shiqing, the bloodsucker cousin in her family? Because his memory of her was still stopped at the age of 18, she, who had become an adult at the age of 22, made Ruan Tang unrecognized for a while. Unlike Ruan Tang's delicate and bright, Qiao Shiqing's appearance is more small and jasper. It is not a very outstanding facial features, but a pair of watery eyes, which adorns this plain face with glory. After being influenced by foreign culture for 4 years, she looks more generous and confident than before, which can be seen from her enthusiastic action. "Qiao Shiqing." Ruan Tang stretched out his slender jade fingers to separate himself from Qiao Shiqing. Qiao Shiqing didn't expect that she would refuse, frowning and looking pitiful. "Sorry, Sister Tang Tang, I'm used to it abroad. If you're not used to it, I won't hug you." Ruan Tang thought to himself, "Your acting skills are so good that you like me so much. Why did you come here?" Ruan Tang single-knifed straight in. Ruan Chen said on the phone that she had just returned to China, so why didn't she stay at home, and ran to her villa. Ruan Tang after saying that, Qiao Shiqing's eyes circled in the living room, as if she didn't see the person she wanted to see, and the loss flashed between her eyebrows. "Am I in a hurry to see you? My family is waiting for you to go back for dinner in the evening. I'll come to play with you for a while, and I'll take you back in the evening." Qiao Shi smiled generously, but Ruan Tang felt that it was really unspeakable and strange. A person who has had an ordinary relationship with you since he was a child, suddenly he is so enthusiastic about you, there must be a ghost. "At night? I may have something to do in the evening. For this meal, I will." "Sister Tang Tang." Qiao Shiqing directly interrupted Ruan Tang's words, and her eyebrows drooped. "I told my uncle and aunt to pick you up. They are very happy. Can you bear to let them be happy? It's not a pity that people who have been careful since childhood have pierced Ruan Tang's weakness with one knife. Now Ruan Tang is not afraid of heaven and earth, but afraid that his parents and brother will be wronged." She paused for a moment, and simply got up and said, "All, then go back now. Don't pour on until the evening." She got up and went into the bedroom to change her clothes. When she came out, she heard Qiao Shiqing asking Zhang about Fu Yuchuan. "What are you talking about?" Ruan Tang asked. Qiao Shiqing hurriedly said, "Sister Tang Tang, don't get me wrong. I'm just asking Sister Zhang when Brother Li Chuan will come back, or you can go home with me alone. Isn't it bad?" Looking at her cautious look, Ruan Tang seemed to suddenly understand something. "Brother Li Chuan? This is my exclusive name. I suggest you call him brother-in-law in the future, so as not to be gossiped by outsiders." Ruan Tang spoke mercilessly. Qiao Shiqing's face changed on the spot, and it took a long time to squeeze out a smile. Okay, I'll call you brother-in-law from now on." Ruan Tang put on his coat and strode out. When he walked to the door, he looked back at Qiao Shiqing, who had not yet followed. "Don't wait. Your brother-in-law takes care of everything, but he doesn't have the spare time to accompany us to eat these homely meals." With a clicking sound of the door opening, Ruan Tang has strode out of the villa. Qiao Shiqing stood in place for a few seconds, and her teeth were about to break. It took a long time to keep up with Ruan Tang's pace. After getting into the car driven by Qiao Shiqing, Ruan Tang was too lazy to talk to her and act, and began to close her eyes directly to recuperate. "Call me when you get home, and I'll sleep for a while." "Good." Qiao Shiqing, who was treated as a driver, became more and more ugly. After so many years, Ruan Tang and the 18-year-old ostentatious Ruan Tang have not changed at all. But before returning to China, she heard that in recent years, Ruantang didn't want fame and face in order to be close to Fu Yuchuan. Why is her information wrong? When Bai was puzzled, Xiao Shiqing answered the phone. After a few hums on the phone, she turned the steering wheel and drove directly to a road that did not lead to Rua's family. Probably because of pregnancy, Ruantang is very sleepy these days. Even if Xiao Shiqing's driving skills were ordinary and the driving was bumpy, Ruantang really fell asleep in the car. Until the car stopped, Xiao Shiqing gradually stretched out her hand to Ruantang. The instinctive intuition made Ruantang open his eyes and look at Xiao Shiqing's outstretched hand. "Arrived?" she asked in a low voice. Xiao Shiqing smiled and put his hand down on Ruantang's shoulder and put the other finger out of the window. "Here we are. Sister Tangtang, look, the decoration style of this clubhouse is not bad, right?" Ruantang was stunned. When did my home become a clubhouse? Xiao Shiqing's sharp laughter spread in the car, and it took her a long time to stop laughing. "Sister Tangtang, you are really good at joking, but of course it's not a family. Do you still remember Wang Hao and others? Our high school classmates, they heard that I had returned to China and just called to ask me to come and sit. Don't worry, sit down and leave. What a wave of first cut and then play. She and Ruantang's birthdays are only 2 months away, and they have been in the same school in high school. As for Wang Hao's children, Ruantang has always disliked them. But if you say you want to leave directly now, it will look very pretentious. Anyway, she is just a companion, so let Xiao Shiqing show off for a while." Ruantang pushed the door and got out of the car. "Let's sit for half an hour and leave. Her current body is not suitable for staying in such a place for too long." Xiao Shiqing knew human nature well. At least she had just returned to China. No matter how much Ruantang didn't like it, she would give herself this face, so she got out of the car with a smile. "Okay, just half an hour." Under the guidance of the waiter, the two walked towards the private room deep in the clubhouse. Standing at the door of the private room, Xiao Shiqing was not in a hurry to go in, but arranged her hair and clothes in front of the reflector, which made her very nervous. Ruantang looked at her scratching her head and couldn't help laughing. Xiao Shiqing turned around and asked her, "Sister Tangtang, I have no problem now, right? I haven't seen my old classmates for so many years, and I'm quite nervous." She lowered her head shyly, which was completely different from her previous enthusiasm. "Is this the difference between meeting a man and a woman?" Ruantang sneered at this and answered directly, "What are you nervous about? Are you here to see your old classmates or on a blind date?" She spoke mercilessly and directly exposed the image of a lady created by Xiao Shiqing. Xiao Shiqing's face stiffened. Before she could speak, a burst of laughter suddenly came from the private room. And in the chattering conversation, Ruantang vaguely heard his name. Chapter 33. Which brand of plastic bag do you have? Can it be packed like this? Speaking of Ruantang, it's a pity. How much water was there at the beginning? Later, you didn't look at the photos taken by the media. You looked like a deeply resentful woman, and your face was pale, which was scary to look at. Haha, you deserve it. When I was studying, I pursued her, and she also advised me to take pictures with her. So did she take a picture of herself with urine before she climbed into Fu Yuchuan's bed? Ha 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 ha, that must not have been taken, otherwise can Fu Yuchuan dislike him like that? Speaking of which, we haven't seen her for a long time, have we? I want to see how ugly she has become now. Do you still need to watch it? As soon as you enter the door, you will be scared to pee your pants. If Shiqing and she hadn't brought her all the way, I wouldn't have agreed to her coming with me at all. The corridor was quiet, and there was no music in the private room. The dialogue inside broke into Ruantang's ears without reservation. She narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at Xiao Shiqing. The meaning was obvious. How many meanings? You specially asked me to come and listen to people's backs. Touching Ruantang's slightly threatening gaze, Xiao Shiqing hurriedly the hand explained, "Sister Tangtang, I didn't say anything to them. I just said that you would come with me today. Let's go first. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding." After saying that, she didn't give Ruantang a chance to refuse, and pushed open the door of the private room. The noise inside suddenly stopped. There are 5 people in the private room, 3 men and 2 women, all of whom are high school classmates of Ruantang and Xiao Shiqing. Ruantang is only familiar with Wang Hao's face, and the person who just said he didn't chase him was also him. Xiao Shiqing walked in first, and everyone hurriedly greeted each other with a smile, but when Ruantang walked out from behind Xiao Shiqing, a touch of amazement first flashed on everyone's faces, and then the smile disappeared. "Shiqing, when did you arrive?" Wang Hao actually ignored Ruantang automatically and only asked Xiao Shiqing. Xiao Shiqing lifted her hair and just arrived. Looking at her expression, Wang Hao guessed that the conversation between the people just now was heard by them. Several people looked at each other, and there was no half-guilt in their expressions, as if they didn't care about Ruantang at all. A girl came over and pulled Xiao Shiqing into the middle of the crowd, not paying attention to Ruantang. Instead, Xiao Shiqing seemed a little embarrassed and turned around and said to Ruantang, "Sister Tangtang, you can sit down." Ruantang's eyes swept over everyone in the private room. This group of cowards who watch people serve dishes like to join forces to bully others in high school. Unexpectedly, they are in their 20s, and they are still in this bad way. If it hadn't been for the large number of them, she would have rushed up and slapped them. But considering that he was the only one, Ruan Tang decided to put up with this evil anger. She went to the farthest corner of the sofa and sat down. She looked at the fruit plate on the table, picked up the reddest part in the center of the watermelon plate and stuffed it into her mouth. The sweet juice burst into his mouth in an instant, and Ruan Tang also narrowed his eyes with satisfaction. Just as she was about to continue to eat the next piece, the sofa next to her suddenly sank into it, and the smell of cigarettes and alcohol suddenly rushed into Ruan Tang's nasal cavity. She looked back and saw a swollen male classmate sitting next to her, with 2 glasses of wine in his hand, and handed him over. Ruan Tang, long time no see. Come on, let's have a drink. It should be a mixture of white wine and foreign wine, and the alcohol taste is quite good. Ruan Tang frowned, decisively moved a large part to the side, and said, I can't drink a little. The bloated man's shirt was about to burst. I don't know if it was because he was angry or because he was too fat. The flesh on his face trembled and said in a rough voice, What do you mean? It's just a glass of wine. It's so disgraceful. Ruan Tang didn't bother to explain to him, so he stood up and walked out. The swollen man's hand suddenly stretched out from behind, and just as he was about to touch Ruan Tang's arm, he was dodged by Ruan Tang's dragon. Ruan Tang's frowning eyebrows hurt, and he was also a little angry. Many people look very stupid when they talk. You are different from them. You look stupid even if you don't speak. There was a dead silence in the private room. The bloated man didn't expect that she would suddenly think of herself. After a moment, he reacted and immediately cursed loudly. Ruan Tang. You bitch tsk. This little mouth seems to have been wiped off, and it sprays out vigorously. Ruan Tang looked at the swollen man with a joking eye while talking, and the damage was directly full. The bloated man was angry and excited. He pointed at Ruan Tang for a long time, but he couldn't think of any good words. Ruan Tang put his hands on his chest and sneered. What are you? The slippers are stuck in your throat. If you can talk, talk well. If you can't speak, go to the same table with the dog. This time, he also scolded the people next to him. The swelling man's eyes went black and he almost fainted. At this moment, Wang Hao, who was watching the excitement, suddenly spoke. Chen Qiaosheng, this is your fault. Ruan Tang, a pregnant woman, how can you persuade her to drink? If I were her, I would also scold you all over the ground. As soon as this was said, everyone in the private room was shocked. After all, the news is very secretive, and Ruan Tang and Fu Yuchuan have not made it public. Even Ruan Tang couldn't help looking at Wang Hao. I don't know what kind of dog ears he has, so clever. Wang Hao picked up the wine glass and smiled. Under the gossipy eyes of everyone, he told a secret again. You don't know yet, do you? Originally, Fu Yuchuan even drafted the divorce agreement. Both of them entered the Civil Affairs Bureau and sat at the window. As a result, Ruan Tang suddenly vomited. Wang Hao stopped, looked back at Ruan Tang, who had a solemn face, and smiled and said, Ruan Tang, it's worthy of you. Every step is so just right, even Fu Yuchuan's ups and downs in the business sea. It's all on your hands. Everyone's eyes were on Ruan Tang. There are surprise, contempt, envy and a trace of hatred. They despise Ruan Tang's methods, but envy that she can really play with a character like Fu Yuchuan. This is human nature. Behind the hatred, there is jealousy burning. Wang Hao stared at Ruan Tang, hoping to see panic, embarrassment and other emotions from her face. But he was soon disappointed. Ruan Tang's palm-sized face has only indifferent and proud bones. She smiled softly. What brand of plastic bag do you have? Can it be packed so much? Do you think you can stand spreading other people's privacy everywhere all day long? What's wrong with me getting pregnant? I've been married for 2 years, but I can't get pregnant. If you can't do that, you can't expect all the men in the world to be bad. A wave of damage transfer. Wang Hao's face turned green. The swollen man, who was so angry that he vomited blood just now, quietly glanced at Wang Hao's appearance and suddenly felt very happy. Wang Hao, don't talk anymore. Qiao Shujing suddenly stood up from the sofa and shouted like the heroine of Qiong Yao's drama. Then she suddenly picked up the wine glass on the table and held it up. It was all my fault for causing you to make such a fuss. I punish myself for 3 cups. No 5 cups. The high-height mixed wine was poured into her mouth. The person next to her did not react at first and wanted to stop it. By the time she reacted, Qiao Shijing had already poured 3 cups. Ruan Tang glanced at her dead appearance and was a little speechless. If you want to drink, just drink. How are you worth it? Chapter 34. You really didn't see me before you were 18 years old. I don't know if Qiao Shijing did it on purpose. It seems that the amount of alcohol is also very bad. After a few glasses of wine, his face began to blush. I feel sorry for him when he was weak and graceful. When the people beside them saw this scene, their heartache was written on their faces. Wang Hao opened his mouth even more. Comfort, Shijing, don't do this. We shouldn't talk nonsense. We know that you have always defended your sister, but you don't have to hurt your body like this. Ruantang. You hurt my heart, you know? Ruantang was so angry that when he grabbed the doorknob and was about to break the door, the mobile phone in his pocket suddenly rang, breaking the Chongyao drama directed by Qiao Shiqing. Ruantang took out his mobile phone and found that it was a call from Fu Yuchuan. She hesitated for 3 seconds and pressed the answer button. Hello? What's the matter? If you don't go to the Three Treasures Hall if you have nothing to do, this person will really not contact her if she has nothing to do. The Fu Yuchuan's voice was low. I have something to ask you. Hearing his serious tone, Ruantang unconsciously held his breath. You ask. You really don't remember me at all. When Fu Yuchuan's words fell, 3 question marks rose on Ruantang's forehead. Are you still suspicious of me? How can she prove that she lost her memory? She only remembers what happened before the age of 18, and she knew Fu Yuchuan after the age of 18. Of course, she doesn't remember him at all. I mean, you really didn't see me before you were 18 years old. The tentative intonation. Ruantang breathed slightly. She looked back. At this moment, Qiao Shiqing was already sitting on the sofa, looking drunk and pitiful. The person next to her was feeding her water and handing over tissues. It seemed to notice Ruantang's sight, and Qiao Shiqing's half-closed eyes suddenly looked this way. The moment the four looked at each other, Ruantang felt bursts of tingling from the hidden wound at the base of his thigh. A moment later, Ruantang withdrew his gaze as if nothing had happened, and stretched out his hand to open the door. Of course I haven't seen it. You know that I'm A. If I had seen you before the age of 18, I would have pestered you long ago, and I wouldn't have waited until after the age of 18. Her words were reasonable and convincing. The other end of the phone was silent. There was a smile on the corner of Ruantang's mouth. When he was about to say goodbye, he asked again, "Where are you now?" Ruantang was shocked. She originally wanted to go home to accompany her parents, but was temporarily dragged to such a club by Qiao Shiqing, but now if she tells Fu Yuchuan, she will definitely misunderstand that she came to find a male model again. I'm drinking coffee with my friends in the cafe. Ruantang told a well-intentioned lie. Anyway, she will come here immediately and never give Fu Yuchuan a chance to catch herself. Oh, Fu Yuchuan's ending is low, and the tone is a little long, like a joke. Ruantang didn't bother to delve into his tone. He hurriedly said goodbye and hung up the phone. When he walked out in a hurry, he almost hit a wall of people. The familiar sense of oppression spread around, trapping Ruantang like a cage. She widened her eyes in shock and looked up at the man in front of her. Damn, I'm caught. Fu Yuchuan wore a white shirt and a black coat today. His cold and handsome face was expressionless. His cold and reserved temperament was very similar to the leading actor of an idol drama. If his eyes were not so cold-blooded, Ruantang would have liked it more. Would you like to listen to my explanation? Ruantang spoke weakly. Fu Yuchuan's eyes swept Ruantang from head to toe, and the key parts were lips and neck. He confirmed that there were no traces of ambiguity. He raised his hand and pulled the part of the bow tie, and the sexy throat knot rolled up and down for a moment. He said, "Well, I also want to hear when the business scope will be changed to start selling coffee." Ruantang's brain was buzzing. When he was trying to find a reason to fool around, a fragrance crossed his side. Afterglow, she only saw a weak figure flashing, accurate, and error-free, rushing to Fu Yuchuan's chest. This sudden scene not only shocked Ruantang, but also made Fu Yuchuan frown fiercely. He raised his hands reflexively and gave way sideways, without a hair of contact with the woman who rushed over. With an exclamation, the woman rushed to the wall accurately and did not fall. When she stood firmly and turned around, Ruantang recognized that it was Qiao Shiqing. "Qiao Shiqing, what's wrong with you?" Ruantang looked at Qiao Shiqing's behavior curiously. Qiao Shiqing seemed to be a little embarrassed when she hit the wall. She turned around for a long time. She squinted and looked drunk again. She said softly, "Sister Tangtang, I seem to have drunk too much." She was dizzy, but her hand seemed to be a navigation system. She groped in the air for a while and stretched directly to Fu Yuchuan's arm. At this time, Fu Yuchuan also recognized that the person in front of him was Ruantang's cousin. Facing the girl's outstretched hand, he did not avoid it like the first time, but he was not particularly happy, with a subtle struggle on his expression. Ruantang saw a clue and stepped forward to hold Qiao Shiqing's hand and asked her to put it on him. "You drank too much. I'll take you back." Just in time, she needs an excuse to stay away from Fu Yuchuan. She helped Qiao Shiqing take 2 steps, but Qiao Shiqing's whole body fell on her and refused to walk properly. "Qiao Shiqing, stop it." Ruantang has basically seen through her little thoughts. She is very unhappy, but it is also difficult to vent in front of Fu Yuchuan. "Sister Tangtang, was that your brother-in-law just now?" Qiao Shiqing held her forehead, looking like she had just woken up. Ruantang glanced back at her. "You saw it wrong, no?" Qiao Shiqing was stunned for a moment. "How could it be? I seem to see that it's my brother-in-law." "Sister Tangtang, you must not have seen it clearly." Ruantang really wanted to cry. In order to get close to Fu Yuchuan, Qiao Shijing's hard work made her heartbroken. That's really not your brother-in-law. She wants to see how Qiao Shijing can act. The next second, Qiao Shijing showed her acting talent. She suddenly turned around while Ruantang was not paying attention and looked at the cold-faced man behind her, and a look of surprise flashed across her face. She staggered and stretched out her hand and pointed to Fu Yuchuan's face. Sister, brother-in-law. It's really you. You came just in time. Just now, a few people have been saying bad things about my sister. I was afraid that my sister would quarrel with them, so I punished myself for 5 cups. I was a little dizzy. Good man, in just a few words, he created the image of a weak but strong vitality girl who is willing to sacrifice herself to protect her sister from harm. Ruantang nodded secretly. What a talent of his mother. If you don't study screenwriting and learn finance, isn't it a violent thing? Chapter 35. Your ex-husband may become a brother-in-law. Fu Yuchuan's eyes fell on Qiao Shijing's face, which was so dark that others could not see what he was thinking at all. And Ruantang suddenly realized a problem. This was the first time she had seen Fu Yuchuan staring at a person for so long in the past few days. He also saw her like this before, but it was because of her memory loss and he didn't trust her. So what does it mean for Fu Yuchuan to stare at Qiao Shijing like this now? Is it possible that there are some secrets behind Qiao Shijing that Fu Yuchuan can't help but explore? Ruantang's eyes looked back and forth between the two, without half jealousy, only full of scrutiny. Finally, Fu Yuchuan stopped a passing waitress and pointed at Qiao Shijing. Please help me get her outside. The waitress looked at Fu Yuchuan and Ruantang and didn't understand why the two good-handed people didn't help themselves. But she is a waiter, how can she offend customers? All right, sir. The waitress walked to Qiao Shijing and helped her. Qiao Shijing was stunned, but did not push away this time, but took the opportunity to fall on the waitress. As the saying goes, good works need to be left blank. If the play is too much, it will be annoying. But the way Fu Yuchuan looked at her just now convinced her that she had successfully attracted Fu Yuchuan's attention. After the waiter helped Qiao Shijing leave, Ruantang also followed. She passed by Fu Yuchuan and stopped. By the way, why don't you come here in the company in broad daylight? This is called defeating magic with magic. She will turn against the army. Fu Yuchuan's expression became more and more subtle. He was silent for 2 seconds before saying, I'm looking for someone. He didn't say who to look for. Ruantang thinks that the scope is relatively wide. Maybe it's a partner? Suddenly, he felt that it was boring, so he raised his foot and followed the waiter's footsteps. The group walked to the side of the road, and the waiter had helped Qiao Shijing into the back seat of Fu Yuchuan's car. Ruantang looked at Qiao Shijing, who was unconscious, and then looked at Qiao Shijing's car, and suddenly said, Fu Yuchuan, didn't you drink, did you? Then you drive Qiao Shijing's car to me, and your driver will plant Qiao Shijing. Ruantang made a decision on his own. He bent down into the car and groped for Qiao Shijing for a while to find the key. On the way, Qiao Shijing tried to get up, but was pressed down by Ruantang. Shijing, you are drunk. Have a good rest. We will send you back right away. Qiao Shijing's eyes rolled her eyes under her eyelids, but she could only let Ruantang take the car key. Ruantang threw the car key to Fu Yuchuan and opened the co-pilot's door and sat in. After Fu Yuchuan sat in the driver's seat, he looked back at her with deep eyes. When he started the car to catch up with the car carrying Qiao Shijing, Ruantang suddenly said something. No. She said these 3 words loudly, which was very awkward in the carriage. Fu Yuchuan turned around and found that she didn't call. These 3 words were for herself. What's not allowed? There happened to be a red light in front of him. Fu Yuchuan parked the car at the intersection, holding the steering wheel with his slender right hand, cold and charming. Ruantang turned his face and looked straight at his jawline, which was clearer than his own life, and said righteously and sternly, it can't be Qiao Shijing. Although you will fall in love with someone in the future who has nothing to do with me, in any case, you can't be the person around me, or the person who grew up with me to eat my family and live in my house. In a word, it's okay to have a child, it's okay to divorce, it's okay if you don't love me, but you can't disgust me. Fu Yuchuan squeezed the steering wheel and tightened his fingers. He frowned slightly, and the displeasure spread in the carriage. The green light turned on, but he did not start the car directly, but looked back at Ruantang. Do I disgust you? What a big joke. She married him in such a disgusting way. Now, she has just lost her memory. On the contrary, she stands at the moral high point and turns out that he disgusts her. Ruantang didn't make a sound. She could see that Fu Yuchuan was getting angry. But she is really bad. It's disgusting to think that her ex-husband may become a sister-in-law in the future. Is it possible to call your child your mother and your nephew and niece in the future? While she was thinking nonsense, the sound of a car horn came from behind her, urging Fu Yuchuan to drive. Fu Yuchuan stepped on the accelerator, and his face was as cold as a glacier that had not melted for 10,000 years. Ruantang, have I been so kind to you recently that I have made you forget your moderation? Oh, really? Ruantang's 4 or 2,000 jins directly filled Fu Yuchuan's anger. The car stopped on the side of the road with a snock. Fu Yuchuan didn't even look back with a calm face, and roared, "Get out of the car!" Ruan Tang was stunned for a moment and looked at the car carrying Xiao Shijing in front of her. She asked, "Are you really going to leave me alone on the side of the road?" She was very curious about how much essence she hated was hidden under Fu Yuchua's confusing face. "Don't let me repeat it again." Fu Yuchua's jawline was tight, and he didn't change his mind. Ruan Tang nodded, "Okay. I actually fell in love with such a person before. It's really blind." She pushed the door to get out of the car. When she slapped the door back, she raised her middle finger at the window. When Fu Yuchuan saw the middle finger, his eyes were black. "One step on the accelerator, the car will go away." Ruan Tang stood on the side of the road for 2 seconds and called Ruan Chen. "Brother, Xiao Shijing drank too much. Fu Yuchuan is sending her back. I won't come back for dinner today." Ruan Chen was shocked by the huge amount of information and was stunned for a moment. "What is it? Don't touch him. He seems to be a trainer at first glance. You didn't get a bargain last time, did you?" Ruan Tang said that it would be good to endure it for another year. "When the child died, I and this person would break up with one knife, and we would never get along with each other." She hung up the phone with a snap. There was a lot of traffic on the highway. Ruan Tang stood on the side of the road and watched for a while. She hasn't had such a feeling of freedom for a long time. When she loved Fu Yuchuan, she not only set up a cage for Fu Yuchuan, but also trapped herself. In the future, whoever wants to sit in this love prison will sit. Anyway, Ruan Tang won't sit. She raised her feet and strode forward. At the door of the Jinhao Hotel, 2 little girls in their 20s were carrying dessert bags and walking out while joking. Until one of the girls bumped into the person next to him and looked forward. "Xiao Xiao, isn't that your sister-in-law? Why did she run to the hotel alone?" At the front desk of the hotel, Ruan Tang is checking in for himself. She won't go home tonight, and she doesn't want to go back to Fu Yuchua's bird cage. She is going to lie in the top 7-star hotel in the city, watch the beautiful scenery, eat delicious food, and then sleep well. "Miss, this is your room card." The front desk handed over the room card, and Ruan Tang took it with a smile. "Thank you." Behind him, Fu Xiaoxiao's hateful eyes couldn't wait to see through Ruan Tang's back. "It's really her?" Chapter 36. Where did your cufflinks come from? Ruan Tang was all on himself, and didn't notice Fu Xiaoxiao behind him at all. She got the room card and went straight into the elevator under the guidance of the waiter. My friend stopped Fu Xiaoxiao. "Why did your sister-in-law come to the hotel alone? Could it be come to see someone?" It is not difficult to see from her face that what she refers to is a very unpleasant thing to meet people. Fu Xiaoxiao's face turned black and he shook her away. "I still have something to do. You go back first. By the way, everyone knows that my sister-in-law loves my brother very much. She won't mess around outside. Don't talk nonsense when you go back." The friend looked at her angry look and laughed awkwardly. "That must be my misunderstanding. Don't be angry. I will never say half a word." After saying that, she left under the gaze of Fu Xiaoxiao. As soon as his friend left, Fu Xiaoxiao's face changed, turned around and ran quickly to the elevator that Ruan Tang had just entered. I saw the elevator stop on the 25th floor for a while before coming down. Fu Xiaoxiao did not immediately run to the front desk to ask. After all, this kind of hotel attaches great importance to the privacy of customers and will not tell her. But it's not without a breakthrough. She pressed the elevator and watched the numbers on the screen keep falling. When the elevator door opened, a waiter-dressed boy stood in the elevator, who was the one who had just sent Ruan Tang up. The little brother was about to go out. When he saw Fu Xiaoxiao at the door, he politely gave way and waited for her to come first. Fu Xiaoxiao didn't say anything. After entering the elevator, she grabbed the little brother who was about to go out. "Miss." The little brother looked at her with a surprised face. Fu Xiaoxiao said in a low voice, "25th floor, you send me up first." The little brother was stunned for a moment, but the people who came and went to the hotel were rich. He didn't dare to offend easily, so he had to press the 25 button. When the elevator went up, the carriage was quiet. The little brother secretly looked at Fu Xiaoxiao through the mirror of the elevator door and recognized that she was a customer who often came to eat here, as if she was from the Fu family. "Miss, here we are." As soon as the elevator stopped, the little brother reached out to block the door and asked Fu Xiaoxiao to go out first. Fu Xiaoxiao was not in a hurry to step out, but whispered when passing by him, "Come out with me, I have something to trouble you." There is a surveillance camera in the elevator and a surveillance camera in the corridor. She can't leave any traces, so she can only take the little brother to a place where the surveillance can't see. The little brother didn't know what she was going to do, but she was too old and couldn't do anything, so he followed her. The two walked to the safety exit on the 25th floor. The moment the thick fire door closed, the whole space became quiet. Fu Xiaoxiao turned to meet the little brother's eyes and said straight to the point, "Little brother, did the sister you just sent up alone? Is there anyone else checking in with her? Now, the hotel management is strict, and everyone who checks in needs to check in." After she asked, the little brother hesitated. This is the customer's privacy. Seeing this, Fu Xiaoxiao immediately smiled and put on a weak posture that only a little girl has. Brother, I don't hide it from you, actually she is my sister. She had a very unscrupulous boyfriend some time ago. Her family was afraid that she would be cheated and kept persuading her to break up. She refused. Today, she sneaked out alone. I followed her because I was afraid that she would come to find that man again. Don't worry, I won't reveal half a word if you tell me. Fu's genes are excellent. Fu Xiaoxiao's petite and cute, and her watery eyes drooped down, which can immediately arouse a man's desire for protection. The little brother fell on the spot and comforted. Then you can rest assured that she came to live alone, and there was no second person. She just asked me to call a dining car for her just now. It seems that she is going to vent her emotions by having a big meal. Really? Fu Xiaoxiao felt unbelievable and even a little regretful. Then can't she do anything about her? She thought for 2 seconds and looked at the little brother. Excuse me, I'm calling my family. Can you wait for me? It's okay. The little brother was also afraid that something would happen to her as a little girl, so he immediately agreed. Fu Xiaoxiao stepped aside and dialed Fu Yuchua's phone. At this time, 2 cars were parked in front of Qiao's house. The driver helped the dizzy Qiao Shixing out of the car, but Fu Yuchuan sat in the car without moving. He stared at Qiao Shixing's back, but his attention was not on Qiao Shixing at all. Instead, he was full of thinking about where Ruan Tang was now and whether she had taken a taxi home. He admitted that he was a little impulsive just now, but he was also angry with Ruan Tang's bastard words. Just when he picked up his mobile phone to call Sister Zhao, Fu Xiaoxiao's name appeared on his mobile phone. He was stunned for a moment. Before he could decide whether to pick it up or not, the window of the car was suddenly snapped. Fu Yuchuan took down his mobile phone and looked back. Qiao Shixing, who had just been drunk, was standing outside the car door at this time. She looks much better than before, at least she doesn't look unsteady anymore. Fu Yuchuan did not respond directly, but stared at Qiao Shixing's face, as if he was thinking about something. Qiao Shixing waited anxiously outside the car door, and raised her finger and gently knocked on the window. This time, Fu Yuchuan lowered the window of the car. What's the matter? His voice is a little cold. Qiao Shixing bit her lower lip. The man sat in the driver's seat with one hand on the steering wheel, and his cold eyebrows were slightly pressed down, looking very difficult to get along with. More novels at Little Rose's brother Li Chuan. Ruan Tang is not here, so naturally, she doesn't want to call him brother-in-law anymore. Fu Yuchuan didn't respond. He just looked at her and waited for her to continue. Even with Qiao Shixing's scheming, she also felt a little flustered under the cold gaze of the man. She whispered, "Today it's all my fault. I shouldn't have taken my sister to that kind of place to meet my old classmates. If you want to blame me, just blame me. Don't have a conflict with my sister because of me." It sounds normal, but Fu Yuchuan has seen too many such women, and naturally, he has heard a lot of such words. He whispered, "It's not a big deal. The most important thing is that you get home safely." Qiao Shixing looked even more aggrieved when she heard it. It's not that simple to get close to this man. She has been mentally prepared for a long time. That's enough for tonight. She knows how to move forward and retreat. Thank you for taking me home. Be careful on your way. After saying that, she turned around and was about to leave. At the moment when she turned around, Fu Yuchuan suddenly stopped her. Qiao Shixing. Qiao Shixing was stunned and turned around with some surprise. Is there anything else? Fu Yuchuan's eyes did not stay on her face, but slid down and fell on her slender neck. She wore a sweater with a larger neckline today, and the necklace hanging around her neck swayed twice in the air because of her bending. Fu Yuchuan pointed to the necklace. Is that a cufflink? Where did it come from? Chapter 37. How did this bastard come here? The safe entrance of the hotel. Fu Xiaoxiao called Fu Yuchuan, but no one answered the phone for a long time. She looked back at the waiter, who was still waiting, so she could only hang up the phone and walk towards him. Sorry, I couldn't contact my family. It doesn't matter. You can either go to your sister and talk about it. You are her family members. Don't let her associate with messy people for her. She will understand. In fact, the little brother is very young looking, and he is about 1.8 meters tall. His appearance is very good. When he speaks, he is gentle, giving people a good sense of cultivation. Fu Xiaoxiao stared at him for a while and suddenly had an idea. She raised her feet and walked to the little brother, raised her deer-like eyes and looked at him pitifully. The little brother was embarrassed for a moment. When he was about to leave, he heard the little girl in front of him say mysteriously, "Brother, can you do me a favor? Don't worry, it's not unreasonable. I just hope to help my sister so that she won't be so sad. Don't worry, I will give you a reward afterwards, and God knows about this matter, and no one else will know about it." The little brother was stunned. Fu Xiaoxiao had come up, put his hand to his ear, and whispered a few words. Half an hour later, a doorbell interrupted Ruan Tang, who was listening to music in the room. She stood up and walked to the door, looking out through the cat's eyes alertly. Seeing that it was the waiter who had just sent her upstairs, she let go of her guard and opened the door. The little brother was pushing a dining car with a variety of delicious food on it. In summary, he said, carbon water bomb. Ruan Tang didn't have time to be sad because of Fu Yuchuan. She just wanted to hold herself to death. Thank you. Ruan Tang took a step away. The little brother pushed the dining car into the door. Miss, this is the meal you ordered. Okay. Ruan Tang was still standing at the door, waiting for him to go out. The little brother showed a look of wanting to say but stopped. When he retreated and passed by her, he suddenly stopped. Miss, I think you are here alone. Do you have anything on your mind? Don't worry, I'm not a big-mouthed person. If you want to talk, I can listen to you. He looks very sincere, but he is a tall and strange man. Facing his sincerity, Ruan Tang instinctively felt a trace of resistance. The smile on her face immediately faded, and she said with an alienated attitude, I don't know. Why do you think so? But I'm very happy, and I don't need others to listen to me. Thank you. Please leave immediately. Ruan Tang raised his hand to pull the door and wanted to close it. But the little brother stood straight at the door and didn't mean to leave. The two formed a subtle confrontation. Ruan Tang raised his head, and his eyes were completely cold. If you don't leave, I'm going to call someone. Not far from the corner, a mobile phone took a picture of the scene of the two standing at the door and talking. Because of the angle, the waiter only showed half of his arm, and he couldn't tell what profession it was in a suit. And Ruan Tang looked up at the little brother in front of the camera, and the distance was very close. What kind of person? Ruan Tang said in her heart that as soon as the waiter stepped out, she immediately slammed the door and locked it. She asked herself that she was dressed normally, and there was nothing excessive between her speech and behavior. I don't know which tendon is wrong with this person. The more Ruan Tang thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt. He went to the living room, called the front desk, and told what had just happened. The front desk apologized again and again, and wanted the waiter to come up and apologize. No, but please be more professional in training. You'd better be wary of some people who don't like it. Ruan Tang hung up the phone angrily. When she looked back at the delicious food in the dining car, she suddenly lost the mood to eat. Oh, what a terrible day. After eating something, she took a shower and prepared to go to bed to rest. Just as she came out wrapped in a bath towel, the mobile phone on the sofa was vibrating wildly. She walked over to get it and took a look. Oh, it's Fu Yuchuan, the heartless man. Why, now do you remember that you still have a pregnant wife who was left on the road? Ruan Tang refused to answer the phone without thinking about it. Before she put down her mobile phone, there was 3 knocks on the door. No, who is it? After experiencing what had just happened, Ruan Tang was already alert. He not only did not go over to open the door, but also picked up the landline on the sofa and was ready to call the front desk at any time. But the next time it was not the knock on the door, but Fu Yuchuan's low voice. Ruan Tang, open the door. I know you are inside. How did this bastard find here? Ruan Tang didn't know where to start complaining for a moment. She thought for a long time and couldn't set out who revealed her whereabouts. Just as she was meditating, Fu Yuchuan's voice came from outside the door again. This time, his voice seemed less calm, with a hint of gunpowder. Ruan Tang, if you don't open the door again, I will have someone smash the door open. You know, even if I smash the hotel now, I can afford it. The amount of money is overwhelming. Ruan Tang rolled his huge white eyes and walked to the door and looked at the cat's eye. Fu Yuchuan stood alone outside the door, but the man's expression was more cold than in the afternoon, and he could even faintly see the fire between his eyebrows. Wait, why is he angry? Ruan Tang also got angry and opened the door. But she had a heart and didn't open all the doors. She only showed a crack and looked at the man dissatisfiedly. You don't need to apologize, but if you want me to apologize to you, that's also an idiot. What is this? Ruan Tang looked at Fu Yuchuan's mobile phone, which showed a photo of her standing at the door and talking to a man with only half of her body exposed. Looking at Fu Yuchuan's angry eyes, Ruan Tang suddenly realized something. Hotel room, man, orphaned man and widow. Obviously, the waiter just now was not nervous, but was instructed to talk to her. The person hiding in the dark took a photo and sent it to Fu Yuchuan. Fu Yuchuan now comes to confront her, which is the result that the man behind her wants to see. Ruan Tang frowned and tightened the bath towel on his chest. Things are not what you think. It was just the waiter of the hotel, and he delivered the dining car to me. The corners of Fu Yuchuan's mouth rose slightly. Do you think I will believe it? After being kicked out of the car by him, instead of going home, she ran to the hotel alone to open a room, which was the most suspicious thing. Fu Yuchuan didn't believe that she would do this, but it was limited to Ruan Tang in the past. He didn't forget that Ruan Tang in front of him lost his memory and not only forgot him, but also no longer loved him. If she wants to find a spare tire for herself before the divorce, it is not impossible. Get out of the way. Fu Yuchuan stared at Ruan Tang's straight shoulder and neckline, covering the bath towel on his chest, with a hint of desire to refuse and welcome. Chapter 38. What does it look like without clothes? What do you want to do? Ruan Tang frowned and looked at the tall man in front of her with some uneasiness. If Fu Yuchuan is angry with her, how can she, a female generation, be his opponent? But before she refused for the second time, Fu Yuchuan suddenly spread his long legs and forced him up. His aura was too strong, and his dark eyes fell, which was suffocating. Ruan Tang didn't dare to face him and subconsciously took a step back. Fu Yuchuan took the opportunity to step into the door and slammed the door with his backhand. The space became quiet in an instant. Being stared at by Fu Yuchuan, Ruan Tang felt that his body was piercingly cold. She pulled the bath towel and said, "Well, wait for me to put on my clothes. If you want to talk, talk seriously. What does it look like without clothes?" Just as she was about to turn around, a force wrapped around her shoulder, and when the tingling sensation spread all over her body, her whole body was suddenly pulled back and pressed against the wall. Fu Yuchuan stood in front of her and looked over condescendingly. "You'd better give me a reasonable explanation." Ruan Tang panicked for a while, and there was a faint feeling that something was out of control. She hurriedly said, "I've made it clear to you. I don't know the person just now. He's just a hotel staff. What else do you want me to say to you?" After listening to it, Fu Yuchuan didn't reply for a long time. He seemed to be thinking about the truth of her words, and he seemed to be just looking at her. This feeling made Ruan Tang more and more panicked. She has long forgotten those moments of lingering with Fu Yuchuan, and now she has no memory of being close to men at all. Because of the panic, she began to be speechless. "Fu Yuchuan, don't mess around. I don't like you at all now. If you think I'm annoying and don't want to see me anymore, then we can also live separate. I'll move back to my own home. When the child is born, I will." "How dare you?" Fu Yuchuan interrupted harshly. "What don't I dare to?" The sudden touch on the lips made Ruan Tang stunned. When she reacted and wanted to push Fu Yuchuan away, he put his hand around her waist and pressed her tighter into his arms. Ruan Tang's brain was blank, and she could only let men invade her. Fu Yuchuan was a little out of control. He originally just wanted her to shut up, but when he touched the soft lips, the familiar memories in the memory that made people's blood spurt out surged. Ruan Tang is very soft, her waist is too much to hold, and she is also very delicate. She can't stand tossing and turning. Often once or twice is enough for her to cry and start begging for mercy. But this can arouse a man's heart to crush her beastly desire. Fu Yuchuan doesn't like her, but he never denies that she is very attractive in bed. The temperature around suddenly rose, and Ruan Tang's jerky reaction made Fu Yuchuan more and more excited. He let go of Ruan Tang, and before the latter could take a breath, he bent down to pick her up and strode towards the bed. Ruan Tang's consciousness gradually came to his senses and patted his chest. "Fu Yuchuan, you bastard. You are not allowed to touch me. Let go of me." While struggling, the towel, which was not firm, loosened. The fair and snowy skin made Fu Yuchuan's expression cold. He rudely put Ruan Tang on the bed and bullied him. In the face of men's strength, Ruan Tang was powerless. When the skin comes into contact with air, the feeling of helplessness spreads all over the body. Just as Fu Yuchuan was getting more and more excessive, Ruan Tang felt a sharp pain attacking his brain. As if countless steel needles were piercing her brain, she felt a deep tingling sensation. It seems that something wants to rush out of the depths of the brain. Ruan Tang realized that it was her sealed memory. No, she doesn't want to recall everything. She doesn't fall in love with Fu Yuchuan again. She wants to be herself again. "Fu Yuchuan!" Ruan Tang roared, raised his hand and slapped Fu Yuchuan's face fiercely. With a loud bang, Fu Yuchuan's face was tilted to one side. The room was dead silent. After a long time, Fu Yuchuan licked his bloody mouth with his tongue and looked at Ruan Tang under him. But to his surprise, the person under him closed his eyes and looked like he had fallen asleep. "Ruan and Tang." 2 words popped out of his throat, and he had reached the critical point of anger. Ruan Tang didn't respond. Fu Yuchuan's eyebrows sank. "Don't pretend, get up." Ruan Tang still didn't respond. Looking at her suddenly calm sleeping face like a baby, Fu Yuchuan suddenly realized something. He bent down and came to her. "Ruan Tang, wake up." Half an hour later, Ruan Tang was rushed to the hospital. When Fu Yuchuan was standing in the corridor waiting, Fu's family rushed over after receiving the news. After all, now Ruan Tang is pregnant with the child of the Fu family, and her safety cannot be lost at all. "Li Chuan, have you forgotten? How did you promise me?" Mrs. Fu looked heartbroken and couldn't wait to raise her hand and slap him fiercely. But after all, he is his most beloved grandson. He still puts his hand down. Fu's father didn't look good on the side. "How did you get into the hospital? What on earth happened?" Fu Yuchuan looked at the door of the operating room without saying a word. Just as Fu's father wanted to open his mouth again, Fu Xiaoxiao rushed forward and blocked his brother. "Dad. Don't say big brother, okay?" Ruan Tang, a woman with so many eyes, maybe she played another bitter plan to arouse the sympathy of the eldest brother. "Looking at your nervous look, her goal has been achieved. Xiaoxiao, you have a deep misunderstanding of Ruan Tang. She is not the kind of person you are talking about." Fu's father defended Ruan Tang. Fu Xiaoxiao said disdainfully, her tricks are just for you. Fu Xiaoxiao, shut up. Fu Yuquan suddenly interrupted Fu Xiaoxiao's words harshly. Brother. Fu Xiaoxiao couldn't help looking at him in surprise. In the past, no matter what she said about Ruan Tang, the eldest brother would not talk to her like this. Everything will wait for someone to come out. Fu Yuquan didn't look at Fu Xiaoxiao and didn't have any explanation. After saying that, he turned to the other side and took out the vibrating phone in his pocket. How's it going? Fu Xiaoxiao's angry voice came from behind him, and Fu Yuquan pressed his eyebrows with his hand a little irritable. The voice of Assistant Pan Chen came from the other end of the phone. Mr. Fu, I have called the police and asked the hotel staff before the police came. He said that all this was asked by someone to help him do so. After that end, Fu Yuquan's face turned dark in an instant. He turned his head and looked at Fu Xiaoxiao, who was still spoiling Fu's mother. Fu Xiaoxiao touched his eyes, and suddenly his whole body stiffened, subconsciously avoiding eye contact. In an instant, Fu Yuquan understood everything. Fu Xiaoxiao, come here. Chapter 39. Fu Yuquan was slapped in the face again. When he received the videos sent by those anonymous numbers, Fu Yuquan also suspected that someone had deliberately done it. With his usual reason, he is unlikely to be fooled by such a person. But today, he just got out of control. He was so angry that he didn't even have time to investigate in advance. He rushed to Ruan Tang's room and scared her unconscious. And the originator of all this is obviously Fu Xiaoxiao. Fu Xiaoxiao was called aside, and her eyes were even more dodge, and she didn't dare to look at Fu Yuquan at all. Fu Yuquan said coldly, "What do you want to say to me?" Fu Xiaoxiao immediately understood that the eldest brother was forcing himself to ask. She originally wanted to be hard-mouthed. But the next second, Fu Yuquan said, "If you dare to lie to me, you don't have to recognize me as your brother from now on." This threat is useless to others, but it is the most serious threat to Fu Xiaoxiao. Her eyes turned red in an instant, but she still stubbornly said, "I didn't do anything wrong. I just hope she can let you go and stop pestering you. So you use such things to make up facts. You are not forcing her, you are forcing me." The purpose of Fu Xiaoxiao's video was to force the two to quarrel, and then Fu Yuquan gave up Ruan Tang's child in a hurry and completely divorced her. It's so ridiculous. Fu Yuquan clenched his fist. If it hadn't been for the sake of her own sister, he would have slapped her twice to make her sober. Big brother. Why did I force you? Haven't you always hated her? Then divorce. It's just a child, and many women want to give birth to you. These words are exactly the same as what Ruan Tang said. Fu Yuquan thought it was ridiculous. In the past, everyone did not allow him to divorce Ruan Tang, but now everyone is forcing him to divorce. Doesn't he have any self-will? Fu Xiaoxiao. Fu Yuquan raised his palm, and the majestic palm wind blew over Fu Xiaoxiao's cheeks. Fu Xiaoxiao was so scared that his eyes widened. He looked at the slap that was only a fist away from him, and rolled down with tears in his eyes. After calming down for 2 seconds, Fu Yuquan put down his hand. "Before the child is born, I will never divorce Ruan Tang. Put away your self-righteousness. If you dare to do such things to her in the future, I will definitely not hold it high and gently put it down like today." A trace of murderous intent flashed in his eyes, which made people shiver. Fu Xiaoxiao couldn't say a word. He stood still and shed tears. Fu's mother saw the movement here and hurried over and took her precious daughter into her arms. But Fu Xiaoxiao did something wrong, and naturally, he broke his teeth and swallowed them into his stomach. After a while, the doctor in charge of examining Ruan Tang came out and pulled Fu Yuquan aside alone. Did the patient experience brain trauma not long ago? Yes, she lost her memory of 4 years. Fu Yuquan paused for a moment. "Doctor, is she all right?" "It's okay. Fainting is related to brain trauma. The brain's self-protection effect caused by emotional excitement. Later, you must let her rest and no longer be stimulated." After the doctor finished speaking, he was called away by a nurse to do other things. After the doctor left, Fu's family came up. After listening to Fu Yuquan's words, Fu's mother couldn't help asking, "Why didn't you ask about the fetus? Does it affect the fetus?" Fu Yuquan was stunned. He didn't ask. He didn't know what was going on and couldn't remember the fetus at all. At this time, Mrs. Fu looked at Fu's mother reproachfully. It must be because of the car accident some time ago. The most important thing now is Tang Tao's health. You, an elder, can't hold it clearly. Fu's mother was speechless and stiffly squeezed out a smile. "Mom, you're right. I'm talking too much. Don't come in. I'll go in and see Tang Tao alone." Mrs. Fu disliked others very much and left everyone into Ruan Tang's ward. Just as the rest of the people were looking at each other, a messy sound of footsteps rushed to them. Fu Yuquan just looked up, and a heavy fist had hit the corner of his mouth. There was a fishy sweetness in his mouth, and Fu Yuquan already knew who the person was. "Fu Yuquan, you bastard. It seems that you haven't been subdued by me last time. I have to beat you to death today." Ruan Chen roared and raised his hand to punch again, but Fu Yuquan grabbed his wrist with his backhand. The two tall men were facing each other, and the atmosphere was full of tension. The others finally reacted, and the Ruan family followed closely, pulling Ruan Chen away. Last time Ruan Tang had a car accident, the Fu family and his wife did not come. This time, the two families met in the hospital because Ruan Tang was hospitalized. The scene was awkward and the atmosphere was tense. Fu's father was the first to speak. You two relatives, this is indeed an accident. It's better to wait for Li Chuan to explain the ins and outs before investigating. Fu's father is reasonable and cultivated. Ruan Chen roared without giving face at all. What's the accident? Fu Yuchuan, you said it yourself. Didn't you do it? My sister is in good health. Why did she faint again? You say it. The fierce color in Fu Yuchuan's eyes faded. This matter is indeed his fault. Everyone waited for him to speak, but he was silent. When Ruan Chen's violent temper could not be stopped, Rua's father suddenly opened his mouth to break the deadlock. Dear family, since the matter has happened, the ins and outs are no longer important, and we don't want to hold people responsible. We only have one small request. Fu's father asked, what request? Ruan's father glanced at Fu Yuchuan and said, during this period, I want to take Tang Tang home to live. She was spoiled by us since she was a child and couldn't suffer at all. Now, she is pregnant again. It is the time when she needs someone's care and love. As parents, we can't change something, but we also want to do our best to do something for her. What? He didn't mention Fu Yuchuan in every word, but he was pointing at Fu Yuchuan's nose and cursing. The people present could naturally hear what he meant. Over the years, everyone knows that Ruan Tang is good to Fu Yuchuan. At the same time, Fu Yuchuan's indifference to Ruan Tang is also known to everyone. He didn't care about Ruan Tang. Now he doesn't divorce, just for the child in Ruan Tang's belly. Fu's father knew that he was at a loss. After Rua's father finished speaking, he didn't dare to refuse. He just looked at Fu Yuchuan helplessly. Could it be that he really did something wrong when he arranged the marriage between the two? Just when everyone was silent, Fu Xiaoxiao, who was full of anger, found an opportunity to question Rua's father on the spot. Ruan Tang hasn't divorced my brother yet. Why do you take her back? People outside know what they will think of our Fu family. If you really want to take her back, let her and my eldest brother leave. With the sound of a slap in the face, Fu Xiaoxiao screamed and covered his right face. Everyone's eyes turned to the person who did it. Chapter 40. He actually agreed. No one expected that this slap was not the Ruan family, but Fu Yuchuan. Fu Xiaoxiao was dumbfounded and looked at Fu Yuchuan blankly. How is it possible? The eldest brother has loved her the most since she was a child. No matter what mistakes she made, the eldest brother never hit her. She did such a big mistake today, and the eldest brother just warned her. But why did the eldest brother beat her after she questioned Rue's family? Fu Xiaoxiao couldn't think of it. His eyes, which had been red for a long time, could not shed tears. He just stared at Fu Yuchuan. Fu's mother rushed up, hugged Fu Xiaoxiao, and looked up at Fu Yuchuan to say something, but turned around. She noticed that Rue's family was watching, and swallowed the words back, but her daughter's eyes turned red. When Rue's family saw this scene, they avoided their sight awkwardly. After all, this is the Fu family's family. They are watching here, and it's not easy for them to deal with it. Dear family, let's go to the ward to see Tang Tang. If she wakes up and can't see anyone, she will be scared. Ruan's father nodded to Fu's father and was about to push the door to the ward. When he put his hand on the door handle, Fu Yuchuan's voice came from behind him. Please wait a moment. What do you want to do again? Ruan Chen's tone is not kind. If you think you didn't fight enough just now, I don't mind fighting with you again. He stared at Fu Yuchuan angrily and rolled up his sleeves. In fact, the calf bone kicked by Fu Yuchuan last time was still bruised, but in order to stand up for Ruan Tang, he didn't care. Just after he put on his posture, Fu Yuchuan did not come forward. He just stood in place, straight and upright. Although the corners of his mouth had been swollen by Ruan Chen, he still looked calm without being humiliated. I'm sorry, I have an inescapable responsibility for Ruan Tang's fainting today. You can take Ruan Tang home to rest for a period of time. She also needs to rest under the care of her family now. When she gets better, I will apologize in person and pick her up. After Fu Yuchuan finished his words, everyone present was stunned. He actually agreed? Rua's father looked at him several times to confirm that he was not saying the opposite. Really? Is it really okay? Facing Rua's father's unbelievable look, Fu Yuchuan nodded slightly. Sorry for causing you trouble. Through the door of the operating room, Fu Yuchuan looked at Ruan Tang, who was surrounded by the crowd. A trace of confusion flashed between his expression. Ruan Tang, which one is the real you? Before amnesia or after amnesia? I used to think I could see through you at a glance, but now I suddenly feel that I have never really understood you. When Ruan Tang woke up, he saw the cloud lamp that accompanied him to grow up, and the familiar smell of Zenthia aromatherapy came from the air. Tang Tang, are you awake? Just wake up. Ruan's father, Rua's mother and Ruan Chen have been guarding by the bed. They were very happy to see her open their eyes. Ruan Tang sat up, looked at the three people, and looked at the room again, thinking that he was dreaming. Mom and Dad, brother, how did I get home? Ruan's mother touched her face and helped her sit up. Yes. Before Ruan's mother finished her words, she was interrupted by Ruan Chen. You are like this. If Mom and Dad don't take you home again, won't they watch you tortured to death by Fu Yuchuan with their own eyes? There is a lot of resentment in his words. Ruan's father couldn't help coughing and signaled him with his eyes not to stimulate Ruan Tang anymore. Ruan Tang got used to him and asked, will Fu Yuchuan also agree? Ruan's father smiled lovingly and said, don't worry, this is what he promised in person. You can rest assured to live at home first and don't think about anything. That's great. Ruan Tang was so happy that he almost jumped up. She waved her arms and shouted on the spot, and then hugged her parents. It seems that his fainting scared Fu Yuchuan. He actually agreed to let himself go home to live. It's a very useful method. I'll use it again next time. The three people of the Ruan family looked at Ruan Tang's happy appearance and also cried with joy. Then the three of them talked heartfeltly for a long time until Ruan Tang yawned. The three of them told her to have a good rest and then left the room. Ruan Tang looked at the time. It was already 8 o'clock in the morning. She was very dizzy and still wanted to sleep. Just as she was about to fall asleep again, there was a knock on the door. Who is it? Sister Tung Tung, it's me, Poetry. Come in. Ruan Tang adjusted her sitting posture, leaned against the head of the bed, and watched Qiao Shijing bring in a tray with a glass of milk and a little cut fruit on it. Sister Tung Tung, are you feeling better now? Qiao Shijing walked to the bedside and looked at Ruan Tang with some concern. Ruan Tang said calmly, much better, thank you for your concern. Qiao Shijing put down the things, first said a few polite words, and then said, I'm sorry, I didn't know that such a big thing would happen yesterday, it was all my fault. Wait, what does it have to do with you? Ruan Tang was a little confused. Qiao Shijing raised her head in surprise. Didn't you quarrel because of me that you fainted emotionally? Ruan Tang was stunned. For a moment, she couldn't tell whether Qiao Shijing was sincere or deliberately trying to test herself. She thought for 2 seconds and suddenly looked at Qiao Shijing's neck. There is a blue pendant hanging under the silver chain, which reflects the thin light in the light. If you look closely, it doesn't look like an ordinary pendant, but like a cufflink. Your necklace style is quite special. Ruan Tang said unconsciously. Qiao Shijing's expression stiffened, reached out and picked up the pendant, and asked, is this what you said? Don't you remember? Ruan Tang asked back, should I remember? How strange is Qiao Shijing? Could it be that this necklace was given to her by herself? After Ruan Tang's question, Qiao Shijing suddenly smiled. A relieved expression appeared on her face, and she smiled, I didn't mean that, it's just that you praised this necklace like this before. Ruan Tang's expression is a little unnatural. She didn't tell outsiders about her memory loss, and Qiao Shijing didn't know about it. Oh, Ruan Tang yawned and didn't want to talk to her anymore. Do you still have anything to do? If it's okay, I want to rest. The doctor asked me to rest more. Hearing this, Qiao Shijing stood up and said carefully, drink the milk before going to bed. I warmed up in advance. When she left the room, she also turned off the light thoughtfully. Looking at the closed door, Ruan Tang felt a little strange, but he didn't know what was wrong. Outside the door, Qiao Shijing showed a surprised smile. So did the car accident produce such sequelae? In order to verify her guess, she turned to Ruan Chen again. Ruan Chen was not prepared for this cousin. After all, he grew up together. Under her intentional guidance, he soon said what Qiao Shijing wanted to know most. Tung Tung lost her memory. In a word, he completely forgot Fu Yuchuan and everything about him. Chapter 41 I want to have a good talk with you about this necklace in the lakeside villa. It was the first time for Fu Yuchuan to walk into this house alone. No sound could be heard in the empty villa, only his footsteps. He came to the floor-to-ceiling window, stood near the door frame, and looked up at the sparkling lake. The sound of insects came, and everything was silent. At this time, a huge sense of loneliness suddenly surged into my heart. Just as he was panicking about his sudden mood, there was another sound of cars passing by outside the gate. He turned around almost without thinking and walked towards the position at the gate. When he opened the door, he found that there was no one outside the door. Just now, just a car passed by. However, why did he think that it was Ruan Tang who came back? When he slowly closed the door, a sour feeling that could not be concealed surged in his heart again. He suddenly realized that in the past 2 years after his marriage, Ruan Tang was like him now, living alone in this cold villa. Every time a car passed by, she would be surprised, but when she opened the door and saw no one, her heart would be full of great loss. Repeatedly, it has been an infinite cycle for 2 years. And as a guest, he never realized this. It was not until the role was changed to himself that he realized how lonely it was to wait for a person in an empty house. Ruan Tang, is this the reason why you choose to forget me? At this moment, a ringtone of the mobile phone broke the silence. Mom, what's the matter? Li Chuan, how can you beat Xiao Xiao in front of outsiders today? She came back and cried and still refused to stop. As a mother, I was heartbroken. If you still have your sister in your eyes, call her and apologize to her. Fu's mother said on the other end of the phone. Fu Yuchuan was silent for a few seconds, and his sanity was pulled back. Not only can I not coax her, but I won't apologize. She is 19 years old and should think about problems and deal with things like an adult. What? Fu Yuchuan's cold words made Fu's mother lose her posture. Fu Xiaoxiao has always been the treasure in the palm of the Fu family, and Fu Yuchuan loves her even more, but now Fu Yuchuan treats Fu Xiaoxiao like this for Ruan Tang. Fu's mother frowned and said slowly, Dao, Li Chuan, I don't care what Xiaoxiao does. After all, she is your most beloved sister. Since I was a child, I have taught you brothers and sisters to coexist in harmony. Don't destroy the relationship between your brothers and sisters for an outsider. Outsiders? Fu Yuchuan was a little surprised. He knew that his mother had never been waiting to see Ruan Tang, but he didn't expect that under such a big problem, his mother still chose to favor Fu Xiaoxiao. Mom, Ruan Tang is pregnant now. She is not only my wife, but also the mother of the child. Your daughter-in-law. I don't allow anyone to do anything to hurt her at such a time, and neither can Fu Xiaoxiao. He didn't say exactly what Fu Xiaoxiao did, because he still wanted to maintain the apparent peace and give Fu Xiaoxiao another chance. But he didn't expect that Fu's mother sneered directly. Hurt her? Who on earth is hurting her, and who made her faint today? Is it your sister and me? Killing the heart. Fu Yuchuan was born by Fu's mother, and Fu's mother also knew how to stab him the most painful. Fu Yuchuan was speechless when asked and was silent for a few seconds. Please go to bed early. He hung up the phone. Fu's mother's words hit his head like an alarm bell. He suddenly realized that the person who had been hurting Ruan Tang was not someone else, but himself. Isn't it also in his former attitude that Fu Xiaoxiao can do such a thing? Thinking of this, Fu Yuchuan suddenly felt a splitting headache. He suddenly couldn't figure it out whether he still hated Ruan Tang. Let's say hate, it seems that it is not so hateful. Let's say like it, but it can't be said. Just when he was ambiguous, a text message interrupted his thoughts again. Qiao Shiqing, Brother Li Chuan, are you free tomorrow afternoon? I want to have a good talk with you about this necklace. When he sent Qiao Shiqing back to Qiao's house before, he asked about Qiao Shiqing's necklace, but Qiao Shiqing did not answer him at that time. Why do you suddenly want to answer again? Fu Yuchuan quickly replied, I'll wait for you in the cafe at 2 p.m. tomorrow. No matter what the result is, he has to go there in person to know. The next afternoon, Ruan Tang lay in bed to rest after dinner. Because she couldn't go to school, she could only apply to the counselor to study online classes at home temporarily. The counselor heard that she was not in good health and said a few words of concern and directly agreed. Ruan Tang took a nap for a while and was about to get up for class when Ruan Chen called back. Tang Tang, are you better? It's much better. I plan to take online classes in the afternoon. If I don't take classes, I really have to repeat the grade. Ruan Tang flipped through the book and felt a little upset. With so many books, when will I finish them? Ruan Chen laughed over there. You used to be a top student. I believe you, and you will catch up soon. Then I won't bother you. Ruan Chen is working in the company now. Seeing that the phone was about to be hung up, Ruan Tang asked, is this what you want to say when you called? Ah, I almost forgot. Even if he couldn't see his face, Ruan Tang could imagine that Ruan Chen was patting his forehead. What's the matter? You probably don't remember, do you? Today is my mother's 50th birthday. I will bring cakes and gifts back in the evening. Huh. Until the phone was hung up, Ruan Tang was still a little upset. She really shouldn't have forgotten such an important thing. Looking at her watch, she went to the mall to choose a gift for her mother after 2 online classes. She remembered that her mother liked jewelry such as jade bracelets very much, and there were many different styles of bracelets on the shelf. At 5 p.m., Ruan Tang told Rua's mother that he would go out to watch a movie with his friends and come back after watching it. Rua's mother saw that she made friends again and did not stop her, but repeatedly told her to pay attention to safety. After Ruan Tang agreed, he asked the driver at home to take her directly to the most luxurious shopping mall in the city and went straight to the jewelry and jade store. But when she came to the door of the store and was about to step in, 2 familiar figures attracted all her attention. It's Fu Yuchuan and Xiao Shiqing. The 2 people were standing in front of the jewelry counter and picking up something. The shopping guide introduced it enthusiastically. Xiao Shiqing picked up a necklace and stroked it on her neck. She turned to Fu Yuchuan with a shy smile on her face. Let anyone see, these are all sweet little couples. Ruan Tang almost spit out all the lunch. Her warning didn't work. Fu Yuchuan still hooked up with Xiao Shiqing before the divorce. TSK, TSK, TSK. She shook her head gently and kept making a TSK in her mouth. These 2 really can't wait. But now rushing up to make a fuss can't do anything except to make a fool of it in public. She simply picked up her mobile phone and took a few photos, then turned around and left. But when she turned around, she didn't pay attention to a woman passing by behind her. With the woman's scream, the new jade bracelet in the woman's hand also crackled. Oh my god. Chapter 42 This fool. The female clerk screamed and immediately squatted down to pick it up, but the jade could not withstand the fall at all. After falling like this, it was broken to pieces and could not be glued back with double-sided adhesive. Ruan Tang was stunned when he saw this scene. Oh my god, I didn't look at the yellow calendar when I went out today. It's a fortune. The female clerk found that there was no possibility of remedy and began to squat on the ground and cry. These are all good ice seeds. How can a clerk afford to pay compensation? Seeing her crying, Ruan Tang felt bad. After all, he really didn't pay attention to the people behind her and had to take a large part of the responsibility. She leaned slightly and looked at the female clerk. Beauty, don't cry. I'll pay for how much money? The female clerk raised her head with red eyes and couldn't believe that she would take the initiative to take responsibility. Are you willing to compensate? The price of these jade utensils is not low. Obviously, the female clerk also knows that she has part of the responsibility and does not want Ruan Tang to take full responsibility. Seeing that she was kind-hearted, Ruan Tang couldn't help but think of the nanny who used to take care of her, Sister Zhang. She had the same eyes as this female clerk, which made people unable to be cruel. This is probably the heartache of social animals. Well, I'll compensate, and you just need to make up the change. Ruan Tang made a promise. She is still Mrs. For now, and she can still take out this private money. Okay, wait for me to calculate. The female clerk stood up from the ground and walked into the counter. She took the computer and began to calculate. When she finished counting the numbers, she looked at Ruan Tang with some gravity. A total of 100,700. Ruan Tang hasn't taken out this bag yet, and her flesh has begun to hurt. Oh, Xiao Chen, how can you believe this woman? Do you think she can afford to pay compensation? This is to stabilize you first. As soon as you bow your head, she will spread her legs and run. An older female clerk came over. Obviously, she had just seen everything. The female clerk looked young. After listening to her words, she saw that Ruan Tang had no intention of paying, and she was also a little suspicious and looked at Ruan Tang. Would you like to call your family? Ruan Tang was very angry with the older female clerk. What do you mean that she would spread her legs and run away? Wait, can you still spread your legs and run? What a mistake. Hey, sister, don't look down on people, okay? But Ruan Tang is indeed not that kind of person, and those who make mistakes will naturally bear the burden. The older female clerk looks contemptuous, so you pay, I'll see you pay. Cut. Ruan Tang lowered his head and began to look for it in his bag. But after looking for it, he found that he really didn't have the bank card with the private money when he went out. The two female clerks looked different when they saw this. When Ruan Tang was a little embarrassed, a familiar voice came from beside him. Swipe the card. It's Fu Yuchuan's hand. He took out a black gold card and put it on the counter. Ruan Tang looked back and found that Fu Yuchuan and Qiao Shijing had arrived, and the two of them were still standing beside them, as if they were supporting themselves. The black card with gold-plated words made the older female clerk's eyes shine, and she immediately took the card and went to swipe it. Wait a minute. Ruan Tang slapped his little hand on the table and swiped my card. Store manager and female clerk. Ruan Tang was stunned for a moment and took out his mobile phone. No, I can scan the code to pay, okay? Under the surprised eyes of everyone, the clerk brought a QR code for collection. Ruan Tang scanned the code to pay and completed it in one go. When the mobile phone showed that the deduction was successful, she specially showed the balance to everyone. The balance shows that there are still 1.3 million. Did you see it? Have money? For Yuchuan. Xiao Shijing's eyes turned and asked a question that embarrassed her delicately. Sister Tang, I didn't expect that you saved so much private money behind Brother Li Chua's back. These words directly changed Fu Yuchua's face. Ruan Tang married him for 2 years. In fact, he didn't really give her money. He always bought some gifts to evade her. Even if the Ruan family will give her money regularly, the Ruan family was in such difficulties a few days ago. How could they take out more than 1 million yen for her at once? Where did this money come from? Under Fu Yuchua's gloomy gaze, Ruan Tang seemed to remember something and sneered. She took back her mobile phone and touched her ring finger carelessly. Oh, a few days ago, I found that there are many uses at home. I don't like jewelry and bags. I don't like those things either. They are all sold as second-hand on luxury websites. Don't mention, they are quite valuable. Hearing this, Fu Yuchuan almost had a cerebral hemorrhage. She actually sold the diamond ring she bought for her. It was sold for more than 1 million yen together with other things. A ring alone is worth 5 million. This idiot. Looking at Fu Yuchuan's pale face, Ruan Tang was a little funny. She didn't want to say it. She blamed Qiao Shi for being too talkative. Qiao Shijing didn't expect that she would do this, and she was speechless for a moment. When the scene was quiet, Ruan Tang smiled as if he had just seen the two of them and said, "Hey, are you also coming out to buy gifts? You have to choose a value-preserved one. Second-hand ones are valuable." Her tone seems to be unfamiliar with the two of them. Qiao Shijing looked panicked and hurriedly waved her hand. Sister Tang, don't get me wrong. Yes, it's Brother Li Chuan who bought you a gift and asked me to help you choose it. She pretended to be really good. She was panicked and at a loss, but she showed her lying performance vividly. Everything is played by her as if something happened. Ruan Tang smiled indifferently. Then you are still a good person. Since you like to use my things so much, you can also take the gift for me. Anyway, I will sell it on the second-hand website. After saying that, she lowered her head and glanced at the remains of the bracelet all over the ground with some regret. She turned around and said to the young female clerk, "Help me choose the most expensive one in your store with better-looking packaging, and I'll give it to someone." The female clerk moved very quickly and soon picked up one worth more than 500,000 yuan. Ruan Tang settled the bill without blinking his eyes and was ready to leave with things. From beginning to end, Fu Yuchuan stood still with a gloomy face. Qiao Shijing caught up with her. "Sister Tang Tang, don't go yet. You haven't made it clear yet." Ruan Tang walked to the door and turned around. He no longer had a smile on his face and looked cold. "You two pick slowly. By the way, we will have a family banquet tonight. If you are an outsider, don't come to get in. You can go home later or not." After saying that, she shook her head and left dashingly. Xiao Shijing's face turned green because of her words, but when she turned around, she still pretended to be worried. "Brother Li Chuan, I'm sorry, I didn't expect you to come out to accompany me to choose a necklace, and I would meet Sister Tang Tang. Just now in the cafe, the two of them have made things clear. It was because he made it clear that Fu Yuchuan agreed to accompany her to change a chain for the necklace. I just didn't expect to meet Ruan Tang by such a coincidence. Choose the necklace by yourself. This card is for you. There are 5 million in it. Just take it as a thank you for saving my life in the past. In the future, we will be clear." Fu Yuchuan handed over the black gold card. Chapter 43. His lifesaver turned out to be her. Qiao Shijing's eyes straightened when she heard this. The tears in her eyes quickly accumulated, and she looked at Fu Yuchuan incredulously. "Brother Li Chuan, I admit that I saved you back then, not to ask for your 5 million. Fu Yuchuan has just asked in the coffee shop that the cufflink is indeed his own. 5 years ago, he attended a banquet, but the brakes failed on the sparsely populated section of the road and crashed into the mountain. His thigh was pressed by the seat and he couldn't escape from the back seat. There was thick smoke in the car, which made his consciousness fall into a coma. In a vague way, he felt that a man dragged him out of the back seat with the strength of breastfeeding. Until he lay on the side of the road and breathed fresh air, the car exploded directly. The hot wave hit him, and the huge impact made him unconscious again. When he woke up, he was already lying in the hospital. The person who went to save him said that there was no one else at the scene, only himself. But he found that a cufflink was missing from the sleeve of his clothes, and the broken thread was very neat, as if it had been torn off very hard. He took this as a clue and began to keep looking for that person. But in the past few years, Ruan Tang has suddenly appeared in his life, making his life trajectory a mess. When he was about to give up looking for that person, he learned that the person was abroad. That person is Ruan Tang's cousin, Qiao Shijing. Qiao Shijing didn't come to him over the years, because of his married relationship with Ruan Tang, coupled with her being abroad, there was nothing she could do. Now that he found her, Fu Yuchuan was relieved. He originally thought that he would have a deep affection for her, but he found that he had no unnecessary emotions except gratitude. He just wants to use these 5 million to understand the origin of these years. "Thank you." Seeing that she refused, Fu Yuchuan put the card on the counter directly, and then strode out of the door. Qiao Shijing didn't expect that things would develop to this point at all. She obviously whet Fu Yuchuan's appetite, clearly expressed her vague love for him, and made it clear that she was his lifesaver. Why is he so rational and heartless? Can you buy everything with 5 million? At the entrance of the mall, Ruan Tang got into the car. When he was about to close the door, a big hand suddenly appeared and opened the door again. Ruan Tang looked back in surprise and saw Fu Yuchuan standing outside the door, looking at him with dark eyes. Damn it. Ruan Tang blinked his eyes and stretched out his hand to pull the car door again. This time, Fu Yuchuan did not stop, but quickly disappeared into Ruan Tang's sight. But without waiting for her to breathe a sigh of relief. There was a click from the door on the other side of the car. Ruan Tang also clicked in his heart. This psychopath. She rushed over to block the car door, but Fu Yuchuan had already bent down and sat in, almost sitting on her hand. Ruan Tang hurriedly withdrew his hand and watched the beast sitting next to him, as if nothing had happened. Fu Yuchuan, you got on the wrong bus. Ruan Tang endured his anger. Fu Yuchuan didn't even look back and instructed the driver to drive. In Ruan Tang's shocked eyes, Fu Yuchuan whispered, "Today is your mother's birthday. She is my mother-in-law. It's my mother-in-law's birthday. How can I, as a son-in-law, not attend?" Ruan Tang's scalp exploded. How thick is his skin? The day before yesterday, I fainted and was hospitalized. Today, I took my cousin to buy a necklace sweetly. Now I have to go home with her to celebrate my mother-in-law's birthday. Ruan Tang bit her lower lip. I haven't settled the score with you about that day. You indiscriminately charged me with stealing. I did misunderstand you that day. Fu Yuchuan suddenly interrupted her, which made Ruan Tang speechless. Fu Yuchuan continued, what happened that day was deliberately done by someone. In short, it was to provoke our relationship. Don't take it to heart. When you are recuperate in Rua's family, I will pick you up again. His sudden change stunned Ruan Tang. Fu Yuchuan, did you take the wrong medicine? How can we have any marital relationship? Ruan Tang couldn't help but want to reach out and probe his forehead to see if he was confused. Fu Yuchuan sat down like a mountain, looking at how she was beside her, and thought of the way she had just said to sell rings. He was not only no longer angry, but also felt inexplicably funny. He stopped paying attention to Ruan Tang and turned his head out of the window. If this is Ruan Tang's most real appearance, then he thinks she is quite cute. The car quickly stopped at the gate of Rua's house. Ruan Tang was like sitting on a needle felt all the way. She fantasized that Fu Yuchuan could wake up and immediately got out of the car and left. But when Fu Yuchuan got out of the car and came to help her open the door, she found that she thought too much. Fu Yuchuan really took the wrong medicine. Tang Ruanchen heard the voice and came out to greet his precious sister. As a result, he saw Fu Yuchuan opening the door for Ruan Tang as soon as he came. The two of them stood together, and it was a little like a golden boy and a jade girl. Wait, the sun is coming out to the west. Ruan Chen blinked his eyes to confirm that it was not an illusion. He clenched his fist and rushed towards Fu Yuchuan. Fu Yuchuan, how dare you come to my house? When he was about to raise his fist, Fu Yuchuan said coldly, I came here today to wish my mother-in-law a happy birthday. I won't care about the last time you punched me in the hospital, but if there is another time, I will definitely make you regret it. His tone was cold, and his eyes were like 10,000 years of cold iron. Ruan Chen only felt that his fists were stiff, and he really couldn't fight. Brother, stop it. Ruan Tang hurried up to play the round and pulled Ruan Chen aside. Tang Tang, are you crazy? How did you bring back this plague god? Ruan Chen asked angrily. Ruan Tang squirted, I went to buy a gift for my mother and met him in the mall. He insisted on following me, and I couldn't beat him. Ruan Chen was stunned and understood his sister's difficulties. After all, a man is shameless and invincible. If a man is shameless, then the world is invincible. Forget it, let's go in quickly. If he doesn't feel ashamed, he can follow. Fu Yuchuan watched the brother and sister put their heads together and mutter. He didn't hate it, but laughed. Ruan Chen's personality is somewhat similar to Ruan Tang's. It seems that I didn't notice it at all in the past. The brother and sister walked into the gate hand in hand, completely not paying attention to Fu Yuchuan behind them. Fu Yuchuan was also fearless and followed him into the door. When the parents of the Ruan family saw their precious daughter and son and were about to say hello, they saw the black-faced man behind them. The smiles of the couple were frozen on their faces. Ruan's father coughed, cough cough, Ruan Chen, Tang Tang, come here. A family of four put their heads together and muttered. Fu Yuchuan looked behind him with a smile on his lips. Chapter 44 Birthday Gift. A family of four muttered together for a long time, but did not discuss a reason. Finally, Ruan Tang concluded, Mom and Dad, how about I drive him away? Our family is reunited. What's the matter with an outsider? Especially this outsider has just been arguing with her cousin, which makes her feel very shy when she thinks about it. This proposal was also strongly supported by Ruan Chen. Tang Tang, you can say that your brother can support it by force at any time. Ruan Tang glanced back at him, forget it. If you dare to punch him again, he really has the ability to make you regret it for the rest of your life. In terms of regretful strength, the Ruan family did not dare to question Fu Yuchuan. After everyone agreed, Ruan Tang turned around and approached Fu Yuchuan step by step. As soon as he came to him to talk, Fu Yuchuan took the lead. He was still expressionless, but the light in his eyes was soft. Mother-in-law, I heard from Tang Tang that today is your birthday, so I bought a gift. I hope you don't dislike it. After saying that, Fu Yuchuan took out a red gift box from behind like a trick. Fu Yuchuan, you said you just need to come. What gift do you bring? Rua's mother blurted out almost subconsciously. Rua's family includes Rua's mother. My Chinese-style politeness engraved in my bones, damn it. It doesn't matter. I used to be ignorant and rarely came to visit you and your father-in-law. I will come often in the future. Fu Yuchuan answered naturally. No one noticed that the corners of his mouth slightly raised a trace of cunning. Reach out and don't hit the smiling person, let alone the smiling person with gifts. Rua's mother threw away all the words, and she was embarrassed to let Ruan Tang open her mouth to drive people away, so she had to continue to be polite again. It's good that you have this heart. Fu Yuchuan simply took the gift box around Ruan Tang. When he passed by Ruan Tang, he maliciously rubbed Ruan Tang's shoulder with his shoulder. He walked to Rua's mother and reached out to open the box. Mother-in-law, I took a picture of this pair of emerald green bracelets at an auction abroad. I have wanted to bring it to you for a long time. You should like it. This. Ruan's mother looked down and saw the jade bracelet in the box, and was directly shocked. As a jade bracelet collector, she could see at a glance that this pair of emerald double bracelets was a collection left by the princess of a certain country. At the auction that year, it was photographed by a mysterious auctioneer for a price of up to 10 million. This is too expensive. Rua's mother didn't want to think about it and refused directly. The Ruan family has accepted Fu Yuchue's capital injection and can no longer accept such a big gift. After all, they are short-handed. Mother-in-law, please take it. The gift is not in the price, it's all my intention. Fu Yuchuan stuffed the box into Rua's mother's hand. Rua's mother didn't dare not pick it up. She was afraid of breaking it, so she could only hold the box with both hands. Fu Yuchuan looked at the bracelet worth 10 million yen without blinking his eyes. This is an exhibit that he took abroad in those years. It was originally intended to be donated to the museum, but now it is just a good opportunity. With such a small incident, the way Rua's family looked at Fu Yuchuan changed directly. When they arrived at the table, Rua's mother and Rua's father looked at each other. Their eyes were not very good, and their attitude towards him was also enthusiastic. Ruan Tang also gave away the bracelet he bought, but compared with the one given by Fu Yuchuan, hers was obviously more ordinary. Ruan Tang was very angry. He lowered his head to Fu Yuchue's side and lowered his voice. Don't think that a bracelet can bribe my parents. Take that bracelet away when you leave later. There is no reason to take back what I sent out by Fu Yuchuan. Fu Yuchuan bowed his head to eat. This is his first time to eat at Rua's house, and he feels that Rua's food is quite suitable for him. He ate happily. Ruan Tang and Ruan Chen bit their cheeks and hurt. The brother and sister looked at each other. Ruan Tang thought of another trick and said to Fu Yuchuan, "Are you sure you won't take it back? Then I will sell it on the second-hand website at a low price tomorrow. This thing looks expensive, which will definitely make Fu Yuchuan heartbroken." Hearing this, Fu Yuchua's face changed a little as expected. His eyes shifted to the ring finger of Ruan Tang's left hand on the table, and there was a circle of very shallow ring marks. Once upon a time, a wedding ring was always worn there. Ruan Tang only took it off when he was taking a shower, and he was almost inseparable. But now, if she says she sells it, she will sell it, just like her feelings for him, she will forget it if she says she forgets. Fu Yuchuan suddenly felt a little uncomfortable in his heart and replied in a low voice, "You can dispose of it as you like, whether you want to sell or throw away. Rich people are really unruly." Ruan Tang squinted at him and found that this man was really impenetrable, and it seemed that he had no way to deal with him. She could only cast a helpless look at Ruan Chen. Ruan Chen put away his chopsticks, picked up the wine glass and stood up. "Mom, today is your birthday. Tang Tang and I are here to wish you all the best, everything goes well, and more beautiful. Thank you. Minister." Rua's mother also raised the glass with a smile. At this time, Rua's father and Ruan Tang also raised their glasses. Seeing this scene, Fu Yuchuan naturally took the opportunity to pick up the wine glass. But before his cup was held out, Ruan Chen had already said, "Our family drinks, so outsiders don't get mixed in." Some people seem to be so smart and powerful, but they don't have this vision. He spoke mercilessly and almost called Fu Yuchuan's name. The atmosphere on the dinner table suddenly became deadlocked. Ruan's mother looked at Fu Yuchuan worriedly. She always felt that he had to lift the table in the next second and shout not to eat. Just as Ruan's mother was about to stop Ruan Chen, Fu Yuchuan calmly put the cup back. He sat on the table without saying a word and stuffed another piece of meat into his mouth, chewed and swallowed slowly. This calm and leisurely posture made Ruan Chen feel like a punch on the cotton, which was very weak. After drinking, Ruan Chen deliberately asked Fu Yuchuan to take the initiative to leave the table in order to provoke him, and said a few more words to him, but Fu Yuchuan always looked like his left ear went in and right ear out. In the end, Ruan Tang was a little tired of listening and signaled Ruan Chen to rest for a while. Ruan Chen himself said that he was tired. He angrily took up the drink and drank it all. After dinner, the servant brought up a big cake, and everyone sang a birthday song to Rua's mother together. When Rua's mother cut the cake, she specially cut a piece for Fu Yuchuan. "Li Chuan, thank you for coming to celebrate my birthday today. Mother-in-law, this is all what I should do. Maybe I did something like a bastard before, and please don't take it to heart." Fu Yuchuan took the cake and said this solemnly. Ruan's family was dumbfounded. What happened to Fu Yuchuan today? Did you really take the wrong medicine? After the dinner, it was time for Fu Yuchuan to leave. Ruan Tang blocked the crowd and personally sent Fu Yuchuan to the door of the house. She pondered for a long time and asked, "Fu Yuchuan, you are doing this today because I caught you and Qiao Shiqing today, right?" Chapter 45. Should college students get married and have children? Ruan Tang thought about it for a long time, but he could only think of such a reason. In the night, Fu Yuchuan was tall and straight. His facial features were three-dimensional, and his dark eyes reflected the yellow warm lamp at the door. He was less cold and proud, and more warm. He stared at Ruan Tang, not angry or sarcastic, but instead asked a question. "Ruan Tang, what kind of person am I in your impression?" This sentence stunned Ruan Tang for a few seconds. She thought for a while and didn't want to beat around the bush. She said bluntly, "You also know that I have completely forgotten you. I think you are a cold-blooded, ruthless, poisonous and thick-skinned man just because of my relationship with you. Fu Yuchuan found that he had no advantage in her eyes. Then he really couldn't imagine how Ruan Tang would fall in love with him so righteously. But it's useless to think about this now. After all, she has lost her memory, and she doesn't know it herself. Even if I'm nothing in your mouth, you have also inquired about our past with the people around you, right? Except for cold-blooded and poisonous-mouthed. I have never done anything wrong to you. I'm sorry for your marriage, right? Ruan Tang left the villa for only 2 days, and Fu Yuchuan had no other thoughts about her. He just figured out one thing: whether before or after the child is born, he should get along well with Ruan Tang. Even if the two of them parted ways in the future, he didn't want to be in the child's impression that the parents were at head-to-head and cons, which would be very bad for the child's growth. He came to a conclusion from his own practical experience. After he finished his speech, Ruan Tang was silent for a few more seconds. She carefully searched the keywords from what Ruan Chen told her. She had indeed never heard of the keywords such as cheating and third party. In a word, Fu Yuchuan has done nothing else except not to treat her as his wife. What on earth do you want to say? Ruan Tang was a little confused. Fu Yuchuan looked at her face. In the dim light, her face was still bright. In a pair of clear eyes, without those unreasonable love entanglements, she became transparent and open-minded. Fu Yuchuan whispered, I want to say that my cousin and I are by no means the kind of relationship you imagine. I will never do anything wrong to you during marriage. I can add that your cousin is not my type of girl. There was something in his words, and he almost said that he didn't like Qiao Shiqin. Ruan Tang was stunned for a long time. Fu Yuchuan in front of him looked sincere, not like he was joking. So you and her today. There are some things that I can't explain to you, but you just need to remember what I said. Fu Yuchuan didn't explain too much. It's getting late. You go back and rest early. Good night. After saying that, Fu Yuchuan turned around and left. After the car drove away, Ruan Tang was still staring at the taillights of the car in a daze. What's the matter with this man? But as soon as Ruan Tang turned around, she left behind what Fu Yuchuan had just said. Whether he was real or not, it had nothing to do with her. Before going to bed, Ruan Tang took a shower and lay down in the quilt. Just as she was about to close her eyes, the door was knocked. Who is it? Sister Tung Tung, it's me. The delicate voice outside the door made Ruan Tang disgusted. She lay on the bed and didn't move. What's the matter? If it's not important, just say it tomorrow. I'm going to bed. I have a few words to say to you. Zhou Shiqing's voice sounded like a crying voice. Ruan Tang was even more annoyed when he heard it. He said directly, Qiao Shiqing, I'll just make it clear to you today. The matter between you and Fu Yuchuan has nothing to do with me. Our relationship has been average since we were young, and you don't have to deliberately get close to me. Qiao Shiqing originally wanted to make Ruan Tang angry with today's incident, but she didn't expect that she would say that. Let's go. Don't bother me. Ruan Tang turned off the light with a snap. By the way, don't come to the main building if you have nothing to do in the future. You are not welcome here. Looking at the wisp of light through the crack of the door going out, Qiao Shiqing didn't cry at all, but showed a strong hatred on her face. Ruan Tang, you really show your true face. You have looked down on me since I was a child. But don't worry, there will be a day when you cry and beg me to see you. Qiao Shiqing turned around and strode away. Ruan Tang's life seems to be back on track. Because the pregnancy is still early, she doesn't feel much except for a little pregnancy vomiting in the morning. With the care of her parents and brother, her health is getting better day by day, and her academic progress is also very significant. Half a month later, Ruan Tang took the initiative to ask the counselor to return to school. The counselor not only agreed, but also said that the school had recently organized a debate competition and hoped that Ruan Tang could participate. Ruan Tang was a little flattered. Teacher, do you think I can? The counselor said solemnly, Ruan Tang, in fact, the teacher liked you very much when you were a first day. You were diligent and positive, and you would take the initiative to participate in any activity. But later, forget it, I didn't mention the past. Now, you can cheer up again. The teacher is still very optimistic about you. You can participate in more school activities, not only to expand your knowledge, you can also enrich your resume after graduation. Hearing this, Ruan Tang immediately understood. In the years of loving Fu Yuchuan, she missed a lot. Now, she will never miss anything again. Okay, thank you, teacher. I'll send you the information of the debate competition. Come to school tomorrow to get to know and discuss with a few classmates. After the phone was hung up, Ruan Tang also received the information of the debate competition. This debate is a debate with the debate team of the university next door. The theme is should college students get married and have children. When he saw this theme, Ruan Tang was a little petrified. Isn't this a theme specially tailored for her? The next day, Ruan Tang came to school and met the team members of the debate competition. In addition to her, there were 3 people, 2 of whom were named Chang Yu and Liu Ting, and the other was Qiao Lili, who had a break with her. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes are very red, and when they see Ruan Tang at first sight, Qiao Lili sneered, Ruan Tang, you actually came to participate in our debate. Do you know what the argument is? After saying that, she also took a double look at Ruan Tang's stomach. Cheng Yu and Liu Ting had heard of the holiday between the two, but they didn't know that Ruan Tang was pregnant, and their expressions were a little awkward at the moment. Ruan Tang smiled, why can't I come to participate? Which onion are you? Zhou Lili's face changed. What's wrong? Do you want to use your personal experience to support college students to get married and have children? But your marriage? Everyone should have heard of it, right? Dragging down the team is a small thing, but it becomes a joke for the whole school. Is this what you want? Chapter 46 I will definitely let Qiao Lili, the bitch, appear on the stage on time. Qiao Lili's words seem to be more for Ruan Tang, but she understands that she wants to drive Ruan Tang away before she starts. Ruan Tang smiled faintly and said the most reasonable words of life. Will I be a joke? It's none of your business. Ask the canal to be clear as promised. You should take care of yourself first. You. Ruan Tang, don't go too much. Qiao Lili's face turned red with anger. She wanted to scold her back, but was interrupted by Ruan Tang's words. If some people don't want to be a joke, they can prepare for the debate at ease. Last time, she recorded the recording of Zhou Lili's unmarried pregnancy and abortion. If it is spread out, I'm afraid Zhou Lili will have to live on another planet directly. Qiao Lili also suddenly remembered this point. Her face changed on the spot, and she was not willing to be looked at by Ruan Tang here. She shook her hand and said, I still have a very important course today. The three of you prepare the materials by yourself. Send me the materials after sorting them out. I will participate in the debate on time. After saying that, she left angrily. When Liu Ting, a team member, saw this scene, she frowned dissatisfiedly. How can this Zhou Lili be such a person? Why does such a person enter the debate team? Cheng Yu said meaningfully, such a person is naturally someone we can't afford to offend. Don't forget that she was personally stuffed in by Professor Xiao. Although Professor Zhou has retired, he is Zhou Lili's cousin. It's not a problem to put her into a debate team. Ruan Tang took a look at the information of the debate and said, leave her alone. You don't know her. She is just a troublemaker. Where she is, she can't keep things going well. Now that she is gone, we can discuss the debate competition at ease. At that time, we will arrange for her to make an opening argument and read it according to the materials. After listening to Ruan Tang's words, Cheng Yu and Liu Ting looked at each other. I know that Ruan Tang used to be very powerful, but that was before she got married. Originally, the two of Themim also worried that she, like Zhou Lili, is a drag oil bottle. Now her eyes are firm, and she has begun to analyze the data skillfully, and immediately removes the big stone in her heart. After the three of them were familiar with the information for a while, Cheng Yu raised a very critical question. In this debate, we chose the opposite side, that is, Ruan Tang, who opposes college students getting married early and have children. Can you? Although Qiao Lili's words are unpleasant, what she said is not unreasonable. Ruan Tang is still pregnant with a child. If she comes to fight the opposite side, she is afraid that she will be attacked by the positive side. Losing the game is small, but the big blow she suffers. Facing the concerned eyes of Cheng Yu and Liu Ting, Ruan Tang smiled. What are you looking at me for? As long as you two listen to me, we will win this game. Don't worry, I have a killer. What kind of killer? Cheng Yu and Liu Ting asked questions at the same time. Ruan Tang pretended to blink his eyes mysteriously and kept it a secret first, otherwise how could it be called a killer? Because the debate will be held tomorrow afternoon and the time is very tight, Ruan Tang deliberately asked several teachers for leave and devoted himself to the preparation of the debate. Time flies, and soon it comes to the afternoon of the next day. The venue of the debate is set in the auditorium of the school. Ruan Tang and other three people waited in the lounge for more than an hour, but they didn't see Qiao Lili. Liu Ting's face changed. The phone can't be connected. Won't this Zhou Li deliberately let us lose without fighting? In a team of 4, one less person will be disqualified on the spot. In particular, the other party is still the debate competition of the university next door. Ruan Tang and others, as representatives of the school, naturally don't want to be humiliated. Don't worry, I'll call to ask about the situation. Ruan Tang made several calls to Qiao Lili in a row. Qiao Lili's phone was clearly connected, but no one answered. Seeing the passing of time, the referees came in and asked Ruan Tang and others to prepare for the game. This Zhou Lili. It's so disgusting. Liu Ting was so anxious that she almost cried on the spot. At the critical moment, Ruan Tang raised his feet and walked out. I'm going to the broadcasting studio, and you are here waiting for her to come over. She won't answer your phone, and she won't come if you shout on the radio. Liu Ting felt that the general trend had passed, and she began to give up in her heart. At this time, Ruan Tang looked at her firmly. Liu Ting, believe me, I, Ruan Tang, swear here that I will definitely let Qiao Lili, a bitch, appear on the stage on time, and I will not be surnamed Ruan in a second. After saying that, Ruan Tang strode away. Liu Ting and Chang Yu both looked at her back incredulously, not knowing why she was so confident. Just as she was rushing to the broadcasting studio, several school leaders were passing by with a tall man. The man's face is handsome and his temperament is cold. Standing in the crowd is like a crane standing in a flock of chickens. His eyes swept across the teaching building and finally nailed to a figure who left in a hurry. The man next to him also saw the figure and came to him and whispered, "Mr. Fu, do you want me to follow him to have a look? The debate is about to begin. My wife is in such a hurry that she must have something to do." Fu Yuchuan frowned, as if he was thinking. The reason why he appeared here was that Fu Xiaoxiao said that he would come to Ruantang's school to participate in the debate today. He originally wanted to refuse, but as soon as he heard that Fu Xiaoxiao was fighting against Ruantang, he agreed. Because he has never seen Ruantang's spirited appearance, and he can't imagine her being so soft and weak, standing on the stage and fighting with Confucianism. "You accompany the school leaders to the auditorium first, and I'll go and have a look in person." After saying that, Fu Yuchuan strode in the direction of Ruantang's departure without waiting for everyone's reaction. "Thank you." At this time, Ruantang had already entered the broadcasting room. After talking to the senior about the honor of the school in the debate, the senior immediately let her sit in front of the microphone. Before the microphone was turned on, Ruantang took out the previously recorded recording with Xiao Lili. "Hello, Xiao Lili. I'm Ruantang." Ruantang said to the radio with a gentle voice. There was even a faint smile on the corner of her mouth. "I know you are in school. Please listen carefully to the next broadcast, because it is about your whole future life." After saying this, Ruantang pressed the play button on his mobile phone. After a burst of noise, there was a seemingly greeting conversation. It was Xiao Lili's polite words that tricked Ruantang into going to the stairway when she met her in the obstetrics and gynecology department. "Ruantang, I have a chance to tell you." At this time, Xiao Lili's eyes widened on the top floor of the teaching building. She couldn't believe that Ruantang actually recorded that dialogue without lying to her. And now Ruantang also has to disclose this dialogue to the whole school, revealing that she got pregnant before marriage and had an abortion. No, chapter 47, a shocking scene. Just as Xiao Lili ran downstairs like crazy, the content in the radio had been broadcast to the moment when she begged Ruantang for mercy with a snot and tears. "Ruantang, I was wrong, sorry. If you forgive me once, I won't bother you again in the future. Just look at me." The whole school showed great interest when they heard this. After all, who doesn't like gossip? Especially on the radio, the woman is begging for mercy with tears in her eyes. Just as everyone raised their ears, the sound in the broadcast suddenly stopped at this most critical moment. "Cut, what are you doing?" "Yes, I haven't finished yet." In the broadcast room, Zhou Lili was sweating profusely, and her hand was still pressing the power-off button of the broadcast. Ruantang stood aside calmly and smiled. "It's good that you are here, otherwise I really don't know where to find you." It's true. She just gambled whether Zhou Lili wanted to stay in this school. Seeing her like this, Xiao Lili was even more angry. She let go of the shutdown button and roared, "Ruantang, are you crazy? Do you think if you kill me, I will make you feel better?" In the face of her aggressive posture, Ruantang did not retreat. "Did I harm you? Obviously, the debate is about to start. You hide in the school and refuse to come out, wanting to make us lose the game. Since you don't want to make me feel better, can I make you feel better?" Xiao Lili was speechless when she was told. After a few seconds of silence, she looked at Ruantang with red eyes. "Give me your mobile phone." She must delete the recording. Ruantang took a step back and gave it to you. "You can finish the debate with me first, and I will give it to you after that." "You give it to me first." Xiao Lili is about to lose her mind. She only has one idea now. This kind of thing must not happen again. As long as Ruantang keeps this recording for a day, it will be a great threat to her. Xiao Lili walked towards Ruantang while talking. At this time, only Ruantang and Xiao Lili were left in the broadcasting room. Seeing her approaching with red eyes, Ruantang looked at the baseball bat in the corner. As long as she dares to do it, Ruantang has no intention of making reservations. "I won't give it to you. You finish the debate with me first, and I will delete the recording in front of you." This is Ruantang's last warning. "Do you think I will believe you?" Xiao Lili's eyes widened and suddenly raised her hands and rushed towards Ruantang. She grabbed Ruantang's shoulder and reached out to grab Ruantang's mobile phone. Ruantang raised his mobile phone and didn't let her touch it. The scene fell into anxiety. Xiao Lili saw that she couldn't grab it, and her eyes directly showed murderous intent. She let go of her hand and sneered. "Ruantang, this is what you forced me to do. What are you going to do?" Ruantang frowned and felt a little bad. She wants to rush over to get a baseball bat now, but it seems a little too late. Just as Ruantang was thinking about how to get rid of her, Xiao Lili took 2 steps back, bent down and made a sprinting posture, and hit her head directly into Ruantang's stomach. When Ruantang saw this scene, his heart was half cold. This woman is so cruel. She instinctively covered her stomach and dodged to the side. The door was suddenly pulled open, and a tall figure rushed in. When Ruantang staggered and was about to fall, he hugged her in his arms. Ruantang was stunned and looked up. As soon as he saw Fu Yuchuan's face clearly, Xiao Lili's scream came from behind him. Fu Yuchuan hugged Ruantang with one hand, held Xiao Lili's neck with the other hand, and threw her out fiercely. Zhou Lili fell in front of the table, and the back of her head hit the corner of the table fiercely, bleeding on the spot. She touched it with her hand, and the blood on her hands made her scream. Fu Yuchuan still protected Ruantang tightly and roared, "Shut up." Xiao Lili just looked at Fu Yuchuan as if she had just woken up from a big dream. She didn't care about the identity of the other party. She pointed at him and said, Are you going to kill me?" Fu Yuchuan's anger exploded in an instant, and his handsome face suddenly sank. Even Ruantang felt a terrible momentum in his arms, which made people's spines chill. Fu Yuchuan's voice line bottom line, but there was a sound on the ground. "Zhou Lili, right? I'll give you two now. Choice, first, simply bandage the wound and immediately go to the debate with Ruantang. I will not hold you accountable afterwards. Second, you shout or call the police now, and then see the whole Qiao family with your own eyes because you can't gain a foothold in Beijing at all." His words directly stunned Xiao Lili. After reacting for several seconds, Xiao Lili still wanted to say something, and Fu Yuchuan added another sentence. "It takes 3 seconds to think about it. It's just a debate. Ruantang can lose, but if Yu Qiao's family goes bankrupt and get out of Beijing, I will definitely do what I say." Ruantang was shocked. This man is really cruel, which is terrible. 5 minutes later, Ruantang walked to the debate seat in the auditorium with his head held high and sat down in front of everyone. And the girl who followed her looked embarrassed, with white gauze wrapped around her head, and her face was pale. When everyone began to whisper, only Chen Yu and Liu Ting looked at Ruantang with shocked eyes. She really did it. Bring Zhou Lili every minute. At this time, Fu Yuchuan was also sitting in the middle of the first row of school leaders. He is outstanding in appearance. As long as you look under the stage, you will be attracted by his face. Ruantang tried not to let herself look over there, but she could still feel that Fu Yuchuan's eyes stopped on her, like a shadow. "Ruantang, I'm really looking forward to your next wonderful performance." A girl in the square seat said this sentence in a voice that only people on the stage could hear. Ruantang looked at the other party and found that it was actually Fu Xiaoxiao. But Ruantang's mentality, who has just experienced a shocking scene, has undergone a great change. She took such a big risk to pull up Xiao Lili. No matter who the other party is, she has to win. With the referee's order, the debate officially began. At the beginning, the two sides had back and forth. The debate is comparable, but with the passage of time, Fu Xiaoxiao's 3 arguments were caught by Ruantang's logical loopholes and defeated in one fell swoop. Next, the other party was completely confused, and the rhythm of the whole debate was almost as expected by Ruantang, and it was proceeding methodically. As long as the free debate is over, and the 4 arguments summarize the statement, Ruantang basically declares victory. Ruantang's calm and generous posture on the stage also caused quite a sensation. Fu Yuchuan sat under the stage and stared straight at her. There was a trace of praise in his eyes. It turned out that Ruantang, who abandoned her love, also had her glowing side, which was unexpected. But in the last part of the free debate competition, Fu Xiaoxiao stood up and asked a fatal question, which suddenly turned the form of the court to a sharp turn. The question she asked was, "Ruantang, a free debate student, you are talking about opposing college students getting married and having children, listing many inappropriate ones, but you personally married my brother Fu Yuchuan when you were a freshman, and you are pregnant and preparing to give birth to a child this year. How can your personal behavior go against your debate position? Isn't this a cover-up?" Chapter 48. Do you dare to touch her hair today? Fu Xiaoxiao's problem seems light, but it is almost fatal. As soon as this was said, the whole seat was in an uproar. Even the 3 teammates on Ruantang's side looked at Ruantang helplessly and didn't know how to answer this question. In an instant, everyone's eyes were focused on Ruantang, including Fu Yuchuan under the stage. He is looking forward to what kind of explanation Ruantang will give. Xiao Lili on the stage has muttered in a low voice, "Look, I said that I would be caught on this topic. What if I come? It's not because you're going to lose the game. It's better to give up. You can also save some face for yourself." "Zhou Lili, shut up." Cheng Yu, who had never opened his mouth for a long time, directly scolded. Fu Xiaoxiao looked at Ruantang with optimistic eyes. "Ruantang, please answer my question. If you can't answer it, the debate can end here, and the arguments can be omitted." In the face of Fu Xiaoxiao's questioning, Ruantang's face was not very good, even a little pale. Fu Yuchuan, who was under the stage, frowned gently when he saw this scene. He suddenly didn't want to listen to Ruantang's answer. He wants to go on stage and take her away. Just as he moved slightly and was about to get up, Ruantang suddenly stood up. She picked up the microphone and said slowly in a gentle and firm voice, "This question raised by Fu Xiaoxiao is very good. As a person who got married and got pregnant during college does not deserve to stand on the opposite side and oppose other classmates' marriage and pregnancy, but I still stood up. Because I want to use my personal experience to advise everyone not to take this path again. The student era should be the most innocent and enterprising period. Marriage means a land of chicken feathers and triviality, which is enough to destroy any naive person. I just want to tell you one thing. I regret it. If there is a regret medicine in the world, I will definitely buy one with all my money, but it's a pity that there is none in the world. After she finished speaking, she put the microphone on the table. Full of dead silence. No one expected that she would dare to say in front of Fu Yuchuan that she regretted the marriage. In an instant, everyone's eyes were on Fu Yuchuan, the man in the center of the storm. Everyone is waiting for him to get angry, or stand up and scold Ruan Tang. Ruan Tang has also made this preparation. But Fu Yuchuan did nothing. He just sat there, and his deep eyes projected on Ruan Tang's face, as if he wanted to see through her soul. The scene was silent for about a minute. Fu Xiaoxiao could no longer raise any questions. The referee directly announced the victory of Ruan Tang's side. But Ruan Tang's teammates are all dead. They looked at Ruan Tang with some worry. Aren't you afraid that Fu Yuchuan will trouble you? Ruan Tang smiled generously. Why am I afraid of him? I dare to say it. We won today. I will invite everyone to have a night snack to celebrate in the evening. After saying that, Ruan Tang didn't look at anyone's face and strode off the rhodium. Chen Yu and Liu Ting followed her footsteps. Unexpectedly, Qiao Lili also followed. In the lounge, Ruan Tang packed her bag. Qiao Lili stretched out her hand. Give me the mobile phone. You promised me that you would delete the recording. Ruan Tang didn't have the heart to talk to her and deleted the recording directly in front of her. I did what I said. Zhou Lili looked at her face, and her expression suddenly became a little complicated. She asked, Ruan Tang, didn't you like Fu Yuchuan so much before? Why did it suddenly change so much? Her concern made Ruan Tang laugh. You don't think you are my friend after winning the game, do you? Why should I tell you about my private affairs? Xiao Lili was stunned, but remembering the way Fu Yuchuan had just defended Ruan Tang, she did not dare to get in the matter of the two, and strode away with her bag. Let's go to dinner. Ruan Tang greeted the remaining Chen Yu and Liu Ting, and the three of them left the auditorium together. Before leaving, Ruan Tang looked at the door of the auditorium and didn't see Fu Yuchuan coming out, but she didn't completely take this matter to heart. The three of them came to school together. In a high-end restaurant near the school, Ruan Tang ordered a table of dishes and asked the two of them to eat hard. Don't be polite. But before Ruan Tang began to move her chopsticks, a familiar nausea surged up, and she immediately stood up. You eat first. I'll go to the bathroom. She guessed that she was a little emotional just now, which caused pregnancy vomiting. On her way to the bathroom, Fu Xiaoxiao stopped her from behind. Ruan Tang, please stop for me. Ruan Tang stood still and paused for a moment and did not look back. She is in a hurry to vomit. But her accelerated steps were regarded as provocative by Fu Xiaoxiao. Fu Xiaoxiao turned black on the spot, strode to catch up with her, pulled her arm, and forced her to stop. Can't you hear me talking to you? Before she spoke, a crisp slap had interrupted her. Fu Xiaoxiao covered his fanned face and looked at Ruan Tang in shock. How dare you hit me? Ruan Tang's eyes flashed a cold light, and his pale little face was clear. It's you who hit me. Who let you touch me? Fu Xiaoxiao didn't expect that Ruan Tang was getting more and more exaggerated now. Last time he splashed a pot of tea on her at Fu's house, he still dares to slap her directly. Ruan Tang. Don't think that I'm really afraid of you when you're pregnant now. Let me tell you, you said that on the stage today, so that my brother can't come down from the stage. Even if he doesn't teach you a lesson, I will teach you a lesson for him. After saying that, Fu Xiaoxiao raised her hand high. Ruan Tang frowned and grabbed her wrist with his backhand. Fu Xiaoxiao seemed to expect that she would fight back and immediately raised her other hand. When she was about to fall, a strong sense of oppression behind her came to her back. The palm that was about to fall on Ruan Tang's face was also firmly held. Fu Yuchua's voice was deep and angry. Fu Xiaoxiao, do you think I really can't do anything about you? What did I tell you last time? Ruan Tang saw that Fu Yuchuan himself was coming, and shook off Fu Xiaoxiao's hand with some disgust. All right, you brothers and sisters can go together. She looked fearless. Fu Yuchuan looked up and glanced at her. His eyes were gloomy and he didn't say anything. Fu Xiaoxiao was angry and said, Brother, she did it to me first, and she just hit you in the face in public on the stage. Is it wrong for me to teach her a lesson? The scene was silent for a moment, and Fu Yuchuan's eyes were like a knife. It's wrong. She's my wife. Do you dare to touch her hair today? Chapter 49. Can you move back? Brother. Fu Xiaoxiao was so shocked that her eyes suddenly turned red. She stepped back 2 steps and looked at Fu Yuchuan incredibly. You are not my brother. My brother won't do this to me. You have completely changed like a person. Did this woman slaughter you? Or did I pour some ecstasy soup for you? You weren't like this before. She complained with tears in her eyes, and she looked pitiful. But Fu Yuchuan was expressionless and said coldly, Go downstairs immediately and ask the driver to take you back. Don't embarrass anyone here again. Fu Xiaoxiao wiped her tears and smiled in anger. Well, very good. I don't care if you are killed by this woman in the future. After saying that, she left with tears in her eyes. When Ruantang saw this scene, he actually felt a little sympathy for Fu Xiaoxiao. After all, if she were Fu Xiaoxiao, she would definitely feel that her brother was nervous. Only two people stood opposite each other in the corridor. Although Ruantang was much thinner, his aura was not inferior at all. She looked up at Fu Yuchuan. You can scold if you want. Aren't you going to the bathroom? Go ahead. Fu Yuchuan interrupted her words, and her eyes were so dark that people couldn't see what he was thinking. Ruantang was stunned for 2 seconds, and the surging nausea surged up again. She couldn't care about Fu Yuchuan and strode into the bathroom. When she came out of the bathroom after vomiting, the tall man had indeed left. It's okay to leave. She can't even eat this meal. She strode towards the private room, but the moment she pushed open the door of the private room, her whole body froze in place. Who can tell her why the man who should have left sat proudly at the table? Moreover, the moment Fu Yuchuan saw her open the door, he actually pulled back the stool beside her and motioned her to sit down. Ruantang is stupid. At this time, Chang Yu and Liu Ting also waved to her, signaling her to enter the door quickly and sit down. Looking at the harmonious and strange scene in front of him, Ruantang felt that the contradiction in his heart reached its peak. She walked slowly to Fu Yuchuan's side and sat beside him in the latter's gaze. Fu Yuchuan, what tricks do you want to play? Ruantang's voice was cold, like a defensive posture. Fu Yuchuan laughed dumbly. It seems that he used to ask her this sentence, but now the role is reversed. I'm here to congratulate you on winning today's debate with your classmates. After saying that, Fu Yuchuan poured 2 cups of boiled water and handed 1 cup to Ruantang. Ruantang is like seeing a ghost. You won't poison it, will you? It's hard not to think so. Fu Yuchuan was silent for a few seconds, picked up the water cup and took a sip. I won't do such a boring thing. Chen Yu and Liu Ting were still talking to Fu Yuchuan, saying that Mr. Fu just wanted to come to celebrate together. Ruantang couldn't help it anymore. He suddenly got up, grabbed Fu Yuchuan's wrist, and strode out. When she walked out of the door, she found that she was holding Fu Yuchuan's hand, and Fu Yuchuan did not struggle and let her hold it. Where the palm touches, the warm touch swims along the blood of the whole body. Ruantang blushed and suddenly shook off his hand. Fu Yuchuan looked down at Ruantang, who had crimson cheeks in front of him, and a wonderful feeling rose in his heart. Frankly speaking, when he heard her say that on the stage today, he was very angry. After all, in this marriage, he hasn't said he regrets. Why did she say so? But later, when he saw Ruantang's smile after winning, he suddenly stopped being angry. He rarely seemed to see Ruantang's smile, which was full of enthusiasm and ambition. Not only did he not hate it, but he even wanted to see her smile more times. Fu Yuchuan, don't betray. You treated your sister like that today and came to celebrate me again. What kind of intention do you have? The two haven't seen each other for half a month. When Ruantang raised his head, he found that Fu Yuchuan's eyes seemed to have changed. It just becomes no longer so cold. His eyes hidden under his thick eyelashes are deep, like a whole river of stars. Ruantang, I don't want to do anything to you. You are the mother of the child and my wife. I just want to get along with you. Fu Yuchuan's words shocked Ruantang. Is this what Fu Yuchuan can say? Is it true or not? Really? Fu Yuchuan's eyes were extremely sincere. He stared at Ruantang's face and did not let go of every tiny facial expression. As long as you don't ask me to love you anymore, we can coexist peacefully. This is his only request. How innocent Ruantang is. When did she well, but that's all in the past. She looked at Fu Yuchuan seriously again. Well, don't love me, and I don't love you either. Let's live together peacefully, have children, and each take what we need, okay? Fu Yuchuan nodded and stretched out his hand to shake hands with her. Deal. His beautiful and slender hands hung in the air. Ruantang hesitated for 2 seconds and held his hand. Deal. After saying that, he shook it twice childishly. Then she let go of her hand, and her eyes were no longer hostile to Fu Yuchuan. Well, you don't have to act in front of my classmates. We don't know each other. Why do you have to show your love? Go back quickly. Ruantang blinked playfully and walked around him to leave. As soon as I walked to the door of the private room, Fu Yuchuan's voice came from behind me. Ruantang. His fingertips rubbed twice, and it seemed that there was still the residual warmth of Ruantang's fingers. Ruantang looked back. What's the matter? Her face is innocent and fearless, like an elf. Fu Yuchuan took 2 steps forward and came to her. He lowered his eyes slightly and looked down at her condescendingly. Now that we have reached an agreement on peaceful coexistence, should you move back from the Ruan family? As for what happened on the day you fainted, I will also give you an explanation. 3 question marks appeared on Ruantang's head. We have reached an agreement. Do I have to move back? She really can't find the causal relationship between the two. Fu Yuchuan was silent. Ruan Tang said, give me a reason to move. Fu Yuchua's face showed a thoughtful look. Unexpectedly, he was really thinking about the reason very seriously. A few seconds later, he whispered, because Sister Zhang misses you very much, and the flowers and plants at home also miss you very much. Ruan Tang wanted to break his brain to see what kind of broken reason it was. It was probably Ruan Tang's expression that made Fu Yuchuan himself realize his absurdity. He soon gave a relatively justifiable reason. Your brother doesn't like me. Once you or the child has a problem, I can't arrive at the first time, and the lakeside villa is clean, which is more suitable for raising a baby. The corridor was very quiet, only the noise of the private room next door kept coming. Ruan Tang was silent for a while before nodding. That's okay. She, a married young woman who has a child, lives in her mother's house to raise her baby. It has always been inconvenient, so it is better to move back to the villa. Chapter 50. When he kissed and heard the words, Fu Yuchuan was slightly stunned. Ruan Tang's promise was indeed a little faster than he thought, and he actually had some subtle joy in his heart. It was a very secret mood, and the corners of his mouth were still tight. Then I'll take you back to pack up after you finish eating. Fu Yuchuan, a man, speaks and does things like a storm, concise and concise. Ruan Tang is similar to what he thinks on this point. Since he wants to move, he doesn't have to choose the date to move. Okay. After she entered the door and greeted Chen Yu and Liu Ting, she followed Fu Yuchuan out of the door, and the two walked downstairs. On the way, the atmosphere between the two was also a little too harmonious. Ruan Tang even asked him, why did you and your sister come here for dinner? It's a bit of a coincidence that there are so many restaurants. The corners of Fu Yuchua's lips were slightly squeezed, and his pupils flashed. He asked his assistant Pan Chen to follow Ruan Tang. Knowing that she was here, he followed her. But he didn't mean anything else. He was just worried about her safety. So he didn't intend to say it so directly. It's just a coincidence. He whispered his mouth. When entering the elevator door, he stretched out a gentleman's hand to block the door. He didn't enter until Ruan Tang entered. It was not in a spacious carriage, because his step seemed a little cramped. He stood in front, but Ruan Tang felt that his eyes had been on his body through the mirror in front of him. The atmosphere suddenly became ambiguous, and his eyes were also straight. Ruan Tang didn't dare to look at him in the mirror. He always felt embarrassed and turned his face and pretended to look at the advertisement on the wall. Her long black hair hung in front of her, and her side face was as white as jade. I didn't know what she was thinking, and the tips of her ears were slightly red. Like the red at the tip of the flower bone that is about to mature, it is astringent and pure. Fu Yuchuan stared at her for a long time, and the throat knot slid up and down. He suddenly remembered the day he was forced to marry. He was drunk on the first night and entered the room in advance. When he woke up, he found that Ruan Tang was lying beside him. At that time, he didn't have time to speak up. He saw that she was the same. She was white and tender like a flower bone, and the tip was a little red, which was fantasy. Frankly speaking, he knew that Ruan Tang liked him before, but he had never hated her. It's just that the forced marriage was too unreasonable and beyond his control of the matter, which made him look like a stranger to her 2 years after marriage. During the days when Ruan Tang left, he lived alone in the lakeside villa, and even kept thinking that if Ruan Tang had confessed to him blatantly without such tricks, would he have accepted her? The answer is unknown. Now, she doesn't remember why Ruan Tang did that at the beginning. Just as Fu Yuchuan was meditating, the elevator stopped on the negative second floor. Ruan Tang went out in advance the moment the door opened. She stood outside the door, and the light hit her face. She no longer treated Fu Yuchuan so hostilely, but looked at him like a friend. What are you doing in a daze? She said. Fu Yuchuan paused for a moment and raised his foot to walk towards her. Friends? He doesn't seem to want to be friends with her. The two got into Fu Yuchuan's car and went to Rua's house. On the way, Ruan Tang called Rua's father and mother, saying that he was going to move back. The sound on the other end of the phone is a little noisy and can't be heard clearly, but Fu Yuchuan can roughly guess that it must not be a nice word. Ruan Tang tilted his head to one side and muttered. Fu Yuchuan is carefully identifying when she said those vague words. His mobile phone vibrated. He glanced at the name and frowned slightly. But he didn't answer, so he kept hitting. When he played the third one, he still picked it up. Hello? The tone of public affairs. Xiao Shijing was drunk, and his tone was vague and coquettish. Brother Li Chuan, I drank too much. Can you pick me up? No. Fu Yuchuan is a little impatient. When he gave her 5 million before, he had already made it clear. If it hadn't been for the life-saving grace, he wouldn't even want to answer this call. Why not? With the help of the wine, Xiao Shijing seemed to be bolder and began to ask back. Fu Yuchuan looked back and glanced at Ruan Tang beside him. It happened that Ruan Tang hung up the phone and looked back. She didn't know that it was Xiao Shijing on the other side of the phone. Seeing Fu Yuchuan looking at her meaningfully, she asked, "What's wrong?" Her voice was not loud, but it was clearly transmitted to the phone in the carriage. When Xiao Shijing heard Ruan Tang's voice, she understood everything. It turns out that you are with Sister Tang Tang. The lost voice, with a little drunken grievance, if it were another man, I'm afraid I can't bear to comfort him. But Fu Yuchuan replied calmly, well, you can take a taxi back. After saying that, hang up the phone. Ruan Tang listened to his words, in the clouds and fog. Fu Yuchuan didn't mean to explain, but said, do you like dogs? Huh. Ruan Tang was stunned by this sudden question, and then nodded subconsciously. It was not bad. A few days ago, a puppy came to my door. I took it home. I told you in advance that if you don't like it, I will send it away. That evening, when he saw the black stray dog at the door, he actually felt the same feeling of pity for it. He felt that he seemed to have been abandoned. I like it. Do you have any photos? Ruan Tang's eyes lit up. She has liked cats and dogs since she was a child. She had a puppy a long time ago, but she died of illness. Since then, she has not been willing to raise it anymore. But this time, it's different. This is a stray dog picked up by Fu Yuchuan. She came over with an inexplicable smell of milk on her body. Fu Yuchuan's throat knot rolled up and down again. Looking over, he could see her open neckline, and further down, it was an unspeakable area. He looked away, took out his mobile phone and clicked on the album. I only took one picture. In the photo, it is a pure black puppy, which looks about the same age as Teddy. It should be only 3 or 4 months old. Its bright eyes stared at the camera, as if it was asking for a soft-hearted divine energy to take it in. Ruan Tang looked at the photo with a sore nose. Fortunately, it met Fu Yuchuan. Wait, Fu Yuchuan? Ruan Tang looked up suddenly. She leaned so close that almost half of her body seemed to be in Fu Yuchuan's arms. When she looked up like this, her forehead directly brushed Fu Yuchuan's chin. The ambiguous skin contact is like a kiss. The 4 eyes are facing each other. It was too close. Ruan Tang could feel Fu Yuchuan's breathing. Her eyes are big and bright, and she has a fight with that puppy. Fu Yuchuan, I didn't expect you to be a good person. Don't you dislike stray dogs? Her red lips closed one by one, and there was a mocking smile in her eyes. Fu Yuchuan felt a heat flow all the way down the position of the heart and injected into the lower abdomen. An extremely strange emotion dominated his hands and feet. He stretched out a hand, held the back of Ruan Tang's head, and pressed it towards him.